In this world, everyone has at least one ability, and this man, Kim, has a special power of his own. He picks up the turtle. He stares intensely at it, then strikes. He bites down on its head and chews it completely. Kim can do this because he can eat anything. His body feels no discomfort or indigestion. He experimented a lot to use this strange power effectively. And finally, Kim succeeded. With this monstrous ability, he became a poacher in Africa. Just then, someone opens the door and calls out to Kim. He says General Lighting wants gorillas. This man is Hispanic, Kim's poaching accomplice. He's in charge of contacting the warlord, General Lighting. Kim keeps cleaning his gun. He just glances over and asks a question. The whole body? Hispanic points to his own head and replies, no, he only needs the head and hands. Kim loads a bullet into his gun. He asks, how many? Hispanic replies, 2 or more. Kim hears this and immediately thinks, General Lighting wants decorative heads and ashtrays made from gorilla hands. He'll have to kill at least 2 of them. He only needs their heads, not their bodies. After thinking, Kim raises his rifle. He says, all right, we leave tomorrow. Hispanic smirks at his words but says nothing more. He turns and leaves. Before going, he gives a quick wave. The scene changes to a forest in Africa. Early in the morning, Kim and Hispanic move cautiously through the woods. Kim is holding a hunting rifle. As he walks, Kim thinks, there are some complications to hunting gorillas. Besides him, many others are after them. There are illegal hunters selling to rich clients, but there are also armed anti-poaching forces. Unlike amateur hunters, these forces are heavily armed. They're equipped to the teeth. If they run into them, the only option is to flee. Kim glances at Hispanic, who is walking carefully ahead. Kim notices his expression. He thinks to himself, he's acting strange today. Is he really leading the right way? Kim immediately speaks up. Is this? Before he can finish, Hispanic speaks loudly. Yes, we're on the right path. Kim hears that and realizes something. He asks, you speak Korean? Hispanic pulls out a pair of handcuffs. He says, that's right. I've been on your case for 10 years. He smirks, his eyes cold. Not just South Korean, he continues, but also English, Japanese, and Chinese. Wherever you went, I learned the language. As Hispanic speaks, his hands tremble. In the next second, he handcuffs Kim. Hispanic declares, you're under arrest for murder, poaching, smuggling, and fraud. For joining illegal organizations and drug trafficking. That's a lot of crimes. Anyway, you're arrested for all of them. The scene shifts. A police car is parked at the edge of the forest. Kim is forced into the car. 2 armed agents sit on either side of him. One of them snarls. We finally got you, you dog. Sitting across from Hispanic, he asks, so General Lighting was a lie? Was this all your plan? Hispanic doesn't deny it. He replies, yes, it was all planned. Hispanic explains the whole process. It took me 3 months to get close to you. Then another 3 months to gain your trust. I thought I'd have to play this role until I died. If this were made into a movie, my 6-month performance would deserve an Oscar. Just as Hispanic is gloating, a call comes in. His expression changes instantly. He speaks into the phone. What are you talking about? 2 moons? While he's on the phone, the car suddenly starts to shake. Hispanic screams. What is this? Why is the car acting up? Kim remains calm in his seat. The reason he became a poacher is because, suddenly, red veins bulge on his face. It looks horrific. He can eat anything without getting sick. And he can use the power of what he's consumed. To transform, Kim opens his mouth. His teeth have changed. They've become the teeth of a shark. Sharp scales tear through his shirt. Kim's whole body trembles. They are the scales of a pangolin. He is the internationally wanted criminal, Mr. Kim Jong-un. When Hispanic sees this form, his face turns pale. He sweats in fear. His mind is collapsing. He thinks about Kim, a criminal from South Korea. He has committed every crime for money, including murder, smuggling, fraud, drug trafficking, and many other offenses. He's famous for using his money to buy rare animals. He buys them from all over the world just to eat them. Kim's arm transforms. His fingernails sharpen into claws. Hispanic continues to think. That's why he's known by the nickname the Beast Glutton. An agent next to him sees the change. He shoves himself to the side. He's too terrified to speak. Another agent sees Kim's body growing. He yells, "What the hell are you doing?" The other one shouts, "Stop it. Freeze or I'll shoot. Stop right now." Or, before he finishes, the agent on the other side opens fire. He yells, "Fire." He raises his arm with its sharp claws. Blood splatters all over the car. Hispanic sees this and thinks, no one knows how he can do this. The reason he eats so many different animals, Kim has completely transformed into a monster. Hispanic is still thinking, and the reason he became a poacher was to hunt and devour animals. At this moment, everything is clear. Kim's eyes, red with rage, fix on Hispanic. He asks him, "Any last words?" Hispanic is so terrified, he can only let out a curse. In the next instant, a blood-curdling scream echoes. The driver up front is separated by a partition. He has no idea what's happening. He just glances at the mesh screen. He hears the scream and turns. He asks what's wrong. Before he can finish, a huge hand punches through the partition. The car loses control. It crashes into a tree in the forest. Black smoke billows from the vehicle. A foot steps out of the car. It's Kim. He's back to his human form. He pushes the back door open and gets out. Kim looks up. The sight before him makes him freeze. He exclaims, "What is this?" 2 moons. In the sky, 2 moons appear. One large, one small. In his shadow, Kim is still a monster. He has a pair of horns on his head. Looking at the wolves surrounding him, he touches his neck. He thinks he's been transported somewhere. A place that isn't Earth. In the darkness, countless wolves with sharp eyes emerge. Their leader has long fangs. The land Kim has arrived in is filled with creatures. Creatures that can use skills. They're called monsters. Some look like animals from Earth. There are trolls and orcs, even dragons. And Kim is now facing a monster. He closes the book in his hand. His eyes narrow. He says, "All right, let's see what skills you have." Then, Kim transforms into his monster form. He grabs the monster in front of him. He lifts it to his mouth. Kim thinks he'll become the strongest entity here. The scene flashes back. Kim thinks about Hispanic. He was clearly betrayed by his partner. He was captured by international police. But what he saw after climbing out of the transport vehicle was a sky with 2 moons. Kim stands there, staring for a long time. He comes to a conclusion. This place isn't Earth. His clothes are torn in many places. Kim puts a hand to his chin. He thinks for a moment. He asks himself, maybe this is better? Like Hispanic said, he's committed countless crimes. He was being hunted by the UN, police, and similar organizations. He hears a noise behind him. Kim glances back and says, "I guess I won't be hunted here anymore." Kim glances over. He spots the wild beasts. He mutters, "Damn it. It's the pack of wolves that surrounded him." He looks at them and continues, "I thought wild animals had instincts. They should know who to avoid. It seems I was wrong." Veins bulge from his neck to his face. He glares with sharp eyes. He says, "You must be the leader." A wolf with an X-shaped scar on its face stares at Kim. Drool drips from its mouth. The alpha wolf lets out a roar. The rest of the pack immediately lunges forward. Kim clenches his teeth. They slowly transform into sharp fangs. His whole body also changes. His head becomes a tiger's. His torso becomes that of a gorilla. The wolves rushing towards Kim see his form. They hesitate for a moment. Instantly, the wolves scatter in fear. The alpha wolf also stops. Kim gives it no chance to escape. He moves swiftly behind it. Kim immediately lifts the wolf with his huge hand. It whimpers relentlessly. When Kim throws the wolf back to the ground, one of its fangs is broken. Blood soaks the earth. The other wolves in the pack witness this. They cringe in fear. Kim stands under the 2 moons, holding a wolf. The rest of the pack flees in all directions. Kim holds the alpha wolf's carcass. Blood still drips from its mouth. He speaks. "It's been a while since I've eaten. You'll be my first meal in this strange place." Finishing his words, Kim opens his mouth. He bites hard into the wolf's body, but he immediately spits it out. He thinks, "I'm using a tiger's jaw, and I still can't tear its skin." In that case, Kim instantly transforms into the shape of a hippo. A moment later, Kim has devoured the wolf. Only a skeleton remains on the ground. He wipes his mouth and thinks, "That's strange. Just to tear the skin of one wolf, he had to use a hippo's jaw and a shark's teeth. It was still a struggle." Kim concludes this isn't normal hide. Also, why were they so terrified of his roar? Science proves a roar can vibrate muscles, causing paralysis. But when he roared, the entire pack fled. Large predators like wolves should only be startled. At least, that's what his knowledge says. After thinking, Kim seems to realize something. He asks himself, "Knowledge?" Kim looks up at the 2 moons. He starts to wonder, is this a world where all his knowledge is useless? The scene changes. Kim bites off the last piece of meat. After finishing, he casually tosses the bone behind him. Kim sits in a cave. Deep inside, animal bones are piled high. A week has passed since his first meal here. During that time, he has hunted and consumed many animals in this forest. A bear with unusually large forearms. A snake, unknown if venomous. A deer with horns as sharp as knives. Aside from a few oddities, they weren't much different from Earth's creatures. Kim now stands up. He slowly walks toward the cave entrance. Moving through the bushes, Kim parts the leaves and observes. He thinks there must be some technology or system here. Something completely different from what he knows on Earth. Kim's arm begins to transform. To find out what it is, he goes out to hunt again today. Just then, another hand rests on the bushes. It's a man, searching for something in the forest. Kim is in his beast form, not far away. As soon as he sees the man, he thinks, a human. He squints at the man, still thinking. So humans exist here too. Maybe he can gather more information. With that thought, Kim reaches out. He places a hand on the man's shoulder. He calls out in his mind, "Hey." The man immediately glances behind him. The ability to mimic a body part of something he's consumed isn't a divine power. It actually has many limitations. The condition for transformation is that it must be the same body part. He can turn his hand into a bear's claw, but he can't turn it into a crocodile's jaw, and he can't use parts from creatures like lobsters or centipedes. Their body structures are completely different from humans. Finally, he can't mix and match body parts. Since he currently has a falcon's head, he can't speak human language. Kim lets out a screech at the man. The man turns around. His face immediately contorts in fear. He then turns and runs. He shouts something in a language Kim doesn't understand. He doesn't get far. The man runs into the antlers of a passing deer. The man falls to the ground. Blood pools beneath him. The deer calmly runs off. Kim approaches the fallen man. The man glances at him. He continues to speak in the unknown language. Kim can only stand and watch. Of course, they use a different language than him. After speaking, the man stops breathing. Unfortunately, he couldn't save this man, and he had no reason to. It's true he needs information about this world, but even if he revived him now, they couldn't communicate. Besides, gathering information after he's dead is much easier. Kim immediately transforms back into his monster form. His teeth are razor sharp. With his ability, he can consume the brain and read his memories. Kim then eats the man's brain. He has acquired the language of this world, thanks to the man's cooperation. After eating the brain, Kim takes the man's clothes and puts them on. And the best prize was the monster illustration book the man was carrying. Kim opens a page. It describes a monster called the Kim Kang Lang. Size, average 200 centimeters. Weight, average 120 kilograms. Skills, bite, roar, and howl. Kim learned what kinds of monsters exist here, and what system this world operates on. Thanks to this system, he can achieve a goal he couldn't on Earth. 2 months later, a monster with a head like a hippo, but its teeth are incredibly sharp. The lower jaw has 2 long, pointed fangs jutting out. Observing the monster's head, Kim mutters, "Is this the regeneration ability of a troll?" Kim has placed the head on a rock. The body is in a wooden crate. Kim turns his back to the monster's head. He then says, it can regenerate its brain in a month, even after being torn to pieces. This information wasn't in the book. I didn't expect it could do that. Kim holds the book in one hand. His other hand is transforming. He touches the monster to examine it. Suddenly, Kim yanks his transforming arm back. Blood from the monster's body splatters onto the troll's face. It lets out a loud cry. Kim hears its cry. He smirks slightly and says, "You're awake? Good." Kim is still standing in a puddle of the monster's purple blood. He continues, "I still haven't found the limit of your hide. How much heat will it take to peel? And at what point will you burn? Are you resistant to acid? And how many times can you regenerate? There are still many experiments to conduct." Kim has posed countless questions to it. He turns to look at the troll's head. He closes the book and his eyes narrow. "So then, how should I experiment on you?" The scene shifts. North of the Great Tree Forest, home of the Onyx Orc tribe, a tall man with red skin and tusks sits on a throne. He asks, "You say you are a warrior?" The other man immediately replies, "The goddess has given me a mission. In the Great Tree Forest, a monster will be born. It will devour everything in its path to absorb skills, and it will master them. A terrifying monster." The scene changes. Great Tree Forest, troll territory. A troll carries a makeshift hammer on its shoulder. It's a large wooden club attached to a rock. Another troll follows behind it. The 2 monsters see footprints on the ground. The one in front bends down to look. He says, "Human tracks. Those guys are out hunting." He then opens his mouth, flicking his long tongue. He continues, "I wonder where they went." He slams his hammer on the ground, cracking it. He says angrily, "They dare to eat delicious human meat alone." This monster has black spots on its body. He glares at the 2 behind him and shouts, "Find them before they're eaten down to the bone." The one behind him sees his anger. He sweats and stammers, "Yes, boss." The 2 trolls immediately run off. One says, "This way." The scene changes. Kim is in his monster form. He's holding a troll's head and putting it in his mouth. Suddenly, Kim senses something. He immediately shoots a sharp glance. Kim, with a wolf's head, puts the troll head down. He says, "I was just about to hunt for more test subjects, and you all came right to my door." Outside the cave where Kim is hiding, the 3 trolls have arrived. The troll leader immediately lifts his nose and sniffs. Veins pop on his face. He growls, "I smell human flesh from this cave." A subordinate behind him sweats and says, "Boss, something's not right." The leader scoffs. "Those bastards are probably trying to hoard the human meat." Just then, another scent wafts by. The leader sniffs and says, "But this is the smell of troll blood." In the next instant, the sight before him makes him freeze. His eyes widen and he breaks into a cold sweat. Before them stands Kim with his giant form. The 2 subordinates yell, "Boss, watch out." The leader sees Kim and panics. He swings the hammer in his hands. Before the hammer can land, Kim punches down with his bare fist. The troll's blood splatters everywhere. A thought flashes through his mind. A troll's muscles combine with a bear's huge front claws. His eyes glare angrily as he thinks, This combination isn't bad. Kim's punch smashes the leader's head. He says, "Oh well. I was going to use him as a test subject, but I accidentally killed him." The two remaining trolls witness this. They can barely stammer out a word. "Boss." He looks at Kim with fierce eyes and says, You monster." He charges forward with a wooden club in his hand, yelling, "Die." As soon as he speaks, Kim shatters the club in his hand. Next, one of his arms is severed. The monster looks at his own arm and exclaims, "What?" Then, Kim opens his mouth wide. His two sharp fangs bite directly into the monster's arm. At that moment, Kim thinks, fangs of a death viper. The best way to nullify a troll's powerful regeneration is to paralyze them. 2 fang marks are left on the troll's body. He's paralyzed and stammers, "I can't move." His entire body then collapses to the ground. The remaining troll trembles in fear. Sweat pours down his forehead. His eyes dart around, assessing the situation. He sees Kim in his monster form. The troll on the ground reaches out to him and says, "Mock, run." This makes him tremble even more violently, unable to speak. Kim approaches. Half his face is a wolf's, the other half is a troll's. He grinds his sharp teeth and says, "You should go meet your friends, shouldn't you?" After that, only the tormented screams of the monster on the ground are heard, followed by a spray of blood. For several months, he conducted many experiments to add information to the book. Kim can now transform his entire head into a troll's. The air is filled with screams of terror. "Help me! No! Kill me!" The book introduced a new concept to him, skills. At first, Kim thought it was a game guide. Skills are something you usually see in games. However, the creatures he had eaten here used abilities similar to skills. Thanks to these experiments, Kim came to a conclusion. Yes, skills do exist. He learned several important things from his findings. 1. Skills have no effect on creatures without skills. Although the death viper here uses a poison skill to paralyze prey, Kim tested it. He let the snakes bite his arm. He only got a scar from the bite. He wasn't poisoned at all. 2. Attacks without skills still work on opponents with skills. After attacking a large bear, with both poison skills and normal fangs, both were effective. The poison and paralysis worked on the bear. He also experimented with 2 different snakes. After these experiments, Kim finally understood. The reason the Kim Kang Lang wolves, despite their resistance, were scared of his roar. It was probably because it was a tiger's roar, a creature not from this world. In other words, because he's from Earth, he's immune to their skills. But his attacks are still effective against them. After reaching this conclusion, Kim smirks. This is why he can become the apex predator. He'll be at the top of the food chain in this world. Earth was dominated by humanity. No matter what creature he consumed, he could never defeat them. That's because human technology and weapons far exceed the limits of any creature. But here, it's different. Humans in this place are just prey. They're prey for countless powerful monsters. Atomic bombs and overwhelming technology don't exist here. When Kim was a child, he saw a large Tyrannosaurus Rex on TV. Since he was young, Kim had dreamed of becoming a tyrannical predator, and to achieve that dream, he just needs to eat the creatures here. He immediately thinks of the troll tribe. Trolls with their infinite regeneration, orcs with their peerless strength, and a monster that breathes fire hot enough to melt steel. A dragon. The scene changes. A dragon appears. It's soaring through the sky. Below is a vast forest. On the ground, there's a round object. Seeing the dragon fly by, it speaks. "What's that? A dragon?" Seeing the dragon in the sky, the thing on the ground can't help but exclaim, "This world is just like the anime I've seen. It's a slime." He says with great excitement, "I can't believe I was reincarnated as a slime that can eat anything." Thinking this, he can't help but laugh and mutter, "I was born to be the strongest. This is fate." The slime then wonders, "I wonder if this works?" The slime immediately opens its status window and says, "Status. Skills. Open." The status frame immediately displays, Levy 1, Stamina 1, Strength 1, Speed 1, Intelligence 0, Devour. Use soul to consume anything and make it your own. The slime reads this and exclaims happily, "It's just like in the anime." Just then, a snake slithers out from the grass. It immediately catches the slime's attention. The snake, crawling on the path, seems to notice something and looks back. In front of it, the slime has grown larger. He then eats the snake in front of him and shouts, "Devour." The snake is then completely absorbed by the slime. His system displays a message. "You have consumed a death viper. Your speed has increased by 1. You can now use the skill, Paralyzing Venom. Your soul has decreased due to using Devour." Seeing the status update, the slime asks in surprise, "Soul depletion?" He quickly becomes carefree again. He says, "Whatever. I'll probably find a way to get my soul back later." Here, he is the main character. He is Gwyn. After that, Gwyn devours all the nearby beasts. After eating, Gwyn moves along the road, muttering, "The reason I was discriminated against and had to struggle was because of my useless parents. It was all their fault. A slime with the potential to match a monster. and he will become a monster. He will gradually use up all of his soul to become stronger, only to self-destruct in the end. The goddess of Manga chose him, not to be the main character, but to be a disposable tool. The scene changes. The narration of the warrior can. The continent of Manga is under the protection of the goddess, and the warrior chosen by the goddess. He follows the principles of a warrior and protects humanity. The more danger humanity is in, the stronger the chosen warrior becomes. But even that warrior, even the hero Kan, could not stop the destruction caused by that monster. Kan remembers facing a giant monster in his memories. The monster brought disaster to the whole world with its terrifying power. Because of it, Kan had a horrible death. But when Kan woke up again, he was young again. Kan had returned to the past, to himself from 10 years ago. This was the last chance the goddess gave him. He must stop that monster. Back in the present, Kan frowns and says, "The goddess prophesied it." As soon as he finishes, a pain flares in his chest. Kan clutches his chest. The pain makes him grimace. Kan wonders if it's because he lied. This is the punishment for breaking a warrior's principles. But if he said he was from the future, he wouldn't be believed. The red-skinned man in front of Kan is Burnus, the elder of the Onyx Orc tribe. He asks, "A prophecy? Can you tell me more about it?" Kan replies, "Of course, elder." Kan then tells him what he knows. In this great tree forest, a monster that eats and absorbs skills will appear. I came to stop him from causing disaster in the future. Hearing this, Burnus, sitting on his throne, speaks. "If your prophecy is true, this is a serious problem." Kan asks with doubt, "A serious problem?" Burnus closes his eyes and strokes his chin. "Actually, I haven't seen a single troll in 2 months. Perhaps the monster has already targeted the troll's regeneration ability." Hearing this, Kan's expression changes. It becomes much more serious. Powerful regeneration and destruction are the two special skills of the trolls. After hearing this, Kan frowns and speaks urgently. In other words, if we follow the troll's trail now, we might find the monster's lair. Kan clenches his fists. He says, trembling with anger, "This time, I won't let you run wild." The scene changes. Kim is still flipping through the book. After reading a good amount, he says, "It seems this is enough." Kim then closes the book in his hand. He glances behind him and mutters, "They all died during the experiments." Kim is in a cave. A small fire is lit. Around it are monster carcasses. Kim says only one is left. It's a troll. Kim is still holding its head. It trembles, completely drained of strength, but still begs, "Please, kill me." Hearing this, Kim lights a torch and says, "All right." He looks at the blazing fire and continues, "I'll give you a peaceful end. Even though we've been together all this time, I have to find new test subjects." Kim brings the flame in front of the troll. He says, "I will let you die as you wish." Seeing the flame, it thinks, finally, the moment has come. In the next second, it closes its eyes, waiting for death. But after a while, feeling nothing, the troll peeks open an eye. Kim is holding the torch in one hand and the book in the other. He looks into it and says, "Wait a minute. Boiled troll blood can be used to make recovery potions? That means I don't need to deal with this one yet." Hearing his words, the troll bursts into tears and cries out. Kim slowly sits down. He continues reading the book. The troll sees this and calls out, "You bastard. Kill me." Kim remains focused on the book, ignoring its words. The page Kim is reading describes a species. Name, Great Tree Forest Lizardman. Height, around 180 centimeters. Weight, around 85 kilograms. Skills, poison spit, underwater breathing, fast swimming. Minor physical damage reduction. Lizardmen live alone in the forest. Lizardmen are not monsters, but a humanoid race. But they are very reclusive. They are hostile to outsiders, and they will capture and kill any who dare to intrude, like the illustration above. After reading the page, Kim talks to himself. Lizardmen? Huh. A hybrid of mammal and reptile. After learning this information, Kim lets out a cunning smile. He says, "I wonder if they'll be useful." The scene changes. Great Tree Forest, swamp area. A group of lizardmen, armed with weapons, patrol the swamp. One of the lizardmen suddenly senses something. In front of them is a dark, faceless figure. One of them asks, "Is that a troll?" Another says, "We haven't seen them much lately. I wonder where they've been hiding." As soon as he finishes, one of them is attacked. The one next to him yells, "Damn troll, how dare you set foot in our territory?" But the sight before him makes him break out in a cold sweat. He says in fear, "What is that?" In front of him is Kim, with a giant snake head. His body is that of a troll. Kim grabs his neck with one hand. He opens his mouth, about to devour the lizardman. Seeing this, the terrified lizardman stammers, Monster." As soon as he says it, he's devoured by Kim. The lizardman next to him sees this and screams in fear. "What the hell are you, you monster?" Seeing Kim chewing on his comrade, the lizardman thinks. His disgust is overwhelmed by fear. "I don't know what this thing is, but if it lives, our species is in danger." The lizardman immediately thrusts his spear at Kim and shouts, "Die." A large hole appears on Kim's shoulder, but the wound instantly heals. Seeing this, the lizardman can't believe his eyes. He exclaims, "Regeneration? How is that possible? Only trolls have that skill." Kim opens his mouth wide. 2 streams of liquid drip from his fangs. Kim spits that poison directly into the lizardman's eyes. It cries out in pain. The skin around its eyes immediately peels off. Its eyes are bloodshot. The lizardman opens his eyes and shouts, "What is this?" In his eyes, he sees Kim in his monster form. He says in disbelief, "Poison? Impossible. This is the poison of the lizardman race. How can this be?" Before he can finish, his vision blurs. The lizardman then loses consciousness and falls into the swamp. He is then dragged away by Kim. The swamp becomes quiet again. The scene changes. The slime has just finished eating something. A skull is left behind. The slime's name is Gwyn. After eating, Gwyn spits the skull onto the ground. Resting after a full meal, Gwyn mutters, "Orcs are so bland. I can't believe I only went up 1 level." Just then, a scent wafts to Gwyn's nose. You see, on reflex, Gwyn is led by the scent to a cave entrance. Smelling it, coming from inside, Gwyn asks curiously, "What is this strong smell?" He immediately uses his system's eyes to look inside. He says, "Kim Kang Lang's skill, life form sensor." He immediately detects bright spots. Gwyn says, "Wow, there are quite a few." Moving towards the cave entrance, Gwyn says excitedly, "I can't miss a good meal like this." As he enters, the sight before him terrifies him. He breaks out in a cold sweat. From the entrance inward, there are many corpses of slain lizardmen scattered everywhere. Seeing this, Gwyn continues, "No, it can't be." Gwyn's expression shifts from fear to joy. He says, "Jackpot. I'm going to get so much experience. I don't know who did this." He licks his lips and says loudly, "But thanks for the meal." Gwyn then dives in and starts eating the lizardman corpses. After eating his fill, he lets out a satisfied burp. Gwyn then opens his status screen. He says happily, underwater breathing, poison spit, and even the ability to regenerate. Regeneration. I really hit the jackpot. Gwyn is still happily looking at his status screen. The hero, Kan, has appeared behind Gwyn without him knowing. He's clenching his fists tightly. After a moment, Gwyn notices someone behind him. He glances back. Seeing Kan standing there, Gwyn asks, "Who are you?" Kan just stands there. He frowns, observing Gwyn. He thinks, "I came here by following the troll's trail and sensing a murderous aura." Looking at Gwyn, Kan wonders, "But it's just a slime?" He tells himself, "No, this is not a normal slime." When Kan doesn't answer, Gwyn gets angry. He yells, "What are you looking at? What's your problem?" Kan senses the aura around Gwyn and silently assesses him. This murderous aura. Seeing Kan still not answering, Gwyn glares at him. "Ignoring me, huh?" I asked, "What's your problem?" Kan ignores his words. He has only one thought. This creature is completely evil. After a long silence, Kan speaks. "I am a warrior. One of the principles of a warrior is to never hide one's identity." Hearing this, Gwyn scoffs. "Huh? A warrior? In this world, that's the role of those who get everything stolen by the main character, right? Oh, you must be a sacrifice. To help me grow, even in anime, the main character has to start by eating at least a dragon. This is disappointing. They gave me this useless warrior." Kan just stands there, watching Gwyn ramble on without saying a word. Kan frowns, looking down at Gwyn on the ground. He thinks, "I don't understand what he's saying, but he's definitely insulting me." Gwyn continues, "Speaking of which, if you're a warrior, that means you're chosen by the goddess, right? Chosen by trash, you must be trash too." Gwyn then laughs loudly, not noticing Kan's face has darkened. Gwyn continues to laugh arrogantly, mocking Kan. "Goddesses in these kinds of worlds are just brainless idiots. I'll give her a spot in my future harem." The sword on Kan's back gleams. He reaches back and draws his sword. Kan is furious. He glares at Gwyn, growling each word. "Countless people have insulted me. Countless people have cursed my parents, but I let it all go, because a warrior must have forgiveness. But no one has ever dared to insult the goddess, the one who created this continent of Emgut, and no one is allowed to." Kan is so angry his sword arm trembles. Gwyn, still thinking he's right, continues to mock him. "Are you mad? It's because I'm right, isn't it?" As soon as he finishes, Kan swings his sword. Gwyn is slightly surprised. Kan's face is extremely grim as he looks at him. The oppressive aura makes Gwyn's whole body tremble. Kan shouts, "Shut up." Faced with Kan's fury, he starts to panic. He can only mumble incoherently. Gwyn clenches his teeth, sweat pouring down. But he still thinks, "What is this? Why should I be scared? I'm the main character here." With that thought, Gwyn seems to regain his confidence. He looks at Kan defiantly. "What? You want to fight? Bring it on. I wonder what title I'll get for killing a warrior. Even if there's no title, I'll still eat all your skills." Gwyn then starts to open his mouth wide. Hearing his words, Kan immediately thinks, "Eat skills. Could it be?" Before Kan can finish his thought, Gwyn's body expands. He opens his mouth and yells, "Die." The next second, as Gwyn lunges, Khan's sword slashes through him. In the next instant, Gwyn is sent flying to the ground. A part of his body is severed by Khan's slash. Gwyn sees this and starts to panic. Khan holds out his hand and casts a magic circle. A magic circle of light immediately appears. As Khan casts the spell, he looks at Gwyn and thinks, even for a slime, when its jelly disappears, it can't regenerate the lost part. Having lost a part of his head, Gwyn yells angrily, "You bastard, don't get cocky." Gwyn then starts to use his skill to recover. Super regeneration. The lost part of Gwyn's slime body restores itself. He says smugly, "The troll's super regeneration skill is great. It's like a game hack." Seeing this, Khan tightens his grip on his sword. He says, "As I thought, you are the future calamity. Begone, monster of destruction." As he speaks, Khan channels magic into his sword. Gwyn sees this and freezes. He asks, "Huh, what are you talking about?" Khan holds his sword high, pointing it to the sky. This is the technique, absolute judgment. A massive beam of light energy strikes Gwyn. He screams in agony. The powerful energy causes Gwyn to shrink. He screams relentlessly. What is this? The scene changes. When Kim first met a human in this world, with his animal head structure, he couldn't speak human language. But after eating the lizard man, he can speak normally, even with the head of a reptile. The body parts of mammals and reptiles are compatible. How interesting. The scene changes. At the lizard man's swamp, security is extremely tight. Kim approaches from a distance. He thinks, "I need more test subjects." A lizardman on guard duty immediately spots him. He opens his eyes wide. Kim, in the form of a lizardman, walks up to the guard. The guard asks, "A lizardman?" Another lizardman, standing not far away, sees Kim and shouts, "You fool, that's not a lizardman. Attack." The lizardman soldiers immediately obey the order. They attack Kim with their weapons, wounding his body. 2 spears pierce through him, but Kim is unfazed. He spits poison onto his hand. He then shoves the poison directly into a lizardman's face. The lizardman immediately screams in pain. The other 2 freeze. One of them shouts, "All of you, attack at once." As soon as he finishes, the others scream in agony. Now only one lizardman is left standing still. This one is sweating, his voice trembling. Oh, great red glow. Kim, holding a lizardman by the tail in each hand, approaches the last one. He then squeezes the lizardman's neck hard. The lizardman trembles, struggling to speak. "Please, help me." The scene changes back to Khan. On the ground, only the mark of Khan's magic circle remains. He slings his sword over his shoulder and says, "It's done." Khan then sheathes his sword and turns to leave. Unexpectedly, a small piece of Gwyn's slime body appears. It falls right inside the circle. Gwyn, now just a small blob of slime, struggles to lift his head. Gwyn then moves into the cave. He says, "That was close. I need to recover quickly." Gwyn's body is still dissolving. He moves with difficulty and says, "My speed is too slow. I need to eat something. Anything. Damn that warrior. One day, I will kill you." As he crawls into the cave, he runs right into Kim returning. Seeing that the lizard men are gone from the cave, Kim shouts, "Where did they all go? Which bastard touched my stuff?" Just then, Gwyn sees Kim. He thinks happily, "Food." He immediately leaps towards Kim without hesitation. In the sticky room, a foul smell hangs in the air. Piles of trash are left to rot, breeding mold. Sitting amidst the smelly pile is a fat slob. He's engrossed in the screen, playing his favorite video game. And that pig was the slime in his previous life. He was once human. Everyone around him laughed at and belittled him. He was a good-for-nothing who couldn't do anything, but he convinced himself that he was just following his instincts. And living by instinct is every human's duty. The fat slime never tried. He wouldn't touch difficult tasks. All he did was eat, sleep, and play. He absolutely refused to do anything he couldn't. Not only that, he was also a disrespectful and ungrateful son. He was almost 40 years old, and his parents still had to work hard to support him. Yet he acted like a pitiful victim. He claimed his parents failed in their responsibilities. They disowned him just because he was a little overweight and unemployed. The fat slime hated his miserable life, the life of a good-for-nothing. He always wished for a chance to change his life. And then, miraculously, that chance actually came. He woke up in another world. In the body of a powerful slime, he could absorb anything he wanted and take its abilities. This made him believe he was the chosen one, the main character of this world. But the slime's beautiful dream was crushed before it could take shape. After a fight with a strange warrior he met, he was terribly injured, but he was still optimistic. He thought this was just a trial for the main character. He swore he would devour every skill in this world to get his revenge. As soon as he finished, the slime turned its head. He saw Kim standing behind him with a puzzled look. Veins bulged on Kim's face. Every muscle showed his fury. Someone dared to invade his base. The foolish slime thought Kim was food served on a silver platter, so it immediately rushed towards him. It intended to swallow Kim whole. It leaped straight into Kim's mouth. It planned to eat him from the inside. Before Kim could react, he had already swallowed the slime. From Kim's perspective, the first bad news in 2 weeks was that the cave he used as a lab was now unusable. The reason was a slime had broken in and ruined everything. It happened while he was hunting the lizardman. It even surprisingly jumped into his mouth when he was careless. But the good thing is, Kim has fused with that slime. Or more accurately, it found its own death. It jumped into his mouth and got digested. However, the slime's ability is very noteworthy. The monster illustration book says slimes are a species that can change form. They evolve depending on what they regularly absorb. They can eat all sorts of things, from animals and reptiles like rats and insects, to soil, poisonous plants, and even minerals. The book also mentions that slimes that regularly eat minerals will evolve. They take on the properties of that mineral. For example, metal slimes mainly absorb minerals found near ore mines, so they have the skills metallize and metal detection. Normally, Kim can't eat minerals, or rather, he can swallow them, but can't digest them. Nor can he use their properties. Those minerals would eventually be expelled from his body. But a slime's diet isn't just limited to living things. It also includes inanimate objects. By fusing with the slime by swallowing it, Kim can now absorb minerals. He also has the ability to turn his body into minerals. In the land of the ancient dragon, in the great tree forest, the red dragon spreads its wings, soaring through the sky like an unnamed king. Because a solitary ancient dragon like her has no need for a name, but there are those who worship her, and they have given her a title. That is Red Glow. Red Glow soars through the sky, and Red Glow is a mother dragon who dearly loves her child. In the great tree forest, filled with monsters, the lizardmen especially revere Red Glow. They offer gold, silver, and precious gems to her, in exchange for the dragon's protection and prosperity for their species. But since her child was born, Red Glow has become rather indifferent to the race she once protected. Although she doesn't want to leave her child, Red Glow feels that if she's only gone for a moment, nothing bad will happen. So, she takes flight, heading towards the lizardman's territory. While soaring over the dry forest, Red Glow discovers unusual tracks. This makes her brake so hard she nearly crashes to the ground. She sees signs of a battle and a struggle. She immediately suspects an intruder has entered her territory. Her blood-red eyes widen with fury. Someone dared to attack the lizardman race under her protection. Red Glow lets out a loud roar. She vows to make them pay. As for Kim, the culprit behind the lizardman attack, he is focused on the changes in his body. When he transforms his hand into a lizardman's, he discovers their bodies are covered in a layer of tough scales. In his assessment, in terms of defense alone, the Kim Kang Lang's hide is superior, but that's not what's important. The special thing here is the slime layer covering the lizardman's scales. The lizardman's slime not only has antibacterial properties, it also acts as a healing ointment. But there's something even more important. The slime around the scales and the slime's slime can mix. If he can eat hard metals and turn the lizardman's slime into metal slime, his power will surely increase significantly. But the problem is, where can he find the hard metals he wants? Using the Hawkeye skill from above, Kim can see the type of metal at the foot of the mountain over 100 meters away, a place being mined by the orc tribe. Looking at the giants at the foot of the mountain, Kim wonders, is that the orcs' territory? So he opens the monster illustration book to check. Orcs have an average height of over 2 meters and weigh around 150 kilograms. They possess warrior-class skills, along with fortification and vitality boost. This is also the strongest orc tribe in the Great Tree Forest. They value dignity and pride, but among them are some cruel individuals considered monsters. From his high vantage point, Kim counts about 40 giant orcs. Closing the book, he admits that 40 orcs is too many for him, so he has to think of a way to force them out of the mine within a week. While he's thinking, a dragon suddenly flies over his head. It immediately catches his attention. Based on the lizardman's memories, Kim knows that dragon has a child. Kim can swap the brains of creatures he's eaten to read their memories, but if he swaps the entire brain, he'll lose his sanity, so he only swaps a part of it. And from that dragon, Kim comes up with a crazy and somewhat cowardly plan. The scene changes. Red Glow is holding a wolf in her mouth. She throws the wolf onto the pile of animals she has hunted. Just then, the young dragon calls out, making Red Glow turn around. "Mother!" Red Glow looks down at her child and says, "Listen to me carefully, little one." She nuzzles her head against the young dragon's. She continues in a low voice, "From now on, you must wait here quietly until I return." Hearing her mother, the young dragon follows behind and asks, "What about hunting practice? What about our walks? When can I go outside?" Hearing her child, Red Glow says sternly, "Don't even think about going outside without me here." Red Glow then raises her hand and draws magic circles. She says, "Magic barrier. That should do it." After setting up the barrier to keep her child from leaving, the mother dragon flies into the sky and departs. The young dragon can only watch from the cave as its mother flies further away. Just then, a hand grips the edge of the young dragon's cave. Rewind to 30 minutes earlier. Kim has arrived at the cliff below the dragon's cave. He's carrying a hunted animal. As he arrives, Kim mutters to himself, This is the young dragon's home, right? Using the lizardman's memories, Kim found the dragon's lair. Standing below the dragon's nest, Kim mutters, "This is easier than I thought." Kim then unexpectedly throws the deer in his hand to the ground near the dragon's cave. The mother dragon's magic immediately burns the deer's mouth black. Seeing this, Kim says, "Just as I expected." According to the lizardman's memories, this is a magic barrier. But Kim then tries to reach his hand forward. Surprisingly, the barrier doesn't react to his hand. Seeing this, he frowns and says, "I knew it. The barrier has no effect on creatures from Earth." Kim then leaves the deer there and slowly moves forward. Back at the cave, a hand grips the edge of the young dragon's home. The young dragon sees something climbing up and watches with surprise. It's Kim. He has changed his hand's shape and is climbing into the cave. The young dragon backs away in fear. Kim stands up and says, "Well now." He rubs his neck and complains, "This place is too high. The lower jaw of a troll, the scales of a death viper, and a mix of some earth animals. That's all it takes to fool the barrier." Kim then glances at the young dragon. The young dragon, though a bit scared, still frowns and asks, "Who are you?" Kim ignores it. His eyes are fixed on something else. A pile of sparkling gold, silver, and precious gems catches his eye. Kim says, "I can't believe I hit the jackpot. What a find." The dragon sees his gaze. It immediately becomes fierce. It stands in front of the treasure and shouts, "Get out! This is our home." Kim ignores the young dragon's words. He walks over to the pile of treasure and sits down to examine it. The young dragon's eyes follow him. Kim picks up some gold and marvels. "This is amazing. This beats all the minerals in the mine." The young dragon sees him touching the gold. It rushes towards him and shouts, "I said, get out!" Before it can reach him, Kim's hand grabs its neck. The young dragon cries out. Seeing this, Kim says unhappily, "You're too noisy." The next second, he casually throws the young dragon against the cave wall. The young dragon falls, muttering, "Mother." 1 week later, Red Glow is flying back to her cave. As she flies, she talks to herself. "I still haven't found any clues. It's already been 7 days." The mother dragon lands at her cave. She immediately steps inside. Right away, she feels the cave is unusually quiet today. Puzzled, she says. Usually, she'd run out to greet me. Little one, little one." Her eyes fall on her child, lying motionless. Seeing this, the mother dragon panics and shouts, "Little one, what happened?" When the young dragon doesn't respond, the mother immediately casts a spell. Magic envelops the young dragon. Heal, recover, mend. After a moment, the young dragon slowly opens its eyes. It then runs to its mother, crying and calling for her. Seeing her child cry, Red Glow lifts her up and comforts her. "Little one, it's okay. Mother is here now." The mother dragon immediately asks her child what happened. The young dragon, wiping away tears, says tearfully, "A punk with a jutting lower jaw hit me. He took all the shiny things and the food you left for me." After hearing her child's description, the mother dragon says angrily, "A jutting lower jaw and red skin. In this forest, the only ones who look like that are those damn orcs. You dare to touch my little one, I'll make you taste hell." An enraged roar echoes from the dragon's cave. Kim, not far away, hears it. Hearing the piercing scream from the cave, Kim smirks. A quick reaction. The scene changes. At the orc tribe, someone calls for the elder. An orc tribesman enters the tent. He says, "We found something suspicious during our patrol." He presents a blood-stained knife. He continues, "This was found in a bush near the village." Elder Burnus picks up the knife to examine it. He says, "Why would a valuable artifact like this be in a bush?" Burnus brings it to his nose and sniffs. He says, "Moreover, this smell is dragon's blood." Before he can finish, Red Glow appears, flying right above Burnus. The mother dragon, with eyes full of rage, says, "It's time for you to pay for your actions, you bastards." In the dense forest, a sea of fire suddenly erupts. The fire was created by the giant dragon. She has burned an orc to a crisp. Seeing the blood on this one's sword, she quickly recognizes the scent. It's the blood of her precious daughter. This drove it into a frenzy. It was certain the orcs had destroyed its home. The dying orc tried to warn his allies. He told them to run away. They had fallen into a trap. The war between the enraged mother dragon and the orc tribe had officially begun. A war horn summoned every orc in the forest. The battle raged for 3 days and 3 nights. Although the orcs won, countless lives were lost. Only a dozen orcs survived. The survivors fled the great tree forest. The body of the mother dragon and the fallen orc warriors became a magnificent feast for Kim. From that moment on, the mother dragon was dead. Its tiny baby dragon sensed it. The baby's whole body trembled. It could no longer feel its mother. Tears streamed down the little dragon's face. The poor creature cried out for its mother. Its tears fell to the ground. Its body shook with uncontrollable sobs. The baby dragon gritted its teeth. It just stood there, crying in sorrow. A moment later, it spread its wings and flew away. With its mother gone, the dragon left the forest. Elsewhere, a book was opened. It listed everything I had eaten so far. First was the Kim Kang Lang, Second was the monster named Chow. Third was the lizardmen. Next were the orcs. Finally, there was the dragon, plus many other monsters. The book closed. The man had eaten everything mentioned inside. Kim no longer had a reason to stay in the forest. He decided to hitch a ride on an old man's cart. The old man said it was common to find people with amnesia on this road. He knew this land held many treasures, rejuvenating herbs, monster parts, and even secrets of ancient kingdoms. That's why people flocked here, hoping to change their fate, but most of them ended up dead. The old man said Kim was the luckiest person he'd ever met. He hoped Kim would value his life more. Kim listened to the old man and nodded. By faking an injury and amnesia in the forest, I gathered a lot of information. I learned it all from an old merchant heading to a village. I learned almost everything from him, but there was one thing I couldn't understand. It was called a status window. I heard that in this world, everyone has one. It shows their personal information. He wondered if it was like an ID card. He then tried to open his own status window, but for some reason, I couldn't access it. It was probably because I wasn't from this world. After a long and tiring journey, the old man brought Kim to a small city. He quickly got off the cart. The man wished him well, saying this was as far as he could go. Kim bowed his head in thanks. He watched the cart drive away. Then he turned to face the city before him. He watched the crowds and the scenery. He was impressed by the city of San Tokyo Nago. His eyes darted from place to place. He noticed everything was quite clean. There wasn't a single piece of trash on the streets. This place was cleaner than he had imagined. Kim walked to a notice board. He saw posters on it, wash your hands to prevent disease, plague and personal hygiene. After reading them, he felt the people here were truly civilized. Suddenly, he overheard someone say the city was unusually clean. Another person replied that only the area near the palace was this clean. His friend added that it was because the second prince grew up here. He said the second prince was the first to introduce the concept of hygiene for plagues. Since then, everyone recognized the second prince as a genius, even at just 10 years old. His friend exclaimed that it was expected of a prince. He also revealed the second prince would come of age next month. He would be visiting the city. Both of them were excited to meet the prince. Kim listened to their conversation in silence. The concept of hygiene only became common on Earth around the 20th century. How could a child in a place like the Middle Ages come up with that? He made a guess, but he wasn't very certain. He just stood there, lost in thought. Then he came to a conclusion. There might be someone else here just like him, a person with memories of Earth. And not long after, I met him. The moment he saw Kim, the second prince was in utter disbelief. But Kim just gave a cunning smile. He was also quite surprised. The second prince's voice trembled as he asked why he was here. The second prince's identity was Hypnic. He was terrified and called him Buon Thursday. A monologue began. My real name, no, my name in my previous life was Eddie Montoya. I was a second-generation Mexican-American. I was a member of the UN's International Police Force and a CIA intelligence officer. I lived a very elite life, but something terrible happened. It all ended after I encountered that monster. I died a horrible death, but after my death, there was a completely new world. When I first arrived, I kept my eyes shut, not daring to open them. But after a moment, I mustered the courage to open my eyes. When I woke up, I had become a child. My new name was Edward. Edward was the second prince of the Gokantan kingdom. My second life was extremely easy. I introduced everything from hygiene to science. I also knew about astronomy and countless other things. My knowledge from Earth was extremely useful in a medieval world, and thanks to my special training from my past life, politics was a piece of cake. I would have been overpowered as a commoner, but I was born into royalty. Furthermore, the first prince wasn't the heir to the throne. No, he couldn't be. That meant I would become king. The thought made Hypnic smile endlessly. He was parading through the streets. People were cheering for him. He waved back excitedly, his heart burning with the desire to be king of this world. But he had no idea that his nightmare was standing in the crowd. Night fell at the manor of Lord Santo Kilnago. He lay exhausted on his bed after the parade, sighing that forcing a smile was torture. Suddenly, he heard a rustling sound. He turned to the window and saw the tongue of a lizard. He was terrified when he saw it climbing into his room through the window. Though still panicked, he drew his sword and demanded to know who it was. He wondered how a lizardman could have gotten past the guards. Suddenly, the lizardman said, "Long time no see." This only confused him more. The lizardman then began to transform into Kim. He asked Hypnic, "Don't you remember me?" The moment he saw him, his face turned pale with fear. He couldn't believe it. He cursed at him, calling him a damn monster. He called him Buon Thursday. Seeing him again terrified him so much that he had to tell himself it was just a nightmare. He said it was a nightmare, but his body was about to pass out. And sure enough, he fainted, collapsing to the floor with a thud. That made him think that his reaction was really over the top. Suddenly, a servant's voice called from outside. The person opened the door and entered. He apologized to Hypnic for disturbing him so late, but when he saw him lying on the bed, he assumed he was asleep. Suddenly, the man jumped when he looked to the side. He wondered when the giant teddy bear, which was Kim in disguise, had been placed there. However, He paid no more attention to him and turned to call out to the prince. As he asked if he was asleep, his hand pulled something out. It turned out he was about to assassinate him with a knife hidden in his pocket. But before he could do anything, Kim blocked his knife hand with a claw. This made the man turn to look at him in shock. Seeing that he could move, he was so scared he started talking nonsense. Kim calmly said that Hipponich couldn't die yet, so he should die in his place. As soon as he finished speaking, he dealt with him right in the room. It seems he was too loud while taking care of the man. He accidentally alerted a group of nearby guards to the room. They kicked open the door and shouted while he was still dealing with the man. Seeing people arrive, he felt he had made a small problem much bigger. The three men were terrified to see a giant monster like him standing in the room. Suddenly, one of them said that since things had come to this, they would switch to plan B. They all rushed forward, wanting to take out both Kim and Hipponich. He stood still, looking at the man he had just sent to his grave. Then he looked at the group and wondered if they were all on the same side. But he didn't think any further and immediately grabbed the prince. He then carried him and jumped straight out of the room through the window. He landed gently, but the prince fell face first. Then he left, taking the prince with him, deciding to save him for now. Elsewhere, someone was writing something down. Outside his room, a hurried report was heard. "My lord, it's urgent." Baron Kanagawa heard this and asked what had happened. The man who had just tried to kill Hipponich pretended to be worried. He told the Baron that the prince had been kidnapped by an intruder. Upon hearing this, the Baron slammed his fist on the table in alarm. He immediately thought of who the culprit might be. He was furious that someone would dare do such a thing in his territory. So, he ordered his troops to rescue the prince. The mole heard this and outwardly agreed. But inside, he was smiling sinisterly. On a hillside, Kim had returned to his human form. He was panting heavily, wondering how many people were chasing him to make him run so hard. By this time, Hipponich had woken up. Seeing this, Kim spoke to him. But waking up to see him startled the prince again. He was horrified, wondering if it wasn't a dream. Then he foamed at the mouth and fainted again, much to Kim's bewilderment. Feeling helpless, he didn't even bother looking at him anymore. "How are you here?" Hipponich was stunned. He couldn't understand why Kim was here. Kim, for his part, couldn't figure out how the other guy was here either. His expression immediately turned cold. He looked at Hipponich and demanded to know why he was here. Hipponich was so scared he gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. He couldn't guess what Kim was planning. A thought flashed through his mind. Was he going to find out his secret of reincarnation and kill him again? As if reading his mind, Kim immediately reassured him. "Don't worry, I won't kill you." Hearing this, he looked surprised. His face was filled with disbelief. "Really? Promise me." It was unclear what power he used to make Kim promise. Of course, Kim just replied casually. "That's natural, but I'm not sure, so I can't promise you." At that moment, Kim's face grew even colder. He smirked, looked straight at Hipponich, and said he thought he'd already made him pay for his betrayal. Hipponich immediately remembered the past. He froze and trembled, clenching his fists. He gathered all his courage and asked if he planned to send all the traitors to their graves like him. If so, he was sorry, but he wouldn't cooperate. Before he could continue, Kim launched a psychological attack. "Don't you think it's unfair? I just sent you to the transport team to die, but Jenner and the others involved are still alive and well. Now, Hipponich is considered dead and Kim has disappeared. So who really benefited?" Hearing that, his face darkened as if his deepest secret had been exposed. Kim continued, "It seems everyone but you got promoted and is living happily, right?" That sentence seemed to push his anger to the limit. Veins bulged on his face. The thought of the others getting promoted and celebrating sent his anger soaring. Looking at their backs, he couldn't help but feel bitter about his own fate. He had worked the hardest, yet he was the one who was stuck in a place with the most backward civilization. He seemed to have a revelation, awakening the demon inside him. Comradeship? Ridiculous. Forget it. He was no longer Eddie Montoya. He was Prince Edward of the Gokkenton Kingdom, Elmo. After a mental struggle, Hipponich finally made a decision. He extended his hand to Kim and said firmly, "Forget it. I'll cooperate with you." As if waiting for those words, Kim smiled with satisfaction. He then reached out and shook his hand. But even so, Hipponich's mind was still in turmoil. He thought Kim's current plan was to return to Earth and deal with all those who betrayed him. Until they found a way back, what was the first thing they had to do? It was to kill all those bastards. Then, to secure this place. Until then, Hipponich intended to use Kim as a stepping stone for his own plans. He wasn't the only one planning. Kim was doing the same. He was quite pleased with this development. Cooperating with a prince would bring him countless benefits. Of course, the quantity and quality of information he could get would be much different. He looked satisfied. Moreover, this was not a bad choice if he knew how to get back to Earth. It was as if they were telepathic. They didn't need to speak. They both wanted to use the other to achieve their own goals. So let's find out the cause. It seemed Kim had told Hipponich the whole truth. He frowned. An assassination? Was it that despicable old man? At this point, Kim had finished tying a piece of cloth around his waist and chest. He was surprised that he could remain so calm after hearing the story. Hippanich stood up and replied calmly that he was so calm because he was used to this kind of thing. Now, let's go. But then he smiled, turned to Kim, and asked if his position would be a key factor in his plan. And notably, in the near future, both of them would be participating in the coming-of-age ceremony. About 300 years ago, Edward the Great was the first king of this kingdom. He once went hunting and stayed overnight at the Carnival Inn. At that time, he wore a blue robe, accompanied by 2 guards. He was quite pleased with the innkeeper's hospitality. So, in return, the king granted him the title of Baron. Not only that, he looked very happy, smiling broadly and giving a thumbs up. That event marked the beginning of the Santo Kunagu Hotel, and also the source of the Kunagu baronial family's power. Since then, the Kunagu family became one of the 5 most powerful families with royal backing. And of course, as long as the royal family's power existed, the Kunagawa family's status would flourish. Conversely, if the royal family disappeared, the Kunagawa family would immediately collapse. From this, it could be concluded that the Baron would do anything, using all his strength, to maintain the throne. Therefore, one of the assassins was sure that he would send troops to assassinate him. While that man was lost in thought, a soldier shouted that they had found the prince. Hearing this, he was extremely surprised. He didn't understand how it could be so fast. At this point, the Baron began to break out in a cold sweat. He asked the soldier if it was true. If so, to bring the prince here immediately. The other man heard the Baron and quickly tried to stop him because their group wasn't ready yet. The soldier then stammered that the prince had come on his own. The other 2 were stunned, as if struck by lightning. At that moment, standing below the castle were Hippanich and Kim in a different form. As soon as he saw Hippanich, the Baron pushed through the soldiers to look down. He shouted down, asking if he was okay. Seeing the Baron poke his head out, he made a face as if he had a grudge from 8 lifetimes ago. "Oh, there you are." He was about to go down to welcome the prince when he suddenly ordered the Baron to arrest his own army. Thinking he misheard, he asked Hippanich again, "What, Your Highness?" Hippanich gritted his teeth and angrily told the Baron that his own subordinates tried to assassinate him last night. He then pointed to Kim, saying that thanks to him, his secret bodyguard, he was still safe. Hippanich looked up at the people above. Outnumbered, he had no choice but to flee. The Baron and the assassin were now sweating profusely. "Assassination? Really?" The assassin immediately shouted, telling the Baron not to be fooled. He pointed directly at Kim, stating that the prince was being threatened by Kim and was blaming them. Hearing this bold-faced liar, Hippanich was speechless. His face darkened as if he was about to explode. "Kidnapped? Threatened? How dare you say such absurd things to me?" Being spoken to like that by this arrogant fool, Hippanich became extremely furious. His murderous aura shot towards him, making him flinch. Hippanich immediately shouted, "I am Edward of Gokkenton, descendant of Edward the Great, and the heir to his title. You think I would be too scared to speak the truth?" Hippanich's face was so red with anger it looked like it would spit fire. Hippanich then delivered a final blow aimed at the assassin, scaring him into silence. His blasphemous words could be considered treason. The prince's words scared him so much he stumbled backward, unconsciously taking a few steps back. The Baron observed Hippanich's attitude in Kim, who had been standing silently. He looked at him. He seemed crude, but that color was that of mithril. Furthermore, combined with the armor made from a red dragon's scales, he clearly couldn't be a kidnapper. The Baron's judgment was quite accurate, so in the end, the Baron had to reconsider which side to believe. This made the already scared assassin even more panicked. Immediately, the order was given. Arrest this man and his soldiers. Kim was a bit surprised at how quickly things were handled. Hippanich just scoffed, as if this was nothing to him. Soon, the assassins were all tied up. Not a single one escaped. Now, facing the soldiers, Hippanich spoke softly. "You know something?" The other guy smirked and said, "Kunagawa, one of the great families of the kingdom, has many secrets unknown to outsiders." Saying that, he licked his lips, looking extremely roguish. Then Hippanich walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. He leaned in close to his ear and whispered, "One of those secrets is brutal torture." The prince's face darkened, leaving only his eyes and a malicious smile. "As a warning, don't think you can die peacefully." The assassin's sweat now flowed more than a stream. He couldn't understand how things had turned out like this. His plan had been so perfect. Suddenly, someone's laughter caught his attention. Despite his anxiety, he looked up, following the sound. Standing before him was Kim, looking down at him. Driven mad with anger, he squeezed his eyes shut and cursed Kim for ruining his great plan. He wanted to know who he really was. Suddenly, Kim bent down and slightly lifted his helmet. The face of a bear was revealed, instantly terrifying him. Instantly remembering what happened, he stammered, You. At that moment, his eyes narrowed into a savage and beastly smile. He softly said 3 words, "Rest in peace," then pulled his helmet back down. The assassin was dragged away by 2 soldiers, screaming, "You damn monster." His desperate screams followed. And so, at this point, Kim recounted the story of his outfit. He had stolen a display armor and a piece of wood from a house. After covering them with slime, for some reason, the slime seemed quite annoyed. But it didn't matter. The end result was that he had turned those old items into the mithril alloy he had eaten from the dragon's treasure. He had to admit that slime had countless uses. Thanks to it, he had easily deceived the Baron. Facing the Baron now, he began to say that the assassins had confessed everything under torture. The final result was that they were Mauteo Mesut, meaning Hell's messengers. His expression was extremely serious. He never expected the prince's guards to be infiltrated by such people. He then asked Kim if he knew anything about them. A thought flashed in his mind. This was the right time to say what he had discussed with the prince. The two were now facing each other. He slowly began to speak to the Baron. Mauteo Mesut, I think I've heard of them from the previous night. After he finished speaking, the Baron asked, is that true? He had heard rumors that Queen Yvonne Vordau, the second queen who died of a violent illness, but the truth was she was poisoned. As soon as he heard this, the Baron's face darkened. Poisoned? If so, does that mean the culprit is? It seemed their thoughts aligned, so he just nodded slightly. He was so angry his hand clenched and trembled. He couldn't believe something like this could happen. Suddenly, he slammed his hand on the table and stood up. With the sword already in his hand, his face was filled with murderous intent. I won't let them get away with this. At that moment, a hand rested on his shoulder. Kim had appeared behind the Baron, startling him. He calmly advised him to stay calm. His eyes, now glowing red, were terrifying even through the mask. He began to remind the Baron that these were people who assassinated powerful figures. They should not be underestimated. At that point, he was a little panicked. He turned and asked what he should do. Could he only stand by and watch? Kim then squeezed the Baron's shoulder, making it clear this was not his business. After speaking, he forced him back into his chair. The Baron was so startled he lost his balance and dropped his sword. He emphasized again that this was between him and them. With just that push, the Baron was convinced that with such strength, he could definitely do it. He then let go of the Duke's shoulder, saying this would be resolved soon because the prince had found a clue. Hearing that, the Baron looked at him doubtfully. If it's the prince, I'll believe it. At this point, Kim realized the Baron was very obedient to the prince. He immediately turned to leave. Since the ceremony was almost over, he asked to leave first. The Baron remained seated, his face emotionless. He called out after him. His final words were that he hoped he would take care of the prince. He just waved his hand. Don't worry. He said that, but thought differently. He would let him live until he had settled everything. After that, he wasn't sure. At that moment, a royal carriage was moving. Inside, two people were discussing the clues about Mauteo Mesut, the ones targeting them. It turned out the people in the carriage were Hipponich and Kim. After hearing Kim, he smirked and replied that it was all a fabrication. He thought finding clues was pointless because he already knew who the culprit was. Kim was also full of questions, so he asked who it was. Hipponich's face darkened, revealing a cunning expression. He didn't reveal the identity, just told him they would meet him at the palace anyway. It would be more interesting to tell him then. This immediately sparked his curiosity, making him eager to know. At that moment, he told him to put this aside for now. He seemed to have something he wanted to ask him earlier. Indeed, there was something he wanted to ask. It was about the status window. The prince rested his chin on his hand, thinking, you can't access it? According to Kim's guess, it was probably because he wasn't from this world. The prince frowned. How strange. When the status window opened, a natural landscape appeared with some specific content, such as the continent's name, Elmos. This was a land protected by the goddess, where humans and monsters coexisted peacefully. According to Hipponic, not just humans, but all creatures in this world possessed a status window. People could use their perception skill to see others' status windows. And of course, this Hipponic also had the perception skill. He pointed at Kim, saying that once when he tried to use the skill on him, he had glimpsed a status window. Seeing Kim's lack of reaction, he decided to handle it himself. A magic circle appeared on his hand. Perception. But after casting the skill, strangely, no status window appeared. He looked confused. Why is there nothing? I didn't do any step wrong. After thinking for a while, Hipponic suddenly realized something. He suddenly told him to turn into some animal, which confused Kim greatly. Though he didn't understand, he complied. Grizzly Bear's claw. His arm began to change shape. Looking at his transformed hand, he suddenly remembered eating this bear in Alaska. The taste was unremarkable. He didn't know why he was suddenly raiding food. However, Hipponic told him not to turn into a creature from Earth. He suggested he try turning into something from this world. At that moment, he immediately realized something. He began to transform his arm into an orc's arm. Once again, he used perception, and this time the status window actually appeared. The name, species, and level sections were blank. Only one skill was clearly written. Enhancement LV3, Vitality Boost LV6. Seeing the information appear, the prince laughed happily because his guess was correct. Looking at the board, Kim also seemed to understand the problem. Hipponic smirked. It seemed Kim didn't have a status window because he wasn't from this world. But once he turned into something from here, the problem was solved. but now he wore a sinister smile. Not yet. He immediately changed his hand into a lizardman's claw, then the skin of a chow, and the scales of a serpent. The fangs were from the Kim Kang Lang. The status window immediately changed. Besides the initial enhancement and vitality boost, now there was also rapid regeneration LV7, status effect resistance LV3, and roar LV5, and it didn't stop there. There was also the dragon. Seeing him transform more and more, Hypnix panicked. Hey, wait, slow down. Then Kim tried all the monsters he had eaten so far. He transformed while holding the book, confusing the other guy. He just watched and exclaimed that he had eaten a lot. This repeated until the status window completely stopped changing. The final result was name, none, species, none, level, none, skills, enhancement levers 3, vitality boost LV6, rapid regeneration LV7, status effect resistance LV3, roar LV5, toxin filtration LV10, dragon scales LV10, hardening LV10. He wondered if the word none meant non-existent. The thought that his existence was like a system error in the status window crossed his mind. A few days later, we have arrived, Your Highness. The carriage stopped. Hypnix got out with Kim. He had also transformed. In front of them was the assassin's building. He asked if he was ready. They were about to meet the assassin's leader. He smirked and reminded him not to be too surprised when he met him. The two approached the door. However, the two guards showed no intention of blocking their way. He said with a serious face that the person behind this door was the leader. The door slowly opened, but even a slight crack was enough to shock him to the core. In a situation like this, how could he not be surprised? Looking deep inside, a figure sitting on a chair gradually became clear. It was an old man sitting solemnly. His face was extremely fearsome. You're back, my son. The reason Kim was shocked was that this old man was not only the leader of the Assassin's Guild, but also the king of this place. Kim and Prince Hypnix came to meet the king. The prince spoke. Prince Edward Gokkenton requests an audience. I have returned safely. The king tilted his head, resting his cheek on his hand. I have been informed. I'm glad you are safe. Although he said that, his face showed no joy. He thought, how did he manage to escape? Prince Hypnix reported, it was all thanks to the loyal guards you prepared for me. But in his heart, he thought, guards? More like assassins. Their sharp gazes met in the middle of the grand hall. Kim, standing beside him, thought to himself that even he could tell they were provoking each other. Suddenly, the king turned to Kim, who was still kneeling beside the prince. You there, are you Sir Kim? The king's cold question made the atmosphere heavy. This is the first time I've heard this name, and the first time I've heard of you being a secret bodyguard. Kim felt the atmosphere and wondered, is this the pressure of a monarch? He glanced at Prince Hypnix, but honestly, he didn't feel it was anything special. After all, he'd eaten a dragon. What was there to fear from a mere king? The king secretly praised him. Oh, he does have the courage of a knight. He then turned to Hypnix. Can you hand over this companion to me? Hypnix immediately refused. Forgive me, but I must refuse this request for 2 reasons. The king wanted to know the reasons. Hypnix explained, first, he is not an object but a person. I do not own him, so I cannot give him to you. The prince patted Kim's shoulder and continued. Second, Sir Kim and I are best friends. Though I am the second prince, I have no older brother. So we have become sworn brothers. Hearing this, Kim gave a completely genuine smile. He gave a thumbs up to Hypnix and said, I'm fond of you too, my brother. After saying that, they looked at each other and laughed heartily, their laughter echoing through the room. Witnessing this, the king was so angry that veins popped on his face. He asked the prince, you said brothers? Then the king angrily slammed his fist on the armrest and shouted, if there is nothing else, get out. After returning to his room, Hypnix drank wine and laughed loudly about the earlier exchange. Hypnix winked at Kim and said, thanks, my brother, you helped me a lot. Suddenly, a stranger appears wearing a full set of mithril armor, the rarest resource in the kingdom. He must be very confused. Because Kim had helped the prince gain the upper hand against the king, the prince decided to reward him. It was a special set of enchanted armor, which Kim was now trying on. He asked the prince, have you never beaten him before? The prince sighed and replied, no. Since he was 10, he has been training children from various orphanages across the kingdom. According to the prince, besides being taught basic servant duties, they were also trained in information gathering and even assassination. The king sent these servants from orphanages into every royal and noble family to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. That was how the king seized the throne, despite being only the 4th prince. At this point, Prince Hypnix was extremely angry. He shattered the wine bottle in his hand and cursed. The prince gritted his teeth and said angrily, that was my idea. Witnessing that anger, Kim thought, you're no different from him. Hypnix laughed, looking extremely pleased. Because I said I became sworn brothers with a complete stranger. Although he acted normal on the outside, he must be panicking inside. Seeing his face was truly satisfying. Thinking about this, Hippanich was so pleased he couldn't stop smiling. Just then, someone pushed open the door and called out, "Brother." The newcomer was Princess Elena Gokkenton. In a bulky, puffy blue dress, she rushed into the room. She asked Hippanich, "I heard what happened. How could you be so rude to father?" Kim immediately stood in front of her. He demanded that she not get any closer to Prince Hippanich. Seeing this, the princess shouted, "How dare you order me around? Do you know who I am?" Kim remained firm, replying coldly, "This is the prince's private room. You barged in without knocking." Princess Elena stubbornly shouted back, "How dare you?" Kim did not back down. He immediately drew his sword and swung it towards the princess. The blade stopped just short of her neck, making her gasp in fear. Kim warned her, "There won't be a next time." Princess Elena collapsed to the floor. Just then, Prince Hippanich shouted, "Stop, Sir Kim." The prince approached his trembling sister and asked, "Are you all right, Elena?" Seeing the frightened princess, Prince Hippanich gallantly helped her up while she was still sobbing. He gently reassured her, "Please forgive him. He was just worried about my safety. He meant no harm." After that, Hippanich gently escorted her to the door, softly saying, "Go back for now. We'll talk another day." As soon as the princess left, the moment the door closed, Prince Hippanich's expression changed instantly. He gritted his teeth. "That stupid woman." Kim asked, "Is that your sister?" Prince Hippanich clenched his fist, full of resentment, and told Kim, "Yes, I told you in the carriage. She was blessed with power by the goddess. She's the first one I'll eliminate when I become king." Eleanor Gancanton is the youngest of King Edward IV's 3 surviving children. 3 other children were eliminated in the selection process and now rest in the royal cemetery. From birth, she was granted the power by the goddess to go anywhere she wished. Currently, she is infatuated with Hippanich's future self, Edward Grand Canteen. Even though they have different mothers, how could she fall in love with her own brother? Hearing this, Kim commented, "She's crazy. I'm just asking to be sure. Do you intend to accept her feelings?" Hippanich was somewhat annoyed. He replied, "That's not funny." Hippanich repeated, "I told you, the second queen was poisoned. The one who invited her to the tea party and forced her to drink the tea was the first queen, her mother." That memory fueled Hippanich's hatred because the second queen was his mother. The prince continued, "She is the daughter of the first queen, who was favored after my mother died." Kim seemed to understand why Hippanich was so angry. He said, well, your sister was born from your mother's death." But then he noticed something unusual and asked, "Wait, if the king didn't kill the second queen, why do you hate him?" Hippanich explained that it was related to the first prince. However, he refused to continue because he couldn't speak of the first prince unless he was present or had his permission. Kim asked suspiciously, "Why are you hiding this?" Hippanich made it clear that he couldn't do otherwise because he had sworn an oath to the goddess. After saying that, the prince went to get his cloak. He fixed his hair, calmed himself, and said to Kim, "All right, let's go, my brother." As they walked out, Kim asked, "Aren't you going to deal with the failed assassination?" And Hippanich replied, "They say the gods get angry if a son is killed in his own home. So that old man has tried to send me out of the palace many times. But I have completed my coming-of-age ceremony. That means I am qualified to be the future king." Hippanich said smugly, "He can't just send me out whenever he wants any more." He then turned to add, "This kingdom is full of that old man's supporters. We need to prioritize this problem first, for example, by winning over the prime minister who holds all financial power." Distracted by Kim, the prince accidentally bumped into someone and fell. In pain, he touched his cheek and said, "What's this? No matter who it is, I will punish you. How dare you block the prince's path?" Then Hippanich looked up. The person before him was his older brother. The warrior extended a hand to help him up. He asked kindly, "Are you okay, little brother?" The king muttered to himself, "Brothers?" He curled his lip in a contemptuous smile, thinking, quite surprising. He was the one who had slaughtered all his brothers for the throne. To the king, his blood brothers were nothing more than obstacles. And yet, Hippanich had a sworn brother. In his eyes, that was nothing short of an insult. His plan had succeeded but also set a bad precedent. If a better precedent appeared, this problem would be solved. Those who passed the screening test were educated based on their abilities. A fair way for the eldest son to rule the kingdom worthily. His second son would operate in the shadows, eliminating any obstacles in the eldest son's path. His eldest daughter was smart and beautiful, so he planned a political marriage for her. But contrary to all expectations, the abilities of his eldest and second sons far exceeded what was necessary. The second son was so cunning he wanted to eliminate even those already chosen, and the eldest was so righteous that he chose to become a warrior for the goddess. The eldest son of the Gancanton royal family disappeared in this way. Now, only the violent, cunning second son and the standard eldest daughter remained. The king clenched his fist in anger. He would rather let his eldest daughter take the throne than let that snake-like son become king. He could not become king. Hippanich looked at his brother with a hesitant gaze, but then he remembered his brother's status was different now. Hippanich quickly bowed to the warrior before him. The warrior returned the bow and said, "Since this is a serious matter, we should go to the audience chamber together." Kim, As a soldier following Hippanich, was surprised to see the one chosen by the goddess with his own eyes. Someone who gave up social status, with a straightforward and kind personality. That was the eldest son. If protected by the goddess, he must be very strong. Just his appearance was enough to understand his true strength. He followed them to meet the king, silently thinking that the warrior might be an obstacle in his plan. The lone warrior stood before the king on his throne, flanked by his children and some nobles. He glanced at Hippanich with annoyance. "You're here again? I don't want to see you." Hippanich didn't back down, glaring back. "I didn't want to come either." He quickly regained his composure and welcomed the son who should have been king. "Welcome, warrior. Our kingdom welcomes you with all our hearts." The warrior quickly returned the greeting. "Thank you, your majesty." The king asked about the serious matter he wanted to discuss. The warrior got straight to the point. "Yesterday, I received the power of the holy light from the goddess." As soon as he finished, everyone around was stunned. "The power of the holy light?" The warrior continued. "I have received confirmation from the saintess of the church, and I will go on an expedition for a week. I want your army's support. Of course, I will allow you to go with them." The king pondered for a moment. Hippanich slammed his fist on the table, cursing. He muttered in frustration. "It's ruined. Everything's ruined. Damn it. Damn it all. A demon king?" Right when we were about to act, Kim asked, confused, what was going on. Then Hippanich remembered that he didn't know the common knowledge of this place. A crimson demon with long, sharp horns. They were the rival species of humans. Their king was called the Demon King. Under the goddess's arrangement, the two races always maintained a rivalry and balance. When the balance of power tilted, the goddess would create a warrior on the other side. However, if the gap was not closed, it would make the warrior stronger and weaken the power of the holy light. The power of the holy light meant that even if you killed the king of another race, the gods would not condemn you. Normally, the Demon King would be treated like any other creature of the goddess, but a warrior with the holy light's power could destroy the Demon King. After the explanation, Kim still didn't understand the core of the problem. Hippanich slapped his forehead, unable to believe he still didn't get it, so he continued to explain. "At the moment the holy light descends, humanity will be cornered. As a royal, after my coming-of-age ceremony, I have a duty to fight for the nation's honor. That damned old man will send me to the front lines. Even if I survive and return, the previous negotiations will be rejected." Hippanich cried out in pain. The next day, just as he said, the king ordered Hippanich to the battlefield. Unable to disobey, he could only comply. The king praised his son in front of everyone. "I didn't expect him to value honor and duty so much. I can see the qualities of a prince in him." After speaking, he smirked as if he had just achieved his goal. A carriage was prepared specially for the second prince and Kim. The princess watched her brother's figure from above. Eleanor sadly wiped her tears, hoping for her brother's safe return. Hippanich felt a chill down his spine, wondering if someone was cursing him. He quickly ushered Kim into the carriage and left the royal palace. The carriage, carrying the prince and other soldiers, sped along the road. Inside, Kim was surprised to see him so obedient to the king. Hippanich crossed his arms, bored. "What other choice do I have? I'll achieve great things and return to show that old man." "How's the situation outside?" Kim scanned the surroundings. "It's quiet, but it seems they're plotting something." Someone was slowly approaching the carriage. Hippanich was extremely annoyed. "That damn old man. He really hasn't forgotten me. Tell me the position." "Right, behind," heading for the rear wheel. "It seems he's going to break the defensive line." Kim glanced over and asked if he should take him out. He immediately replied, "No, if the defensive line is broken, the Kajavan wall will also weaken." The man swung his sword towards the carriage. A protective magic circle shattered his sword. It seemed the man didn't care and immediately moved to the second step. The others immediately cast fireball. The carriage driver, seeing everything was ready, also began to act. But before he could move, a crash was heard from behind. Before they could understand what happened, several of them were knocked unconscious. They were all shocked. "What's going on?" The flames hit the carriage wheels with a loud bang. One after another, they threw fireballs at the prince. As they were about to launch another attack, their own comrades were thrown from the carriage. That man was burned all over, screaming in pain. The other guy quickly apologized. A huge black shadow suddenly appeared inside the carriage. It had 3 massive horns, and its blood-red eyes didn't look friendly. Kim transformed into a beast and stepped out of the carriage, while Hippanich sat calmly in his seat. His eyes also showed a hint of panic as he watched him turn into a monster. Kim replied, "For now, I'm on your side. Get used to it." The two stepped out, facing the soldiers who had been causing trouble. One of them was surprised by the appearance of a monster. Kim took a deep breath to gather his strength. Then he roared at the men and their horses. As expected, the horses were terrified by the roar. A soldier immediately cast mind control magic. The terrified horse fell silent instantly. The one behind him was worried when he saw the major use that spell, but he didn't care and just told everyone to focus on the mission first. They would fix his mind later. "Soldiers, I will lead." He drew his sword and charged forward. One by one, The foolish soldiers rushed forward like moths to a flame. A fierce flame ignited in Kim's mouth. He breathed fire at the overconfident enemies. The leader was instantly incinerated. He chuckled to himself. This is a dragon's fire breath? Pretty impressive. And I can use it again after something called MP refills. Using the terrain as an advantage was better than direct combat. The followers were enraged to see their major defeated so easily. Another fool stepped forward to take Kim's life. He swung his sword at his shoulder, but instead of blood, the blade chipped. He grabbed the horse's tail, then he swung it aside. The rider fell and hit his head on the ground. Realizing the situation was bad, they decided to retreat. Run, we need to get this information to the entire battalion. They didn't forget to pray for their major's safe return. But before he could finish, the one running beside him was burned to a crisp by dragon fire. It was too fast for the naked eye to follow. What happened? Two beams of light pierced the bodies of the two remaining escapees. Kim wondered what that magic was. Hippanich didn't hide it. My talent is light magic. I was born with the gift of light magic. Kim was surprised that someone born in darkness specialized in light magic. Hippanich himself admitted it. After a long journey, they stopped at a large inn. The second prince and he ate a meal there. Kim complained that Hippanich didn't go with the warrior. If he had, this wouldn't have happened. He wiped his mouth and replied, if I went with the warrior, they wouldn't have a chance to kill me. Their master must have planned it that way. We still have some time before we meet the others. Any more questions, Kim? Kim thought for a moment and said, it's about the power of the holy light. Isn't something like that unfair to the demon race? Harming the goddess's chosen warrior would be considered treason. Good question. I'll get straight to the point. You are allowed to kill the warrior granted the holy light's power. The goddess is fair. The power of the holy light exempts everyone. Even if the warrior is killed, the demon king won't be condemned. However, that has never happened. He started picking his teeth. Perhaps if the demon king killed the warrior, humanity would end. It means we are too weak. Kim smirked and muttered, a battle for survival. Huh. My life isn't much different. Hippanich frowned, confused. Why are you smiling like that? You act like you're not a part of this war. Kim replied calmly, I'm not. Hippanich began to feel a sense of fear, hoping he wouldn't ignore it. He replied cheerfully, of course, our contract still stands. He sighed in relief. At least you're a monster who can understand me. Kim found it strange. Are you interested in another monster? Hippanich replied, there was a monster called the Saintess. Unlike her name, she was quite foolish. Unfortunately, the person being badmouthed appeared right behind him. I'm glad to hear that. Your Highness, what did I do? Hippanich was startled. I hope you misheard. Angela smiled brightly as if nothing had happened. So you're saying there's something wrong with my ears? Hippanich quickly replied, how could there be anything wrong with your ears, especially with that monstrous hearing? Her smile gradually lost its humanity. Is this an insult to saints like us? He began to mock her words. Mistaking a personal insult for a group insult is a disease of high-status people. I'm using those people as teachers to maintain a clear judgment. Angela didn't back down and immediately retorted. Most mentally ill people think they are normal. Go to the temple. There are many healing spells for this. One after another, they argued. The temple has so many patients. It's natural they developed a cure. The entire room suddenly shook as if there was an earthquake. It was Angela's fist hitting Hippanich's chair. This scared him. She was furious, demanding to go outside and prepare his funeral. Hippanich retorted that the funeral was for her. Kim tiredly pulled up his helmet's visor. Quiet! He suddenly roared, startling everyone in the inn. You didn't see or hear anything. He held a handful of gold and threw it into the air. The crowd immediately scrambled for the gold. He walked away, cursing. This wasn't part of the deal, Hippanich. You bastard. That girl was a saintess, a knight created from a saint. Just as the goddess created warriors, they used blessings and magic to create saints. But unlike the goddess who could create a warrior in a blink of an eye, it took them over 10 years. Furthermore, only one saint could be trained because the cost was too enormous. A perfected saint would demonstrate a perfect battle, bones of blessed metal, extremely strong muscles, even superhuman abilities. Damn it, I was the first one. Hippanich clenched his fist in frustration. When he was 6, he discovered her talent and wanted to make her an SS class, but the priest found her first and took her to the church. Damn it, he looked at Angela in front of him fearfully. He didn't know if he could defeat his opponent. Kim left the tavern and went to find them. As he walked, he heard the sound of fighting somewhere. Kim calmly approached and stood watching. A few seconds later, he asked, Are you done fighting? Hippanich was out of breath, and Angela was no better. He didn't bother and just said the warrior was coming, so they should finish up. She knew when to back down, dropped the matter, and left. He saw this and gritted his teeth in anger. You brat, next time I will. He couldn't finish his sentence. Kim called him back, annoyed. Before he could react, Kim's hand locked around his throat. Kim warned him sternly. I agreed to be a guardian knight. I don't remember becoming a babysitter. Don't make more work for me. His eyes showed he wasn't joking. Then Kim turned and walked away. Hippanix was in pain, but he could only endure it. Don't make assumptions when you know nothing. Kim, Hippanix, and a few others stood on the street. At that moment, a young, blonde-haired warrior was approaching. That warrior looked surprisingly normal. He wasn't flying. He wasn't riding a horned white horse. He looked like a knight in regular clothes. He approached and quickly greeted everyone. The warrior also gave a special greeting to Saintess Angela. She was standing right behind them. The young woman bowed in return. The warrior placed a hand on his chest. He bowed. Then he turned toward Hippanix. This wasn't their first meeting. The warrior was also very happy to see Hippanix was safe. Hippanix greeted the warrior. He said there were some obstacles on the way, but they were nothing to worry about. The warrior then turned to Kim. He had met Kim once in the royal palace, but this was their first formal introduction. The two shook hands warmly. Kim also made sure to state his name. At that moment, Kim noticed Hippanix's annoyed frown behind them. He really couldn't understand this person. He wasn't a 2-year-old, so why was he acting so childish? Unlike Hippanix, the warrior understood the situation. The Saintess hadn't regained the power of the holy light. That meant the Demon King would be stronger than ever. The warrior knew he couldn't protect everyone in a fight, but he still asked if they were ready to journey with him. No matter how dangerous it was, they all chose to stand together. Suddenly, the warrior asked for Kim's opinion. He would surely agree. He was the prince's guardian knight. The warrior slammed the tip of his sword into the ground. He announced loudly, "Right here, right now, I declare the formation of the Demon King Subjugation Squad." But from a high platform behind them, a dark figure spoke. A taunting voice rang out. "I've been waiting for those words." Half of Francis's face was covered in shadow. He smiled, revealing sharp teeth. The warrior heard the voice and turned his head. He never expected a demon to appear in the street. Francis stood arrogantly on the bell tower. He mocked the humans for declaring war on demon territory. Then he spread his arms wide. His voice boomed like a bell. "From now on, there will only be war." That sound, those words, they scraped against their eardrums like a blade. The people on the street couldn't bear it. The warrior was also affected, but he didn't care at all. In his eyes, there was only the demon, a demon harming innocent people. The proud Lord Francis showed clear contempt. He had said it from the start. This was no place for humans. This village was demon territory. Only then did the group realize in shock. They were surrounded by demonic beasts. Thousands of beasts surrounded them. The villagers weren't human at all. They were demons, transformed by those loyal to the Demon King. The situation was dire, hanging by a thread. They stood back to back, each guarding a direction. The young warrior's hatred for Francis grew. He wanted to tear him into 1,000 pieces. Kim and his team faced werewolves. They were low-level demons that multiplied quickly by corrupting humans. Once a human turns, they can never go back. They can only become puppets for the demons. Francis watched from above. He knew those werewolves couldn't defeat this group, so he had another plan ready. The first target was Hippanix. It was a moment of danger. Hippanix leaped backward. Then he delivered a finishing blow to his opponent. Hippanix possessed the power of light. He unleashed it to its full potential. He even used his shield as a weapon. Francis meticulously recorded all of this. Next, he ordered the werewolves to attack Angela. The Saintess hadn't recovered her full power, but she still had various support spells. A werewolf saw her distraction. It lunged from behind, jaws wide open. But Angela wasn't afraid. With just one punch, she shut the enemy's mouth. They looked like small fry. But every werewolf that followed Angela was sent to their grave. This Saintess's appearance and her abilities were worlds apart. After the Saintess, the next target was the warrior. An opponent charged. The warrior swung his sword decisively. It sent the beast to the afterlife. His fighting style was very traditional. Fearing it wasn't at rest, he added another powerful strike. From behind the warrior, a werewolf howled again. This time, it was a werewolf in a little girl's dress. The warrior's head pounded. He didn't want to believe the thought in his mind. He saw innocent people transformed by the werewolf curse. He didn't know what to do, but he had to act. They could never be human again. Francis finished recording, very satisfied. Suddenly, a chilling sensation ran down his spine. Francis counted again and again. One person was missing, and this person was about to send him to his grave. He held the title of one of the 7 demon generals, yet he didn't sense the danger when death was so near. Less than a second later, Francis broke into a cold sweat. He realized Kim had circled behind him. He couldn't believe his own carelessness. He had let Kim slip past him so easily. He didn't want to believe it. He was one of the 7 demon generals. He couldn't be defeated. But Kim showed absolutely no mercy. A stream of hot, red liquid shot into the air. The liquid splattered and clung to Kim's armor. This news quickly spread to the lair of the 7 demon generals. Francis was too confident. He underestimated his opponent and grew careless. In the end, he paid with his life. His death wasn't glorious, but the remaining 6 demon generals understood. The one who was coming was no ordinary foe. But even so, the other demon generals didn't seem to care. Each one was arrogant. They thought Francis died simply because he was weak. The title 7 demon generals was just a cover. The true power was with the 4 great lords. They were sure humans couldn't defeat them. Their opponent was just a hero, limited by the goddess's rules. As for them, they had surpassed that limit long ago. Blood dripped from the bell tower. On the ground below, werewolf corpses lay scattered everywhere. After defeating Francis, Kim immediately leaped from above. He slammed Francis to the ground. He left him completely unable to resist. The warrior sheathed his sword. The werewolves below had been dealt with. Hippanix cast a healing spell, but he didn't dare look the proud lord in the face. His body was almost fully healed. The warrior was completely surprised. He looked at the motionless figure on the ground. This was Francis, of the 7 demon generals. Even though it was his first time seeing him, he was easy to recognize. Knowing it was one of the 7 demon generals, Hippanix wondered. Francis was supposed to be in charge of information. His authority couldn't be low, yet he only brought a group of weak werewolves. Was it overconfidence, or was there another reason? Hippanix couldn't figure it out. Maybe the demons didn't need him anymore. Or maybe the real enemy was someone else entirely. While everyone cleaned up the battlefield, Kim walked over to a werewolf's corpse. The werewolf had been finished off with a clean cut to the throat. These were all low-level monsters. After eating the lizardmen, his compatibility with amphibians had increased. So if he ate a werewolf, would his animal compatibility also increase? Kim had lost his patience. He really wanted to know the result after dealing with all of them. On the other side, Hippanix seemed lost in thought. His eyes were fixed on Francis's corpse. Suddenly, Kim approached, his face streaked with blood. He asked if Hippanix was planning to eat that guy. Hippanix was startled, but quickly calmed down. He reminded Kim to watch his words. They weren't alone. Then he pointed at the Lord of Pride. He said that was one of the 7 demon generals, the one who manages information. A man like that had died too easily. Hippanix thought the demon king no longer needed him, so he was left to fend for himself. But no matter where you are, information is crucial. If the demons would discard their information manager, it proved their society was no longer the same. Hippanix thought deeply. He and Kim had the same conclusion. A high-ranking individual was no longer useful. That meant their society had changed, but he couldn't figure out what that change was. Kim spoke suddenly. Maybe a third person? This immediately confused Hippanix. Kim continued, pointing to the second prince. The first person. Then he pointed to himself. The second person. Hippanix's blue eyes narrowed. He didn't expect someone from Earth to say that. Even if he hated to admit it, it had actually happened. He glanced at the warrior and the saintess. They were still busy cleaning up. He just hoped they didn't hear what he was about to say. Back to the Demon Kingdom situation. If a third person really existed, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Hippanix smiled. If that theory was true, it would be the perfect chance to deal with the warrior and the saintess. After cleaning up, they dug a deep hole. They placed the werewolf corpses inside. The warrior shoveled spadefuls of dirt down. The earth and rocks piled up, burying everything. It buried even the useful information they had just gained. When they were done, they erected a large, cross-shaped stone. The saintess knelt before the stone. She prayed for the werewolves to find peace with God. Even if their bodies were corrupted, their souls remained intact. A while later, the group left the street. They headed for some horse-drawn carriages. Hippanix felt lucky. At least they still had carriages to use. The saintess seemed hesitant. They had carriages, but who would drive them? There was no other choice. The driver had to be Hippanix. Kim only knew how to operate engine-powered vehicles, so he chose to sit on the roof. The warrior's principle was to never operate anything. The saintess didn't know how to drive, so they both sat inside. Kim teased Hippanix. He was a prince, yet he had to drive for commoners. He just gave a forced smile. For him, driving a carriage was like playing Dragon Quest. Kim didn't understand what Hippanix mentioned. He was a bit curious. Hippanix was surprised and teased Kim for not knowing how to enjoy life. Kim immediately retorted. If not knowing things like that meant he didn't enjoy life, then he might as well just self-destruct. Schooled by Kim, Hippanix looked annoyed. Kim took off his helmet. He then realized Hippanix was speaking to him in Russian. Clearly, there was something he didn't want the two in the carriage to hear. Hippanix made no attempt to hide it. He said he knew how to deal with the warrior. Kim was quite surprised. He immediately wanted to know how. As someone who experimented on many creatures, Kim knew that dealing with a warrior was not simple at all. Even if he had the power. The first time he saw the warrior in the village, he felt something was off. Just seeing the warrior act decisively without using skills, just a simple sword was enough to handle the werewolves. It was clear he was extremely strong. For someone like Kim with specialized abilities, the warrior was a formidable opponent. But Hippanix's words, "It's possible," pulled Kim out of his thoughts. The warrior's qualities were only for the most honest, upright, and kind people. But if he lost those qualities, he would face a penalty. A penalty severe enough for even Kim to face him. Kim couldn't help but ask if Hippanix had a plan. Of course, he hadn't thought of anything yet. He just wanted to let things happen naturally. While they were talking, the saintess suddenly interrupted. They were speaking Russian, so she didn't understand them. Hippanix angrily scolded her for interrupting their coded conversation. Angela gave a forced smile. She then chided him for disrespecting a servant of the goddess. After a few more exchanges, the two started arguing again. Kim, on the roof, could only feel helpless at their childishness. He even asked to switch seats. A while later, when Kim entered the carriage, the warrior was a bit surprised. Inside the carriage, he sat opposite the warrior. He knew the warrior had some questions for him. Kim didn't seem surprised at all. It seemed he had expected this. The warrior looked directly into Kim's eyes. He wanted to know why Kim became the prince's guard. But before answering, Kim wanted to know why the warrior was asking. His brows furrowed slightly. He said he just wanted to understand his younger brother's friend better. But right after, the warrior's chest twinged with pain. He had broken the warrior's rule of not showing favoritism. Kim easily noticed the sharp pain. He knew this was the principle Hippanix had mentioned. Seeing the warrior's pained face, Kim said he wouldn't be in pain if he hadn't asked that question. But the warrior didn't think so. For him, even if it meant pain, the question was worth it. The situation was truly ridiculous. One person was worried about his younger brother. The other was trying his best to kill his older brother. Kim almost burst out laughing. He quickly regained his composure. He said his relationship with the prince was based on a contract. He would protect the prince, and the prince would give him what he wanted. Hearing this, the warrior was extremely surprised. He had thought they were close comrades. But after Kim's words, he understood. Kim was also aiming for a reward from conquering the Demon King. Only then did Kim hear about a reward for the first time. He really wanted to know what it was. Soon, the group arrived at Acerpolis. It was a fortress on the edge of the Gankantin Kingdom. This place was only a few kilometers from the Demon Kingdom. After a long journey, the group decided to stop at a tavern. The warrior suggested they rest here for the night. Then he asked for permission to look around. He wanted to see if anyone needed help. The saintess also asked to go to the temple. She needed to report that she was safe. She also asked Kim to watch the prince and not let him do anything foolish. After speaking, both the warrior and the saintess left. Only Kim and Hippanix remained. When they were alone, Kim told Hippanix about the reward for conquering the Demon King. Hippanix was just as shocked as Kim had been. This was also the first time he'd heard of a reward. Kim learned from the warrior that he received the goddess's blessing. She wanted him to conquer the Demon King. If the warrior succeeded, the goddess would grant the wishes of everyone involved. Hippanix slammed his beer mug on the table. Is that really true? Kim confirmed it couldn't be wrong. He had heard it with his own ears. In an instant, Hippanix became incredibly excited. He never expected this mission to have such a generous reward. Hippanix raised his beer mug again. He drank it all in one go. After drinking, he felt extremely refreshed. He laughed loudly, saying he was already drunk. Hippanix and Kim sat in the tavern. They were having dinner and drinking beer. On his third mug of beer, Hippanix suddenly felt nauseous. His whole body felt uncomfortable. Kim realized something was wrong with the food and beer. He was extremely confused. Hippanix thought it was because he had drunk too much. Meanwhile, Hippanix collapsed onto the table. He started vomiting violently. The people around them also showed similar symptoms. Then they gradually fell unconscious. It was very likely everyone's food had been poisoned. Hippanix's face twisted. Green veins bulged. His fierce eyes looked terrifying. Outside on the street, the warrior was carrying a heavy barrel on his shoulder, helping a man on the road. When they arrived, the man bowed his head. He thanked him respectfully. He wondered how he could properly repay the warrior. The warrior smiled happily. He said he was just doing what he should. The man kept bowing, constantly praising the warrior. You truly are a great warrior, just like the rumors say. But right after, his face filled with green veins. Just like Hippanix at the tavern, he then cursed the warrior. You damn moron. The warrior was utterly stunned. He quickly drew the weapon from his back. He angrily asked who the man in front of him really was. Why would he say such things? The man's eyes rolled back. His smile became grotesque. He told the warrior not to be so surprised. He and his comrades already knew everything about him. The warrior grew more confused. This guy mentioned comrades. Who else were his comrades? Just then, a voice came from behind. A group of people was approaching. The warrior immediately sensed danger closing in from all sides. He raised his sword defensively. The one behind all this was the Lord of Gluttony, Pages. Many people had become his victims. The warrior immediately realized those people were all being controlled by puppet magic. Pages praised the warrior for figuring it out so quickly. He had seeded parasites throughout the entire water supply of the residential area. When they enter the body, the parasites grow inside. They then control the minds of anyone who drinks the contaminated water. The victims couldn't resist Pages' commands at all. Pages controlled the innocent people. If the warrior wanted to reach him, he would have to kill them. By doing so, the warrior would break his own rule of not harming innocents. Pages' plan was truly devious. He pushed the warrior into a corner with no way out. The warrior couldn't believe this guy knew his principles so well. Immediately, he thought he needed a better view. Climbing onto a roof might be the best option. The warrior looked up at the rooftops. He found the Saintess, Hippanix, and Kim there. Both the Saintess and Hippanix were under the puppet spell. Hippanix sneered at the warrior. You can't escape from us. If you keep ignoring us, you'll face the consequences. As he spoke, Hippanix raised his hand. He was about to strike the warrior down. At that very moment, Kim, standing beside him, immediately intervened. He struck Hippanix's arm hard. The warrior was confused. Why would Kim hurt Hippanix? Kim was supposed to protect him. Hippanix was being controlled. He still wanted to attack the warrior. Once again, Kim quickly knocked Hippanix down. Pahas was stunned. He thought Kim was also under his control, but that wasn't the case at all. After Hippanix, it was the Saintess's turn. Kim subdued her, and she collapsed at his feet. Kim carried Hippanix and the Saintess. He jumped from the roof to the ground. Then he threw them to either side. It was the only way to stop them from self-destructing. Kim told the warrior to watch Hippanix and the Saintess. He would handle the others. The crowd slowly closed in on Kim. Even though he wasn't infected, he was still a knight. He had to follow the rule of not harming innocents, but he completely ignored those words. He struck without hesitation. The warrior shouted, reminding Kim that these residents were innocent. The others also spoke up in unison. They were just being controlled. Kim had injured a citizen. That was wrong. Yet Kim didn't stop. He declared that if everyone was under the spell, it was even better for him. No one would remember, even if he killed them. Kim decided to use the dwarf's muscle. The destructive force was earth-shattering. Pages was terrified. Kim was truly insane. Why would a knight so cruelly kill innocent people? Kim coldly stated that Pages was speaking disgusting, hypocritical words. He was the one who started all this. Realizing the situation was turning against him, Pages quickly begged. He promised to retreat and return to the demon kingdom, begging Kim to stop. But Kim was determined to drag Pages out. As he attacked, he watched for Pages' location. The closer he got to Pages, the more people blocked his way. Finally, Kim located Pages. He was standing on the city wall, high above everyone else. Knowing he was discovered, Pages quickly fled. Unfortunately, he was a step too slow. Kim quickly caught him. Pages panicked. He kept begging Kim not to come closer. But Kim seemed extremely interested in Pages. He needed him because he was an unusual creature. None of the skills Pages possessed were the same as Kim's. It was truly fascinating. Kim licked his lips. Pages would become his delicious meal. Pages couldn't believe this was happening to him. He had released parasites into the water. No living creature could survive without water. Even though Kim wasn't infected, Pages still controlled his comrades. He thought he had a 90% chance of winning. Yet Kim dared to injure his own comrades. He even slaughtered his own kind without hesitation. Did Kim truly have no emotions? Pages decided that at this point, he would use his strongest control concentration to crush Kim's resistance. After calculating, the Lord of Gluttony charged straight at Kim. He landed right on his face. They locked eyes for a moment. Then he slowly crawled into his mouth without a trace of hesitation. The Lord of Gluttony Pages was extremely pleased with his foolish plan. He personally became a parasite in Kim's body. His goal was to control him from the inside. But perhaps he never imagined. Kim possessed a digestive system that feared nothing on earth. Before he could finish explaining his suicidal plan, which he thought was clever but was actually incredibly stupid, the digestive fluids in Kim's body quickly turned him to dust. Kim was still stunned by the Lord of Gluttony's self-destructive act. The act was too fast and too dangerous. He hadn't even had time to savor the taste in his mouth before it was almost fully digested. It must have been because it was too soft. Among the parasites he had tasted on Earth, this one was probably the most different. It could control humans, so he absorbed a new skill from it. Kim couldn't hide his excitement. He immediately wanted to test it. He brought his finger to his mouth. He bit down hard, severing the fingertip, and then spat it onto the ground. The wound healed instantly thanks to the giant's regeneration skill. The other finger immediately transformed into a fish. Kim realized he could detach and control parts of his body. However, it was limited in size and duration. But if he ate a unified colony of organisms, it would be different. He could develop this skill even further. The battle was over. Below, the townspeople began to wake up. They looked at each other, confused about what had just happened. They were unsure if it was truly over. At that moment, at the demon castle, they couldn't believe Pages was dead. The news sent the demons into a panic. That old worm could die too. He had no way to survive. But reality hit them hard. The Lord of Gluttony had indeed been sent to his ancestors. All his experiments and parasite samples were completely wiped out. Pages was considered a tough nut to crack. Besides his old value, he was a perfect fit to be one of the 4 heavenly kings. Therefore, the death of Lord Pages made the demons especially concerned. A purple demon with newly sprouted horns couldn't help but ask how he died. Another long-horned demon explained. A madman slaughtered the people under his control. He tracked him down and killed him. It was that damn knight traveling with the prince. A red-haired female demon with horns worriedly said that with Pages dead, besides the 4 heavenly kings, only Wrath was left. But the long-horned demon was still confident that Kim was no match for Wrath. That demon specialized in fighting large numbers, so it would be more effective against the human alliance forces. After speaking, he turned to look for Wrath. He then realized the main character of their conversation had vanished. The purple demon with new horns coughed. He said that guy had slipped away as soon as he heard about the old worm. This action silenced all the demons around the table. On the other side, the knight chosen by the goddess recalled what Kim had just done. He concluded that in that situation, Kim's method was definitely the most effective, but Kim had still slaughtered innocent people who were being controlled. He couldn't escape the chaotic thoughts in his head. He slowly spoke to Kim, hesitantly. If it were you and your skills, couldn't you have saved more people? Kim understood he was being blamed for cruelly killing the human puppets. What are you talking about? The enemy is the one who controlled and killed them. His eyes replied unhappily. Hearing that cold, emotionless answer, the knight couldn't believe such a knight was the prince's guardian. He suddenly felt Kim was no different from the demons. He had an extremely twisted mindset that made him feel scared. Just then, for some strange reason, the prince suddenly stopped the carriage. He stammered in panic, attracting his attention. A bizarre mountain suddenly appeared, blocking their path. It turned out to be a demon with a spiky mountain on its back. He introduced himself as the Lord of Wrath, Dukas. He came to avenge his longtime comrade, Lord Pagus. He said this while looking at the group before him with eyes filled with bloodlust. He stomped his giant foot on the ground. The two weaklings in front of him were scared out of their wits. The prince's eyes widened in fear. He trembled uncontrollably upon hearing the name Lord of Wrath, Dukas. Seeing this reaction, Kim was certain the prince knew about this guy. The prince explained to Kim that he had never met him directly, but had read about him. Over 50 years ago, a giant monster attacked us. On its back were demon warriors. They say its body was even bigger than a dragon. Kim was quite surprised. If it was twice the size of a dragon, it must be 30 meters tall, but this one seemed even bigger than that. That made sense. It probably continued to grow over 50 years. Reptiles often grow continuously, the prince replied thoughtfully. This overwhelmed Kim. It was already as big as a mountain. How much bigger could it get? Before his mind could process this monstrous demon, its tail, like a spiked sledgehammer, was already swinging toward them. The saintess grew angry at their slow, knowledge-exchanging conversation. The most important thing now was to figure out how to deal with the monster. Before she could finish, something tore through the grass to the right of the carriage. It was the demon's tail. Its giant body was extremely agile. It spun around, building momentum for its mace-like tail, aiming straight for their carriage. It was too fast, too dangerous. They had no time to react. They could only watch and wait for death with faces of utter panic. In an instant, the carriage was completely shattered. The demon's tail had destroyed everything. After the Lord of Wrath's fierce strike, the tail slowly began to retract. Suddenly, an explosion erupted from the ground. The 4 members of the subjugation squad emerged from below. They were still alive, struggling to climb out. Dukas roared fiercely. "You insects, it was you. You're the ones who killed my comrade, aren't you?" Without letting any of the little insects reply, the Lord of Wrath didn't bother to listen to any explanations. He didn't care who did it. He would just annihilate everyone he saw. Sooner or later, he would get his revenge. After speaking, Dukas launched his second attack. The subjugation squad ran for their lives. The saintess suddenly remembered the prince's skills. She quickly said, "Prince, you're good with shields for defense, right? It's time for you to step up and show us." As for the prince, he was also crawling and running to escape. Hearing those words, he couldn't help but complain. "Are you crazy? How can I stop him? Even with the ultimate defense skill, it won't work. The important thing now is to stay alive to even use the skill." In this situation, the second prince came up with an idea. Let the warrior protected by the goddess use some skill. However, that suggestion was not only bad but also completely absurd. The hero immediately rejected it. Having the saintess block the attack and then slowly heal herself was truly insane and impractical. To heal, you have to be alive first. Just one hit from that demon would obliterate her. It wouldn't be easy. A chance to recover, the saintess standing nearby continued. The prince angrily said, "It's just good at being big." But in the end, they could do nothing. They talked while still trying to drag themselves forward to escape. The 3 of them fled in different directions. No one followed the same path. Kim was left standing alone, watching the 3 fools. A moment later, the 3 idiots all turned their heads at the same time. They stared at Kim, which made him freeze for a moment. He sighed and said, "Do I look like someone who can fight that demon?" The 3 of them still didn't say a word. As if seeing through their childish thoughts, he replied softly, "Fine, there is a way." His eyes became firm. The Lord of Wrath was getting annoyed from waiting too long, but his frustration didn't make him give up on this debt. He was determined to settle the score with that team today. It wasn't just for avenging his close friend. It was also his personal grudge against humanity. In the past, despite being a powerful demon, in one battle, it was careless and got sneak attacked, leaving a large scar on its body. After many battles, it had developed the perfect strategy for itself. First, use reconnaissance skills to confirm the enemy's strength. See if there are any enemies. Second, sweep the entire surrounding area so the opponent has nowhere to hide. Third, if the enemy approaches, block them. And if they attack from a distance, its thick skin is enough, and its self-defense skill is sufficient. This way, I'm confident I'll never lose to anyone, even if the opponent is the hero himself. While the Lord of Wrath was rambling on about his refined strategy born from his own blood and tears, the subjugation squad had also finished discussing their plan to defeat it. After hearing Kim's strategy, the Saintess was amazed at the mind of a knight. The method was truly cunning. There was nothing honorable about it. She was about to object when Kim asked, "Do you have a better way?" This left her speechless. She couldn't answer. On the other side, the hero had silently resolved to fight to the end. He knew there was almost no chance of winning, but he had to charge forward. If he ran, other towns would be in danger. And as a hero serving the Saintess, he couldn't allow himself to do that. With that, he charged straight at the Lord of Wrath, one man, one sword. The plan was officially in motion. Kim's side couldn't stand still either. He began to prepare for his own transformation. The goddess's sword could only unleash its full power against evil demons. Otherwise, it was just an ordinary sword. He began to have some doubts. The Lord of Wrath's fury came from a desire for revenge. Although revenge isn't right, it can't be considered pure evil. So it's very likely the goddess's sword won't unleash its full power. Therefore, in this situation, the hero decided he had to give his all in this attack. But Dukas wasn't an easy opponent. He didn't give the hero a chance to show off. Dukas attacked first, forcing him into a difficult situation. The warrior thought to himself that being pursued and attacked like this was really tough. Before he could react, Dukas leaped. He whipped his tail forward. A powerful strike sent the warrior flying like a withered leaf in a strong wind. But the warrior wasn't all talk. He managed to survive that fatal blow. Still, he was shocked by the terrifying destructive power of that move. How could the resulting shockwave be so strong? Realizing just one of his attacks had weakened the opponent so much, Dukas was extremely smug and sneered. "Is that all you've got, hero?" A hero defeated by Pahas is not trustworthy at all. He panted and replied weakly, "Yeah, I don't believe it either." This made him even more arrogant with his brute force fighting style. "You're about to die and you still want to joke? Or do you want to beg for your life? Either way." But before Dukas could finish his gloating, the warrior shouted decisively, "This is enough for the plan to succeed perfectly." Back to the tactical meeting 5 minutes earlier, Kim began to outline the strategy. They would go underground to ambush the demon Dukas. The hero would be in front to draw its attention. Meanwhile, he would approach from underground and aim for the scar on its belly. Because digging would make noise and easily attract its attention, there had to be a decoy to distract it. And he needed at least 3 minutes, 5 minutes at most, to complete it. After hearing the plan, the hero immediately agreed without any doubt. His decisiveness surprised Kim a little. He believed him without a second's thought. He couldn't help but ask, "Why do you trust me so much? What if I'm tricking you or lying?" He gave a friendly smile and replied, "That's impossible. Among the hero's special skills is one called lie detection." Kim chuckled to himself. "It's true, I'm not lying. But in this country where skills don't work, I can lie to the only hero present. Who knows, it might come in handy." Back in the present, as soon as the warrior finished speaking, Kim had successfully extended his claws. He was preparing to give Dukas a few good slashes from underground. The synergy between the dwarf's muscle, superhuman physique, and dragon claws helped him significantly shorten the time needed for his digging plan. A tunnel was quickly created from the team's starting point. It stretched straight to the scar of the wrathful demon without any slip-ups. By the time the demon realized it, it was too late. Even though it was still rambling on about some life-detecting skill, our Kim responded with action. Then he said sharply, "Do I need to answer that for you?" By the time he said that, he was already extremely close to it. His entire arm had transformed into a dragon's claw. No matter how thick the skin, the dragon claw could tear through anything. Dukas roared in desperation. "No, I can't let it harm me again. I can't die by his hands." While he was still raging, Kim used the momentum to stab straight into its scar. He pierced a hole and slipped inside, causing blood to spurt everywhere. It screamed in pain. Kim entered the turtle demon's body and couldn't help but think this was a brilliant success. But this place was too vast. He couldn't afford to leisurely look around. So Kim immediately summoned the parasites of the demon Pajas. He let them spread throughout the turtle demon's body. After a short while, they sent back information from all its organs, like the heart, lungs, blood vessels, and brain. This parasite monster's skill is really convenient, Kim thought to himself, but among the information sent back, there was something very strange that made him pause. It says, "This is its friend?" After a moment of thought, Kim understood and laughed with delight. To be killed by your friend's skill, that's what you call a true friendship. Suddenly, a signal, stronger than all the others, caught Kim's attention. It was sent from the abdominal cavity. Kim walked over. His dragon hand began to dig through the flesh and blood, looking extremely disgusting. It made him show a clear expression of disgust. After enduring the foul, fishy smell of the monster, Kim had dug a large hole. He discovered what looked like a delicious buffet inside. Kim looked at it with a greedy, hungry expression. It seems he had another chance to use his gluttony skill. Outside, the turtle monster kept screaming in pain. Sweat poured down like rain. Tears and snot streamed down its face. It constantly begged, My stomach is burning. I was wrong. What should I do? Spare me." The three of them watched the monster in this state, stunned. They couldn't believe what was happening before their eyes. The saintess stood next to the monster. She squeezed her eyes shut, unable to watch the whole event. The second prince also started to tremble before the monster. He saw its eyes. It rolled its eyes back, tears streaming down endlessly. It couldn't even form its last words clearly. I, for humanity. The Lord of Wrath, Dukas, had officially logged out of this server. It crashed down, creating an earthquake that shook the surroundings, then fell completely unconscious. Suddenly, its eye socket twitched repeatedly and then exploded. Kim jumped out from it in a cool pose, but he also looked a bit terrifying, covered in blood. It left his three companions speechless. The subjugation squad set off once again, but this time they had to use a cart because the carriage was in pieces. Another change was the extremely tense atmosphere. The warrior and the nun kept glancing at Kim with unfriendly eyes. He also noticed this strangeness. He casually asked the prince next to him, "The atmosphere today is a bit weird. Did something happen?" The prince beside him seemed to tremble as he replied, "Well, you look pretty scary. I don't really mind," but despite his words, his expression said it all. Kim, on the other hand, was still confused. He couldn't figure out what the problem was. In his mind, it didn't really matter. The most important thing was what he had eaten. Although what he ate this time wasn't as valuable as the giant dinosaur, it was still muscle mass of a similar size, and the dwarf's muscle was even stronger. As for the skin, when combined with the dragon's skin, it made his own skin even thicker and tougher. But not every meal was a disappointment. In fact, he gained more than he imagined. First, there were the lungs of the giant dinosaur. Our lungs. One of its lobes had become a powerful muscle. To sustain such a massive body, it needed a huge amount of oxygen, and the deeper the inhale, the stronger the exhale. These lungs would make his dragon's breath even more ferocious. Second was the vascular system. The larger the body, the harder the heart has to work to pump blood. Arteries and veins were densely distributed around organs like the heart at relatively even intervals. So now, even if his heart were destroyed, his blood could still circulate. And the biggest prize was what he had spent all that time digging for. "Thanks to eating it, I can now fly," Kim said with a satisfied smile. Cut to the demon castle. At the meeting table were the same demons. Only now, one chair was missing. The Lord of Wrath had left the game to return to dust. The demon of lust, Julius, couldn't hide his anger. The only thing left was the four heavenly kings. Sanyo sneered and replied, "That's the final outcome." "That's right." Julius's voice immediately chimed in. His eyes were now filled with a smile. Everything was going according to the Demon King's plan. Closing the chapter on the past, the demons began to discuss their future plans. It was clear the heroes were about to attack the Demon King's castle. Before that, they had also destroyed villages, so now they had to root them out before the heroes caused more damage. Their meager efforts were enough to deal with the remnants of the ancient era, and the heroes would mistakenly believe they had destroyed the Demon King's core forces. That would bring them many benefits. The deal was also done. Then it would be humanity's turn to walk the path of destruction. This would be a great, arduous war foretold. In this battle, humanity only needed to chop off the Demon King's head to win. On the other hand, the demon race had to destroy humanity or force them to bow and surrender. Their biggest obstacle was the hero. As long as the hero remained, humans would never submit. Not only that, the heroes were the strongest under the goddess's protection. So in the end, to win, the demon race only had one path: to annihilate all of humanity. If that's the case, then instead of letting the hero fall to the Demon King, they might as well make humanity perish sooner. The demon of lust, Julius, recounted the Demon King's words in a sinister and malicious tone. Suddenly, he and his subordinates stood up in unison. They clasped their hands and chanted, "Absolute loyalty to our emperor. Absolute respect for our emperor from another world." In the distance, at the highest point, was a figure completely different from the demons, but it was too blurry to see their face clearly. Could Kim and the prince's guess be correct? Was there a third person from the human world here? The group followed the path Dukas had taken before. With just a glance, Kim faintly realized it had been running rampant. Suddenly, the group was surrounded by a horde of monsters. They held weapons in their hands and showed clear contempt. Realizing they were surrounded, they immediately gathered together. The warrior knew at a glance. They were the demon race's soldiers. At the same time, two of them charged straight at Kim, determined to take his life. The demon's iron mace immediately came down on Kim's head. He not only didn't dodge the blow, but stood his ground. He casually swung his sword once and dealt with the two demons cleanly. Behind him, his other teammates were also fiercely fighting the attacking demons. The demon from before groaned softly. Only the castle is still intact. Through the slit in his iron helmet, Kim seemed to see something noteworthy on the demon. A scroll fell from his tunic, landing neatly in front of him. Kim picked it up and opened it. After clearing out the demons, the group gathered in a safe place. They all looked at the scroll. They realized it was a map of the demon kingdom. The warrior stroked his chin, looking at the map. He secretly admired the demon race's survey capabilities. Hypanix pointed to the map with a wooden stick. There's one more important thing. Everyone, look here. All the marching routes of the demon soldiers converged on the main road at one point, but this white point had a route that went through all the battlefields. The scientists thought this map was used to supply something. The warrior immediately stood up. We have the map. Let's go destroy the demon king now. But he was quickly stopped by Hypanix. Hypanix frowned thoughtfully. He pointed to a very suspicious spot, a village in a mountain range. It had no strategic value, didn't connect to the main route, and was the end of the road. The scientists asked, so that's an important demon king army camp? Hypanix said they should go check it out. As for the warrior, his intuition told him this place was extremely important. Then the warrior spoke. If this place is important, maybe we can hinder the demon king's army's advance. After a week, they finally found the suspicious village. Hypanix stepped forward. He observed the plumes of black smoke rising. This is the place, Hypanix said. Looking down from the cliff, the village didn't have many residents, or at least, life here wasn't bustling. Everyone was focused on doing something. Following the smoke plumes, they saw women assembling weapons. Children were shoveling coal into furnaces. Strong-bodied people were constantly hauling materials to the village. So, just as Hypanix predicted, they were producing weapons. When the warrior saw the lives of the demon king's people here, his previous fervor vanished. His face showed a look of dismay. Hypanix drew his sword. What's there to hesitate about? We came to this village to achieve our goal, to destroy this place. The warrior angrily grabbed Hypanix's shoulder to stop him. He asked, are you planning to kill innocent people? Hypanix turned his head. No one here is innocent. The warrior didn't understand his meaning at first. Hypanix explained, everyone in the village is involved in weapon production, so they are all weaponsmiths. The warrior yelled angrily, what are you thinking? The warrior's wound suddenly flared up. His face turned pale. He collapsed. Hypanix paid him no mind and continued, the hero's rules, have you forgotten them all, warrior? I'll only ask two things. Hypanix turned back to look at the warrior kneeling on the ground. Is killing these villagers a bad thing? The warrior looked up and replied softly, there's nothing good about killing. Hypanix asked again, then is infiltrating the enemy's rear to destroy weapons and kill blacksmiths the right thing to do? The warrior immediately affirmed it was the right thing. We have to cut off the enemy's supply line to reduce our casualties on the battlefield. Only then did he realize, a hero must always do what is right and just. Kim couldn't wait any longer and stepped forward. Arguing is a waste of time. I'm going ahead. The warrior watched his comrades continue forward, his heart still in turmoil. Was killing the people here right or wrong? He really didn't know what to do. A moment later, blood splattered onto Kim's iron helmet. He asked, is this the last one? Kim took off his helmet in frustration. Just let me handle this. He glanced back. The warrior said he would face the attacking enemy villagers. The Saintess was devastated by the sight of young demons dying. Hypanix was busy comforting the Saintess. He thought this team was full of useless people. Hypanix walked over and picked up a gun from the ground. He carefully picked it up to inspect it. Are they really making these weapons? Hypanix carefully observed the 7.92mm Mauser bullet. He even exclaimed, who could be so cruel? Hypanix called to Kim. What is this? Kim wiped the blood from his face and replied, it means the Demon King has had 3 of them. Hypanix smiled slyly. Exactly. For sure. The warrior was puzzled. You already figured something out? Hypanix explained his theory. The Demon Kingdom had been recruiting civilians into the war. Hypanix explained that by just giving civilians basic instructions on how to use guns, they could qualify as soldiers. This must be how the Demon King was recruiting civilians, by creating these guns. The warrior clenched his fists in fury. He couldn't believe his ears. He turned away in anger. He walked heavily toward the village. Hypanix didn't forget to acknowledge Kim's efforts. Hypanix suddenly handed him a map. He said Kim deserved a break. When he opened the map, the operational area was already marked by Hypanix. Hypanix even told him to go eat his fill. Kim smirked. This is work, not a break. But it wasn't bad. It was more convenient for his inspection. Suddenly, from behind the village, the warrior's roar echoed. Hypanix smiled slyly. Everything was going according to plan. Near the forest floor, violent sounds that shook the ground echoed continuously, along with cries of pain. The warrior wept as he slammed his fists down. He was in agony. What am I supposed to do? At the port city of Starfish in the Demon Kingdom, a boy named Meaden, a half-human, half-demon, was struggling to carry heavy crates. Meaden was quite small, so his speed and strength were less than those around him. People urged him to hurry up, even though his body was exhausted. The employer threw a bag of copper coins on the table. It was his reward for moving 20 bags of gunpowder and 10 barrels of coal. Meaden happily bowed and thanked him. Holding the bag of coins, Meaden calculated, he could use this money to eat with Myron, pay the rent, and buy necessary items, then calculate the remainder. He had just gotten paid, but in the end, he only had 1 coin left. Meiden was sad. He sighed. When would this day-to-day life ever end? But then he laughed it off. No matter how hard it was, he had to keep trying for Myron. Little Myron called out from behind, "This tastes strange. You should try it, brother." Meiden smiled and lied that he had eaten a lot on the way home. He told her to eat her fill. Myron smiled brightly at that. The next day, Meiden was back at the port working. Suddenly, he felt that today's sacks were much lighter than yesterday's. That meant he had grown again. Meiden thought excitedly. Right now, he was just a dock worker. But one day, he would become a member of the 7th Demon General's army. Meiden was full of hope for the future. Then his name would be famous everywhere. Back with Kim. The secondary brain. The brain is an organ presumed to exist in the body of dinosaurs. Nerve impulses take a long time to travel in an oversized body. Therefore, to support the movement of the lower half of the body, some scholars believe they had a secondary brain in the hips. The secondary brain is that support brain, and by digging deep into Dukas's body from the lower half, Kim was able to find the secondary brain in a half-stone dinosaur. To replicate another creature's brain, they had to recreate its central nervous system. This let him use the creature's unique body parts instantly, without any practice. Kim thought to himself, but he still had a problem. He'd never used his brain like that before, because the brain was a kind of health. It was something that could put its owner's body in danger. But then he had another thought. If he could use it, he wouldn't need to worry. He could ignore the risks and use another creature's brain. In other words, as he began to transform his body, large wings burst out. He could fly. No sooner said than done. Kim, in his dragon form, immediately beat his wings. He soared high above Starfish City. Kim observed and felt it. His entire body could transform except for his brain. Furthermore, the lizard man's mucus-covered skin was a perfect match for dragon's skin, and that mucus could be replaced with the mysterious slime. Kim understood the slime's effect perfectly. It would make a dragon's lungs and blood vessels stronger. His marrow and blood vessels had the regenerative ability of a ghoul. His muscles were as taut and powerful as an ogre's. He told himself he was about to become the strongest creature alive. Kim let out a roar that seemed to shake the heavens and the earth. His colossal, fierce form glided through the sky of the port city. A terrified little Minun looked up. Behind the insects, Kim rained down fire. He aimed to detonate the ammunition on their transport ships. Maiden looked up just in time to see a dragon above him. A series of weapons transport ships exploded instantly. Medan looked back at the ships in horror. He was frozen. Before him was a sea of fire. People around him began to flee in chaos. A dragon. Run. A merman from the Yellow Sea couldn't believe the scene before his eyes. He had just turned his head, not yet running, when Kim bit off more than half his body. He tilted his neck back and directly swallowed the unfortunate merman. Only then did Midden hastily drop all his goods to run for his life. In his panic, Midden didn't forget his little sister Mizan. He ran straight to their rented room to get Mizan to safety. He was running close to the room. He was relieved it was located nearby. Midden thought he could save Mizan. He had rented a room very close to his work, just in case something went wrong. Just as he thought that, Kim landed directly on his small rented room. It shattered into pieces. The shockwave flashed for a moment, forcing Maiden to cover his face. He peeked through his fingers. His eyes were fixed on the house, now a pile of rubble. Kim's landing cleared the smoke. Maiden saw it in horror. Beneath the rubble was a honey candy, Mizan's favorite. A small hand stuck out. The body was buried under the stone. Maiden screamed in terror and rage. He snatched a sword from a nearby arms rack and charged forward. Maiden roared with hatred. "You damn dragon, die." He clumsily stabbed the sword straight into Kim's leg. Compared to the dragon's scales, the sword was like a thin, dry twig. It shattered instantly. Midden was thrown backward. The scene was one of utter devastation. Kim, in his dragon form, stood tall amidst the deadly sea of fire. He spat contemptuously at the small, naive, and useless efforts of Medan. Kim had come here because Hypanix's map marked locations of military supply production and storage. Kim thought it was probably to weaken the Demon King's army, though this didn't have much to do with him. But because of this, many poor children could eat. He remembered the merman from before. He never expected his ability to be this strong. But then he wondered, should I still do what I usually do? Kim continued to engulf the entire city in a sea of deadly fire. 10 hours after the port town of Starfish was sealed off, Julius spoke up. Has everyone heard what happened in Starfish? He angrily clenched his fist. Because of that, his side's military supplies were depleted. They had suffered many losses. He asked again. I heard a dragon did it. He turned to the girl beside him for her opinion. What do you think, Net? She spoke as a fellow member of the dragon race. Net believed it was impossible. From dusk till dawn is about 9 hours. So it must have breathed fire at least 50 times. If it wasn't a legendary ancient dragon, it was impossible. Basarnio frowned. So that ancient dragon is here? He immediately felt insulted. What do you mean? She slammed her hand on the table angrily. Are you doubting a god? Basarnio raised her glass of blood wine. That dragon is truly here, but we can't rule out the possibility of it being another ancient dragon. Zygmunt asserted that it didn't matter now. What mattered was the plan to deal with Kim. Julius agreed, then continued to ask for opinions from other council members. Zygmunt added that rumors about starfish had spread throughout the demon kingdom. In one night, that dragon had become a symbol of terror. If the 7 great demon generals stepped in to quell this fear, the morale of the entire demon kingdom would be raised. Julius's face darkened. Something was indeed wrong. He stood and spread his wings. I'm going. She decided that even if it was a real ancient dragon, she had to show them the difference in their levels. Kim was now being called the Starfish Dragon. He had destroyed many key strongholds of the Demon King's army. He ate countless enemies and absorbed all sorts of different powers. Among them, the raid on the port town was the most successful and effective battle since the heroes' party reassembled. Various demon races like the fish demons and insect demons were wiped out. Although Kim had gained a lot of power, it still wasn't enough. Even with his absorption ability optimized, even highly adaptable animals only met the lowest standards. But thanks to this, Kim understood his ability better. If it continued to develop this way, that goal would be nothing. It would be complete. He would become the pinnacle of all living beings. Kim was now flying towards another important town. Other monsters saw the dragon and thought it was one of the 7 demon generals. One of them looked up at the sky and realized in horror. The creature rushing towards them was the Starfish Dragon, the recent symbol of terror. It made them all flee. The monster from before didn't get far before Kim snatched him. Kim just stomped lightly. The monster was instantly crushed. Kim raised his head and took a deep breath. Then he spewed a vortex of fire, destroying half the city in an instant. An hour later, Net arrived. She was still searching for Kim with all her might. According to reports, he was spotted in Sao Dawn an hour ago. Even if she didn't know what he was, she was determined to teach him a lesson. Net flew closer to the ruins. The rubble below was still burning red. Net had to be wary. It had only been an hour, and it was already like this. Kim casually picked up a small goblin. Then he popped it into his mouth and swallowed. Net landed beside him, furious. She glared at Kim with hateful eyes. This vulgar creature is eating people. But Net thought to herself, this was clearly a red dragon, but its body was strange. Kim stood up on 2 legs. A dragon's body is strong and majestic, but those legs didn't seem to belong to a dragon. Parts of its body were also covered in tough armor. Net held out her hand, casting dragon magic. The technique, Dragon's Word, was a dragon's power. It forced others to act against their will through overwhelming pressure, causing fear. Net shouted with authority, "Stop!" Kim heard the voice and turned. He tilted his head to see what was happening. Not only did he not stop, he picked up another monster's corpse to absorb. Net couldn't understand. Dragon's Word had no effect on the dragon before her. Impossible. Dragon's Word can intimidate other dragons. Net observed Kim carefully. This dragon was clearly very strong, but she didn't recognize it. Kim then advised her to drop the illusion that her authority and position worked on everyone. He also didn't forget to say that if it were him, he would let his target do as it pleased, even if pressured. That was enough to provoke Net. She was furious. She pointed at Kim, calling him arrogant. She asked if he knew who she was to dare speak like that. Net's hand quickly transformed. It grew larger and more spiky. She would teach him a lesson. Kim turned to look back with a bored expression. Net immediately transformed into a giant red dragon, wanting to crush Kim. "Hey, you stupid little dragon," Net called out. She mocked Kim for his smaller size. She angrily lifted her foot. She even sneered. "Use your sister to stomp on him." Net threw all her strength at Kim. She used both hands to continuously pummel Kim's head. As Net frantically attacked, she screamed, "Die! Die!" Then she let out a deafening roar. After a full 10 minutes, both of Net's arms were tired. Yet the sight before her now was truly unbelievable. Kim still stood firm in a defensive stance. Net was stunned. Kim had survived her onslaught unscathed just by defending. She had never met such a strong dragon. Kim glanced at Net with a scrutinizing gaze. Net looked at him silently. Though he was a dragon, his demon and mithril muscles weren't easily pierced. She concluded Kim was an extremely strong dragon. But this strong? Other dragons probably couldn't do anything to him. Kim stroked his chin, calculating. He had to remember this. Then he immediately got into a stance. Time for a new experiment. Destroy mithril. Net thought Kim had seen through her plan and became flustered. Seeing Kim's stance, Net was sure he had read her mind. She decided to switch to offense. After all, his defense must have weakened greatly. She used one hand to block one of Kim's arms. She immediately used her tail to wrap around his other arm. Then she quickly raised her other hand, grabbing his head and squeezing hard. Net opened her mouth wide. She lunged forward, biting down hard on Kim's shoulder. Net leaned back, tearing off a chunk of flesh. She also kicked Kim, sending him sprawling. Kim was thrown far from where he stood. She chewed and swallowed the piece of flesh. Smugly, she said, "How about that? Huh?" The teeth of an Akhenaten can bite through anything, but her celebration was short-lived. The open wound on Kim's shoulder healed instantly. Net broke into a cold sweat. This dragon had super regeneration. What kind of creature was it? Kim slowly stood up. He said they had only just met, so he would consider this the end of the body performance test. With that, he turned to leave. Since you cooperated, I'll spare you. Go. Don't follow me. These words from Kim immediately made Net feel deeply insulted. She roared, "Don't be ridiculous. You dare wound my pride?" Net opened her mouth menacingly. "I will show you the calm power of a dragon." Then, Net tilted her head back. She summoned a massive energy. She declared it was the ability to stop all powers and grind them to dust. But Kim showed no fear or hesitation. He just asked, "Is that so? Then so be it." Net spoke with a threatening voice, but she suddenly coughed up a deadly black liquid. The energy mass from before vanished with it. Net coughed up squirming creatures. Then she violently vomited a pool of black slime and dozens of writhing organisms. She was both shocked and terrified. "What is this?" she whispered faintly. "Why?" Before her consciousness faded, Net's entire massive body collapsed forward. She lay sprawled on the ground. Kim simply replied that it was because Net had swallowed his flesh. From that, those hideous creatures would parasitize her body. They would quickly consume everything. He stood over her motionless body and continued, "So, whoever eats anything will get indigestion. After that, well, there is no after that." And just then, a magic circle appeared next to Kim. From the circle came a desperate call for help. "Urgent. Urgent. Danger. Help." Kim turned his head. It was telepathy. The voice on the other side continued to plead. "Hurry. Help. Help." A warrior with a sword stood against the vast sky. "I am a hero, a messenger of the goddess, and I am from 10 years in the future." That warrior fought bravely against the monsters. In 10 years, humans and demons will join forces to fight the monsters that want to destroy this world. Looking at the defeated monsters, the warrior continued his thoughts. In the future, the 7 demon kings, the great demon generals, and the 4 heavenly kings all die because of these monsters. Even I was killed by them. The warrior bravely fought with his sword, determined. So I, who have returned from the future, must quickly go to the great forest. I will destroy the slime that will evolve into a world-destroying monster. The warrior and a tall man carrying a giant weapon on his shoulder looked at the protective barrier. He continued his train of thought. For that reason, Mr. Kim, who's guarding the great forest, is safe. And Mr. Kim even saved the prince who was supposed to die. The warrior looked straight ahead with fierce determination. Because the future has been changed, those who were meant to be killed have been saved. However, he also had another thought. On the other hand, because the future has been changed, I can't know what will happen next. The warrior clenched his fist slightly. But I don't regret destroying that monster and giving up the future I knew. The only thing I regret is not knowing about the Demon King's army in the future. The warrior felt regretful. If I had known that, I wouldn't have struggled so much. Or at least. At the card table, Bassanio smiled, watching Hepinix slump onto the table. He smirked. I just need to know his abilities. The 3 of them, the warrior, Hippanix, and the saintess, were walking together. Suddenly, the warrior turned and asked Hippanix, "But Prince, where did you send Mr. Kim?" Hippanix immediately replied, "I asked him to watch over an important area. He's strong enough to handle it alone." Hearing this, the warrior seemed to understand. "I see," Hippanix continued, "and according to the map, we're about to reach our next destination." Suddenly, something appeared ahead, startling Hippanix. He exclaimed abruptly. The 3 of them froze in front of Bassanio. The old man gave a sinister smile. "Welcome, heroes." Then he bowed respectfully to introduce himself. "I am one of the 7 great demon generals, Bassanio de Grisos. Nickname, Greed. This is the town I rule, G. Vegas." He asked, "Do you want to stop killing each other and fight peacefully?" Hippanix didn't understand his meaning and asked, "What do you mean by that?" Bassanio immediately made a proposal. "It's simple. I mean, let's play a game to decide the winner." Hippanix was a bit taken aback by the strange offer. "Huh? Why a game all of a sudden? What are you plotting?" In contrast, the warrior agreed without much thought. "All right, I agree." Hippanix was surprised by the warrior's agreement. He called out in confusion, "Hero." But the warrior seemed to have his own reasons. He thought, "I've killed too many people to get here. I want to stop." Bassanio smiled wickedly. "All right." In his mind, he sneered, "Fool." The 3 of them followed Bassanio into the casino. Someone on the upper floor announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, today's special event is." The 3 of them looked up at him with determined eyes. The announcer on the upper floor continued to shout, the showdown between the hero's party and the doctor, and the great demon general of greed, Bassanio de Grisos. He smiled, as if the smile never left his face. The man continued, "Let's see who the goddess of the Elmos continent will help." The crowd around them immediately started whispering. "So, the hero is going to die here? Today, humanity's last hope will be extinguished." Hippanix sat down at the table. He frowned and then decided, "I'll start." Bassanio didn't refuse and quickly accepted. "The game is poker. If the prince wins, you will pass through here safely." Hippanix replied, "All right." He remembered playing this type of card game before, so he was somewhat confident. I mastered this game when I infiltrated a poaching group. That monster has no chance. Bassanio remained calm and added another condition. But if you lose, I will take your soul. After a while, Hippanix angrily threw the cards up. He shouted, "Damn it, are you a cheater?" The old man questioned back, "What did I cheat at?" Then he immediately changed his tune. "Didn't you yourself say that if you're not caught in the act, it's not cheating?" Hippanix insisted, "No, this round doesn't count. If I knew you were going to pull a trick, I would have." His smile gradually became inhuman. Then, as promised, Bassanio repeated the condition he had stated. "I will take your soul." The coin on the table suddenly started smoking. Hippanix's body also started to smoke. He shouted in panic, "What is this?" His soul was slowly being sucked into the coin. After Hippanix's soul was sucked into the coin, his face appeared on its surface. Hippanix looked terrified. "I'm in danger. Help me." Bassanio smiled as he watched Hippanix collapse onto the table. The warrior panicked and shouted, "Prince," the old man explained, "this is the skill Keep Your Promise. It's a special skill I possess called Irresistible." Then he laughed loudly. The saintess angrily rushed towards him. "You bastard! How dare you!" She threw a punch straight at Bassanio's face, but he didn't even try to dodge, calmly saying, Now. The saintess was shocked that he was unharmed by her punch. Bassanio smiled and explained, "Fighting is not allowed here. I have a second special skill called Absolute Peace Zone." The saintess grunted in anger, but Bassanio was laughing inwardly. "As long as I have these two skills, no one can beat me in this gamble." He suddenly said, "It seems the prince is very important to you." Hearing this, the saintess became a little flustered and stammered. Who said that?" Just one probing question made her reveal herself. He thought smugly, "You've shown your hand. This type of person is what they call a tsundere." Seeing the saintess's anger, Bassanio took the opportunity to entice her. "If you want him back, then play." He began to tempt the saintess to waver. "I will bet his soul, and you will bet your own." At this point, she was already moved by his words. The saintess slammed her hand on the table and agreed. "All right." The warrior saw that the saintess seemed to have been provoked by his words. He warned her, "Saintess, don't be so reckless." But the saintess had no regrets about her decision. On the contrary, she reassured him. "Don't worry, hero." She told him something. "My nickname, the Convent Gambler, isn't just for show." The warrior was surprised and asked, "Huh? The Convent Gambler?" She questioned him back. "What do you think I did in that all-girls convent during the long winters?" The saintess asked confidently, "What game are we playing? Poker? Blackjack? Rock, paper, scissors?" The saintess threw the cards up. She glared and said, "Pick up the cards first." "I choose dice." Bassanio immediately took out the dice and smiled smugly. "All right." Another coin was tossed. It emitted a white light. Not long after, the saintess also slumped onto the table. Just like Hippanix before, her soul had been sucked into the coin. The saintess's face was imprinted on it. Bassanio wiped his sweat with a handkerchief. He exclaimed, "It's been a while since I've faced such an opponent." The warrior couldn't believe his eyes. Even the saintess couldn't win. After Hippanix and the saintess, his next target was the warrior. He asked, "What will you do, hero? If you want to save your comrades, bet your soul and play." Then he laughed loudly. The warrior hesitated, thinking, "I've never gambled in my life. Is there another way?" Suddenly, he looked into the distance. His face suddenly brightened. Mr. Kim appeared. He called out happily, "Mr. Kim." The warrior was cornered. He had never gambled. How could he possibly win? But abandoning his friends in danger went against the code of a knight. He couldn't even leave them where they were. Just then, a noise came from outside the door. The warrior was startled and looked behind him. The door began to shake violently. Suddenly, someone flew through it. The door shattered instantly. The person flew and landed sprawled in front of the warrior. He was still stunned, not understanding what had happened. Then his expression changed to one of joy as if he'd struck gold, because Kim had appeared in the dust cloud behind him. Bassanio laughed with delight when he saw Kim arrive. To him, this seemed to be a hot-headed guest. The spectators on the upper floors immediately judged Kim as a barbarian, a brute who only knew violence. They even saw him as another item for their collection. Kim just glanced over them. He observed the useless fools lying slumped in the corners. He told himself he would resolve this quickly to get back to his unfinished business. Seeing Kim about to draw his sword, Bassanio reminded him that violence was useless here, because this place had an exclusive skill, absolute peace. Kim turned to the warrior to confirm this fact. The warrior nodded with some fear. Because of that skill, everyone here has lost their strength. Kim's face became dangerous. He whispered to himself that he understood the problem now. At this moment, Bassanio interjected, showing contempt for him. The prince and that nun have lost and left their souls behind. Kim quickly understood what this guy meant. He asked how to get them back. Bassanio slammed his hand on the table decisively. He demanded that Kim beat him. He had to bet something of equal value. If he wanted to reclaim their souls, Kim would also have to bet his own. Kim confirmed this with an extremely calm voice. He immediately accepted, pushing the other guy's arm aside to make room. As soon as he sat down, Kim boldly bet his own soul and the soul of the warrior. The warrior was stunned to hear this. Bassanio was extremely excited. The whole room erupted in cheers. The warrior hurriedly turned to ask Kim what he was talking about. Kim calmly said that since the other side took 2 souls, they had to respond in kind. Bassanio laughed loudly, agreeing with Kim. A smart man, I see. Kim reassured the warrior not to worry. He would win easily. That was also what Prince Edward Greason had said. Kim glanced at the warrior and said, Besides, it's better for me to gamble than you. The warrior could only close his eyes, accept his fate, and trust in Kim. Then he turned to Bassanio and asked if he had heard clearly. Bassanio was satisfied and asked what game he wanted to play. Kim immediately clenched his fist and raised it, shouting, This game. Bassanio thought it was rock, paper, scissors. Kim replied, Rock. Then he threw a punch straight into the greedy lord's face. Kim's powerful punch sent him crashing to the ground. According to experimental results, skills couldn't directly affect Kim's body. In other words, he couldn't be affected by direct skills, but he could be injured on the spot by skills like throwing a fireball. The same went for Rhapsody, taking damage from enchanted arrows, but Eye Shot, which aimed the arrow at himself, or Inferno, a skill that turned the target to ash. What about Bassanio's absolute peace skill? Of course, it was nothing to Kim. It was a skill that targeted others who tried to use violence in a special area. Seeing his skill had no effect, Bassanio was utterly bewildered. 1,000 question marks appeared above his head. Before he could react, Kim lifted his foot. He stomped hard on Bassanio. He screamed in pain, his cries echoing. When Bassanio felt the pain in his body, he accepted defeat. The feeling of defeat surged intensely within him. Bassanio's other skill, absolute obedience, was activated. According to the initial bet, Bassanio had naturally lost. The 2 comrades' souls immediately returned. The warrior witnessed the whole event with a stunned expression. The woman next to him was the same. Bassanio was still lying flat on the ground. He tried to argue that Kim had cheated. Thinking he disliked the result, Kim suggested another game to appease him. He would bet Bassanio's life, and Kim would bet everything he owned. Guess if I'll punch you with my left hand or my right. The game starts when you answer. Yet Bassanio still tried to make a guess. Of course, he was wrong. At the same time, Kim once again lifted his foot. This leg seemed more muscular and powerful. Kim decisively stomped down on Bassanio. Blood splattered everywhere. All the spectators above were stunned to witness Bassanio, one of the 4 heavenly kings, defeated. Then they panicked and fled in chaos, fearing Kim would wipe them all out. But he wouldn't let them leave so easily. Kim used his magic to slam all the doors shut, leaving not a single escape route. The warrior spoke up to stop Kim. This meaningless slaughter is unnecessary. But Kim paid no attention to his words. He thought they were all just trash who found pleasure in watching others' souls be taken. Getting rid of this trash was a worthy act. The warrior once again tried to stop Kim, saying this wasn't the right thing to do. At this point, he became annoyed by the warrior's constant talking. Kim placed his sword against the boy's neck. The warrior couldn't believe his eyes. He didn't understand what Kim was doing. As the prince said before, either do good or do what's right. Kim asked the warrior if he would choose justice or what's right. After saying that, he withdrew his sword. If the warrior has no intention of helping, then just take those 2 outside. Because according to Kim, someone who doesn't even know what they want is just a hindrance. Hearing this, the warrior silently supported the other 2 and carried them away. But as soon as he stepped outside, the only exit slammed shut before his eyes. Those still inside began to scream for help desperately, but no one could hear them. Let's begin. Kim opened his mouth wide. His cheeks puffed out as if holding something in his throat. Then he spewed it out. Flames erupted, burning the entire room, accompanied by screams that echoed to the heavens. Those who couldn't escape in time were blocked by Kim's command to shut the doors. One of them frantically clung to the bars of the door. He repeatedly screamed for it to be opened, because behind him was a murderer. Cries for help echoed throughout the casino. Some even lamented that they should have never come to this place. The bet with the pig-headed man was over, and according to the agreement, the pig-headed man's power now belonged to Kim. And upon receiving that power, countless thoughts immediately flooded his mind. One of them was the ownership of this casino. This place was originally in that guy's hands. That's why he could manipulate everything at will. And now, it was Kim's turn. He could do whatever he wanted. Kim calculated silently. He liked to wander and experience places, but unfortunately, he had no time. So, just get rid of all the firefighting equipment, pump more oxygen into the building. Then a small fire would be enough. While Kim was silently plotting in his head, the remaining people were still frantically looking for a way out. But all efforts were futile. A small spark flew from Kim's mouth. Then came a fierce fire that burned down the entire casino, along with everyone inside. The warrior had just gotten out the door when a ferocious flame erupted behind him, sending a chill down his spine. He suddenly remembered what Kim had just said. There's no one involved here anymore, so will you choose justice or what's right? Although he still felt reluctant, the warrior finally grimaced, turned, and walked away, deciding to ignore it all. In another room, two people were sitting opposite each other. Julius said that now there were only two of them left. But just as he finished speaking, a dark figure entered with a mysterious voice. How can that be? It was the Demon King. Her appearance surprised them both. Julius and Zygmunt immediately stood up, respectfully bowing. Julius reported that they had lost contact with Net, and G. Vegas, Bassanio's territory, had also been taken over. Bassanio was currently missing. The Demon King asked what the probability was of Bassanio still being alive. Julius hesitated for a moment, then sadly replied that the possibility was extremely low. The Demon King was so upset she shed tears because they had lost two talented individuals. Zygmunt offered comfort, saying that even without the participation of the four heavenly kings, the plan was still proceeding. He hoped the Demon King would not grieve too much. But the Demon King retorted that how could she not grieve over the deaths of comrades who had always been by her side. Zygmunt apologized softly, but they were the ones who volunteered to stop the heroes. It's truly regrettable, but if their sacrifice can make the great cause smoother, then their deaths were not in vain. Those words convinced the Demon King. Thanks to their sacrifice, the heroes had faltered. This brought the plan closer to completion. They had dedicated themselves to the great cause, but the Demon King still couldn't stop grieving. The Demon King turned her back, saying she was tired and would leave. Her figure flickered, then blurred and disappeared. Julius promised that he and Zygmunt would finish the remaining tasks. Zygmunt said that at times like these, Julius needed to be more comforting because his name was Lust. Julius coldly denied it, saying that wasn't the meaning of his name. Zygmunt's name was Genti. He thought all of their names were unsuitable, but it didn't matter. The important thing now was that the Demon King's plan had reached its final stage. Julius declared that even if he died, he would absolutely not retreat. Zygmunt added that they just needed a little more time. Between the two of us, who would be better off dead? Julius's lips trembled with hesitation, but Zygmunt said it would obviously be him. Julius didn't expect Zygmunt to say that. The other replied, "Don't make that face. I'm older, so I'll go first." Then he turned and left. At the casino, after the great fire, only a desolate ruin remained. Him emerged from the middle of the black ash. Burning the casino could also put him in danger. The regeneration power from the super-regenerating demon inside him would weaken when exposed to fire. The lizardman's mucus helped protect Kim's body, but if his newly regenerated body parts touched the fire, he would still be severely injured. Kim brushed the dust off his armor. He had thought of this before. He was once too distracted in a battle with a dragon and was almost in danger. If his newly regenerated shoulder had been hit by the dragon's fire, the situation would have been critical. Suddenly, behind him, under a pile of wood debris, something stirred. A giant golden lizard slowly crawled out. It had a chain around its neck, indicating it had been kept captive. Kim wondered if this was a pet raised by the demon race. The lizard stood upright in front of him. Its massive body forced it to look down at Kim. Small, unextinguished embers still dotted its body. Kim was impressed that it could withstand dragon fire. A truly rare sight. He observed it. It must have been about 3 meters tall. Then Kim pulled back one corner of his mouth, revealing sharp fangs, and told it to have a taste. The expression on his face gradually became distorted. The lizard sensed the danger from the person before it and tried to turn and run, but Kim gave it no chance to escape. He grabbed its tail with one hand and pulled it back. In a flash, Kim opened his mouth wide, revealing sharp teeth. His face also transformed, covered in fierce veins. Kim bit down hard on the lizard's neck. Blood splattered everywhere, and soon after, its fate was sealed as a meal for Kim. Kim went out to meet up with everyone. Hippanix stood beside him, holding his head and grimacing, saying his head still hurt. That place was the worst. Hippanix glanced at Kim. He saw him licking his lips with satisfaction and asked what was so funny that he kept chuckling. Inwardly, he cursed him as a villain. Kim didn't tell him what had just happened. He simply replied that he had put out the fire. His hand was still stained with blood from his recent meal. That lizard was called a salamander, a rare species of lizard immune to dragon fire. He had just eaten it. Its fire resistance wasn't just in the mucus layer on its skin, but distributed in every cell throughout its body. Of course, he could still use the ghoul's power even without the mucus. But now, all his weaknesses were completely compensated for. Hippanix, standing beside him, suddenly frowned and shook his head, muttering a curse. Kim didn't understand why he was reacting that way. Hippanix explained that a person was once attacked by a bear, but by the time the wound healed, the person couldn't remember it clearly anymore. Then suddenly, that same bear appeared right in his yard, and now it was flying in the sky. So how would that person feel? Kim replied that as long as the bear knew its way back to where it used to live, it would quietly return. No need to worry too much. But Hippanix still felt uneasy because what his reason told him was completely different from what his heart felt. Kim considered it silently. The first step is cooperation. If he only sees it as something to fear, it could backfire. Kim thought that even if it was ferocious, if the bear was useful, it would be less scary. Hippanix heard something in Kim's words and asked what he was talking about. Kim said that while Hippanix had lost his soul, he had done everything for him. Hippanix was surprised and asked, "Really? Kim told him that the warrior had given up justice and chosen what was right. Hipponicus was pleased with that result. This is the second time. He gave a sly smile and said that soon, they just needed to complete one more request. The warrior up ahead was completely unaware of Hipponicus's dark schemes right behind him. The heroes are the strongest people on this continent. The warrior stood there, looking into the distance with a determined gaze full of strength and confidence. Their strength wasn't just physical, they were protected by a massive current called fate. And then the warrior suddenly saw something ominous. A group of ruffians was aggressively advancing towards the warrior and his companions. They loudly called them heroes and ordered an attack. A sword slashed straight at the warrior. Luckily, he dodged in time, and it only grazed his hair. A normal person might have escaped death 3 times in the most perilous moments. Another man on horseback charged with a fierce axe in hand. But before he could strike, the warrior rushed forward and cut him down. The saintess behind them shouted a warning to be careful, as it was the Demon King's army. In a moment of ultimate despair, a hero will always have someone appear to help them. If they have to face an overly strong enemy, that help will find its way to them. Kim didn't join the fight ahead, he just watched quietly. If they fell into a situation where they could only rely on luck, luck would always be on the side of the warriors. The warrior tightened his grip on his sword, his eyes fixed forward. Immediately after, he shot into the enemy ranks like an arrow. To kill a hero, one must possess the power to reverse fate itself. But no one had ever reached that level before. That's why the Demon King beheaded the human hero, and the hero king beheaded the demon hero. However, the protection of fate is only effective as long as the hero remains a true hero. Before long, the warrior had defeated all those unwelcome guests. Their bodies lay scattered everywhere. If a hero loses their qualification, the warrior returned to report to Hipponicus that it was still far to their destination, but luckily they had found horses. Hipponicus gave a fake smile and said they were indeed lucky. It's all thanks to the luck of the heroes protected by the goddess, he said as he boarded the carriage. The warrior had no idea that smile was just a mask for another sinister plot. Fate no longer protected the heroes. Hipponicus told Kim, who was sitting on the carriage box, that the condition to be a hero was to be the most righteous, the most just, and the most benevolent. The warrior had done something malevolent in the demon village. He didn't choose the righteous path at the casino, so if they fought now, if he lost his righteousness, he would no longer be a hero. That was exactly what Hipponicus wanted. Kim couldn't understand why they wanted to kill the hero so badly. Hipponicus said that his original plan wasn't like this. He had taken that crazy old man's draft and modified it a bit. Kim asked what he was talking about. Hipponicus explained that the king intended to pass the throne to the first prince. The second prince, Hipponicus, would serve as the first prince's aide. So every time he thought of the king, he remembered a way to make the hero no longer a hero. When Hipponicus remembered the warrior's shocked and worried expression, he thought the king had forced the heroes to choose the unavoidable, then stripped them of their qualifications. But the king had only planned it. He was afraid of the goddess's wrath, so he didn't dare to execute it. Hipponicus happened to see it. Breaking the seal was also quite troublesome. Based on that plan, Hipponicus modified it in his own way and began to implement it. Now Kim understood Hipponicus's intention, but what he wanted to ask wasn't whose plan it was, but why they wanted to kill the hero, because that hero didn't deserve to die. To Kim's question, Hipponicus gritted his teeth and replied that if his brother died, the king's despair would be much greater than his own sorrow. Hipponicus's hand tightened on the reins. The green veins on his face showed his unrestrained resentment. At Flatfield Plains, their carriage was advancing. All around was lush green grass and a wide-open sky. From a distance, Kim saw the Demon King's castle. Hipponicus saw it too. But the strange thing was, even though they were in front of the castle, there were no soldiers guarding the outside. Hipponicus thought this was unreasonable, because according to the game's setting, the Demon King's castle was usually located in a lava region or a poisonous swamp. Yet the castle before them was built next to a very normal meadow. It was too strange. Against this unrealistic thought, Kim dismissed it. What kingdom would build such a crazy thing in the middle of their capital? If there was one, I'd like to see it. At the same time, Kim also agreed with Hipponicus that this place was indeed very unusual. Hipponicus scanned the area and concluded that there wasn't even an ant nearby. Kim added that he couldn't even see any insects. The area they had just passed had rabbit burrows, but they were also empty. Hipponicus didn't understand what had happened here. He wasn't sure, but he was certain there was something up ahead. Suddenly, the horse sensed something amiss. It let out a terrified whinny. Hipponicus, holding the reins, had a worried look on his face. He was worried, not understanding why the horse was suddenly acting like this. The horse stood still, its head bowed, and it trembled continuously. Hipponicus approached it, guessing it was scared, but there was nothing around. The horse's behavior caught the warrior's attention. He asked what was wrong. Hipponicus replied that the horse refused to move. The warrior thought maybe it was tired. Then he suddenly had a strange feeling. He wondered if this feeling was coming from the Demon King's castle or something else. Seeing the warrior's expression, Hipponicus asked if he felt anything unusual. The warrior replied that although he did feel something strange, he wasn't sure what it was. He reasoned that if they got closer to the Demon King's castle, they might find out the cause. But with the horse's condition, they couldn't move forward. The horse just stood there, stubbornly refusing to take another step. They tried everything to coax it. Hippanix gently nudged its leg. They offered it food, but it wouldn't even open its mouth. Fearing it was injured, they even had a healer use recovery magic to help, but it had no effect. Kim even tried to drain the murderous aura, but the horse just trembled, so it was useless. Finally, the warrior even used a gentle, deep voice to talk about the importance of the battle with the Demon King. But of course, it was all ineffective. With no other choice, the warrior decided to rest here for the night. Hippanix agreed and reminded everyone to get some rest. Just as he touched the carriage's crossbar, the horse suddenly whinnied again. This time, it didn't just whinny. It kicked its hind legs hard at Hippanix, sending him tumbling, then it bolted. Hippanix fell to the ground, watching the horse gallop away, not understanding what was happening. Unlike Hippanix, the warrior seemed to have noticed the abnormality. He immediately drew his sword and got into a ready stance. Hippanix looked at him questioningly. The warrior informed him they were surrounded. From the darkness came a mocking voice. The hero's party is only this much. How disappointing. So foolish and off guard. From the shadows, a staff shaped like a monstrous hand slowly emerged. Its owner's voice continued. He mocked that their searchability was worse than animals. That person was Zygmunt. With a voice as eerie as an echo from hell, he said he couldn't understand how they had survived until now. The warrior looked at him, frowned, and shouted, "Show yourself." Zygmunt asked if he needed him to introduce himself. He wasn't hiding, so he would introduce himself a little. With that, he slammed the hand-shaped scepter to the ground. The entire area immediately shook violently. Hippanix broke into a sweat. Is the ground shaking? Immediately after, a hand shot up from the ground. One gruesome hand appeared in an instant. The corpses clawed their way out of the earth, ready to attack them. The sight was terrifying, a nightmare come to life. Only then did the man speak again. "I am Zygmunt, one of the 4 heavenly kings, and the one who will block your path." It turned out this was Zygmunt Envious, also known as Envy, one of the highest leaders of the Demon Kingdom with nearly 200 years of leadership experience. He had served 3 generations of Demon Kings and had fought against heroes more than twice as many times. During his 200 years of service, more than half was spent as Prime Minister under the Demon King, managing all internal and external affairs. Any demon, even with a lifespan twice that of a human, couldn't do that. But he was an undead. He wasn't a low-class undead like a zombie or a skeleton, nor was he a weak undead like a vampire who had to regularly suck the blood of the living. He was a lich, the highest species of undead. As long as his phylactery, which stored his soul and magic, was not destroyed, he would be immortal. Once he experienced death, he would become even stronger. His arrogance pierced the heavens. The generals in the Demon King's castle, even the Demon King himself, didn't dare to defy him until that incident. The previous generation's hero had fought his way to the Demon King's castle. Zygmunt had summoned countless undead from the fresh spire to block the hero's path, but they were all wiped out by the hero's light magic, and in the end, even he himself was destroyed. By the time his body was regenerated from his phylactery, the hero had already killed the Demon King and returned. Those present at that time immediately started cursing him. The arrogant Envy who only thinks of himself. The Demon King is dead. How can he still live with such a thick face? Did he flee the battlefield because he was afraid to die? At that moment, Zygmunt's soaring pride plummeted to the depths, but Zygmunt was not an ordinary being. He was a genius mage. He didn't blame others for his own failures. Instead, he studied to find the reason for his failure, and he discovered the biggest reason was the hero's light magic. His undead army was significantly weakened by that type of magic, so he tried to cultivate tolerance for himself and for the undead he summoned. The result was displayed right now. Countless undead stood there, surrounding the heroes. The 3 of them could only huddle together. Angela exclaimed in panic, "How is this possible? Why can't I sense those undead?" The second, Prince's brother, also couldn't understand, because undead were supposed to make the living feel their hatred and resentment, yet he couldn't feel even a little bit. Angela was extremely wary. These undead, even standing right in front of someone with holy magic, didn't emit any evil aura, but they are still undead. Use holy magic quickly. Angela immediately complied, unleashing holy attack. The magic hit an undead directly, but its body was completely unharmed, not even a scratch. The whole group's eyes widened in horror. What? Impossible. Holy magic can't harm the undead. Zygmunt laughed loudly. Are you panicking? There's something even more interesting. As he finished speaking, he slammed his hand-shaped scepter on the ground. A magic circle appeared. These undead could do exactly what they had done before. The second prince's brother was so shocked it sent a chill down his spine. What? He has holy magic too? Angela was speechless. How did they do that? Zygmunt said he would reveal his secret technique, and a book appeared before them. Angela cried out, "That's the holy scripture of the goddess religion." She asked Zygmunt how he got it. He immediately replied, "Of course, It's because I am a follower of the goddess religion. All the undead on this plane, including myself, are followers of the goddess religion. That's why we don't carry hatred or resentment towards the living. Angela couldn't believe that undead could be followers of the goddess religion. Zygmunt asked her, "You've followed the goddess religion for over 10 years, right? I have been a follower of her long before you were born. I have read the holy scriptures for 50 years to gain sacred tolerance. I have also followed the example of the saints and holy sons to change my actions." He said loudly, "My piety is greater than yours, not less." He held up the holy scripture, saying that a 10-year follower was only like the youngest child among them. Then he spoke to Angela and pointed at an undead. "In terms of age, you're only like that little boy." She stared at the scene, her face frozen, and fell into despair. Emotion. Do I even have that to spare? Zygmunt continued. The hatred and resentment of the undead is what makes us envy the living. But the envy ingrained in my bones has been resolved by piety. I have controlled envy. I am the true monarch of envy. Zygmunt JNW Rose. Angela still refused to accept Zygmunt's words. Impossible. The living are completely different from those who worship the righteous and benevolent goddess. Someone like him could never have faith. Zygmunt told her that everything in this world was created by the goddess. That's why even a bug or a grain of sand is called a child of the goddess. The living can have faith. The living dead were created by the goddess. Thanks to the goddess's magic, these bodies can be transformed. They can be moved. So this is not an impossible thing. A saintess should understand this. Angela was startled to realize his words were from the letters of Saint Ellen, chapter 6, page 11, verse 22. She gritted her teeth and said, "But even if you have faith, the goddess would never bless a demon like you." Zygmunt recited fluently, "Those who achieve the seemingly impossible will receive a greater reward than those who achieve the simple." From the Memoirs of St. Alex, chapter 3, page 21, line 7. Shouldn't a demon who achieves righteous and pure faith be rewarded by the goddess? Angela clenched her fists, her whole body trembling. You're just an immortal demon practicing necromancy. But deep down, she already knew. Everything he said was true. He was clearly a follower of the goddess. She told Zygmunt to let them pass, because they were carrying out a mission entrusted by the goddess. Unexpectedly, Zygmunt replied, "As heaven has its laws, the mortal world also has its own laws. Therefore, a person should not ignore the laws of the mortal world just for the laws of heaven. You must prioritize the laws of the mortal world before obeying the laws of heaven, even if following the goddess is the right thing to do. I have dedicated this body to the Demon King. It is natural that I should serve the Demon King." Angela gritted her teeth. It was a quote from the Teachings of the Goddess, page I, line 15. Zygmunt closed the book and put it away, saying the conversation was over. "My army of the living dead is tired of waiting. Kill them all." The army of the living dead immediately surged forward. Angela also rushed forward. She unleashed a holy barrier against them, but it was just like last time. The zombies were completely unaffected by her technique. Fear gripped her. The holy barrier couldn't stop them. Just then, a skeleton grabbed her arm. It prepared to bite down. At that critical moment, a brilliant light suddenly flashed. Panic used a light shield in time. He knocked the zombie away. He shouted, "Angela, this is no time to be careless. Focus." He immediately rushed forward to wipe out the zombies surrounding her. Angela's heart stirred. She recalled a childhood memory. SD had protected her from a wolf pack's attack. She quickly calmed herself. No, a saintess shouldn't have these feelings. Panic was still fighting hard against the disgusting undead. Angela regained her composure. She quickly apologized for being distracted. Meanwhile, Kim was still sleeping casually on the vehicle. A zombie staggered toward him. Before it could do anything, a punch caved in its head. It was sent flying. Kim grumbled, "So noisy." The warrior quickly asked if he was okay. Kim didn't answer. He just jumped off the vehicle. The prince was incredibly tense. "I'm glad you're okay. These zombies are immune to light magic." He saw Kim walk straight ahead without hesitation. He immediately called out, "Wait, Sir Kim. Light magic doesn't work on them. Don't be rash." Kim glanced back and asked coldly, "So what?" Just then, a zombie lunged at him. Kim remained calm. He casually parried its arm with his sword. Then he grabbed its arm. He snapped it back repeatedly. Kim forcefully tore the zombie's arm off. He smashed it to pieces. When he was done, he looked back. He said flatly, "If you hit them, they still break." The prince watched this and broke into a sweat, but he also had a realization. His preconception was wrong. He thought only light magic could fight the undead. Holy magic being useless doesn't mean they can't be destroyed. You just have to swing your sword a bit more. Even without holy magic, they're still just the Demon King's minions. A sword can definitely still deal massive damage to them. He immediately charged forward. He told himself he'd crush them, not just cut them. As long as holy magic is ineffective, downed zombies will rise again. A normal sword can endure, but a holy sword is indestructible. Angela had now regained her composure. She fought with all her strength. If all the iron is used for weapons and armor, what will farmers use for tools? Bare fists are enough to protect a devout follower. That's what the Pope taught 1,000 years ago. Hypanic's specialty was light magic. It was a problem when he couldn't use it. But there was more than one way to use magic. Kim felt they were doing better than he expected. But the number of enemies was too large. If this dragged on, it would never end. Zygmunt burst out laughing. Struggle all you want. Kill 1,000 zombies. It's not even 1% of my army. You will all become a part of my forces. After speaking, he threw his head back and laughed. He was arrogant and extremely pleased. But right after, cold sweat broke out on his skin. A stream of fire appeared right before his eyes. A dragon burst out from the sea of crimson flames. It left Zygmunt, the warrior, and the saintess completely stunned. Now, 2 people were riding on the dragon's back. The skeleton leader just stared up at it, and that red dragon was none other than Kim. Looking down, the warrior saw the people below were completely surrounded by undead. Seeing Kim's transformation, the saintess thought he had changed his mind, and he had. Without another word, he headed straight for the Demon King. This made the warrior a bit uneasy. He couldn't sense anything. He wondered if SD knew about this. He turned to Hypanic. He stammered, asking if Kim was a dragon. Faced with the sudden question, Hypanic didn't know how to answer, but he quickly told the warrior that Kim was not a dragon. However, the prince's answer didn't satisfy the warrior. If Kim wasn't a dragon, then what was this dragon? Pressed with questions, the prince didn't know how to explain. He frowned and shut his eyes. He could only apologize to him. He had promised not to reveal Kim's identity. Hypanic could only briefly explain. Kim's origins were a bit more special than a normal person's. Kim was still circling in the air. Hypanic continued to speak. To stop the warrior from asking more strange questions, Hypanic spoke first. From what he knew, Kim was extremely dangerous. So dangerous he could make all of humanity his enemy. That's all he could say. He couldn't reveal any more. What Hypanic revealed sparked a whole new line of reasoning for the warrior. He began to analyze. This person could turn into a dragon. He had an unusual background. Could it be? He shouted, a transformation expert. Sir Kim is a shape-shifting mage. At this conclusion, Hypanic was completely helpless. He could only go along with it. He reluctantly replied, yes, that's right. The warrior immediately got lost in his own thoughts. He knew shape-shifting was a technique only for those with demon blood. He concluded Kim had betrayed the demon race. He became a new species, half human, half demon. If that was true, then he understood SD's intentions. But then he shuddered in fear. What if his whole theory was wrong? How could this be explained? What was that terrifying giant monster? Realizing his imagination was running wild, the warrior calmed himself. It couldn't possibly be that. He then placed a hand on Kim. He silently thanked him. Thanks to him, they defeated the demon generals. Just moments ago, he saved the group from the undead horde. Not only that, while he struggled, Kim used a single sword to cut down that monster of destruction. Thinking through everything, he gave a faint smile. Even though it was all thanks to Kim, he still found him very suspicious. Still, he was certain Kim couldn't be a monster of destruction. As Kim's figure grew distant, the undead fell into chaos. Zygmunt was also sweating profusely. A while later, they approached the castle. The warrior was surprised the journey took 30 minutes. Luckily, Kim was waiting for them. Looking at the tower ahead, the warrior didn't know what it was. Its shape seemed too ordinary compared to what he had imagined. Seeing him spacing out, Kim spoke up. Stop sightseeing and look behind you. Hearing Kim, they all turned 180 degrees. The scene made them jump. The undead were still chasing them. Don't these things get tired? According to the saintess, it would take about 2 hours from here. That number made the warrior fall silent. Within 2 hours, they had to kill the Demon King and retreat. Then they would climb onto Kim to escape. But would they make it? The time frame was too tight. He gritted his teeth. If they couldn't kill the Demon King before the undead closed in, the situation would drag on. Just then, he figured out a solution. They needed more people. That way, they could buy time and complete their goal. The warrior then approached Kim. It's unclear what he said to Kim, but Kim immediately landed on the ground. Hypanic and the other 2 jumped off Kim's back. They had him bring them this far. The rest was up to him. They all rushed inside. He disappeared right after. Just then, the demon guards saw the intruders. They were startled. One of them shouted, "Hey, humans, where do you think you are?" As soon as he finished, they all rushed forward to attack. Charge! But before they could strike, a purple liquid was sprayed on them. Seeing the sticky liquid on his hand, the demon wondered if it was oil or poison, but he had no time to figure it out. The liquid started to bubble. Then, a massive explosion engulfed a third of the castle. At that time, Kim was flying above, watching everything. The purple liquid wasn't oil or poison. It was flammable fuel. It would explode violently when ignited. He looked down with a critical eye. For now, no one could enter the gate anymore. The undead and Zygmunt couldn't get in either, unless they tried. Unless they dared to cross the wall of fire before the fuel ran out. Zygmunt watched the castle explode. He was completely stunned. Sweat poured down his face. He gritted his teeth, silently cursing. That damn dragon. There was no escape now. Zygmunt was standing on the back of the largest, most muscular undead. He was surrounded by a dense army of undead. All you could see were countless glowing red eyes in the dark. Zygmunt didn't know if Kim was Starboss Dragon, but in one day, he had fired dozens of shots. Was this flame meant for him too? Zygmunt's hands began to tremble. His opponent's identity no longer mattered. All he cared about was that dragon. Zygmunt's staff tightened its grip on the undead's shoulder. The creature didn't understand what was happening. Zygmunt's eyes were bloodshot. They shot out red light. Damn it, that's a dragon. The undead had 3 weaknesses. With their skin and bones bodies, their first weakness was destruction by light magic. Their flesh would start to smoke. Second, they're destroyed by sunlight. Their skin would become rough. Finally, they decompose over time. However, the first weakness was overcome by faith. Their bodies were covered in a layer of yellow light. To avoid the second weakness, they had to stop moving after sunset. And to prevent decomposition, they had to remove all moisture from their skin. But that made them dry as tinder, creating another weakness, fire. Even so, Zygmunt could use fire resistance magic to lessen the effect. That dragon's brain was useless. It couldn't help the Demon King at all. On Zygmunt's command, the undead continued forward, useless and now burned to a crisp. Zygmunt was full of fighting spirit. He swore to use all his greed to protect the Demon King. This battle was between him and Kim. Capture that dragon. Meanwhile, Hepanic's group had gone deep inside. The warrior blitzed past the demon guards. With a single sword stroke, he wiped them out. He then led the way for the others. But suddenly, a large pillar slammed down towards him, startling him. The impact created a violent tremor. Debris flew everywhere. Hepanic and the Saintess charged forward together. From within the thick dust, a purple foot emerged. Stop right there. It was Julius. The purple figure holding the pillar was Julius, the embodiment of the demon's ambition. He had demon blood. He possessed a ripped six-pack body, both in front and back, which was very eye-catching. His demon race was Incubus, also known as Lust, and the slender guy was Julius from about 10 years ago. According to the information, Incubus was a witch-like demon army. They specialized in seducing humans and absorbing their life force. Flashing back, Julius of 10 years ago was very confident in his God-given beauty. All the girls fell for him. Because this race had extremely special magic, they didn't need to build their bodies in the usual way. In the early days, young people avoided getting a muscular body. It was considered extremely ugly. Julius was the same back then. He even fell to his knees. If that's the case, a bigger question arises. Why did he become so big, strong, and muscular? Why didn't he use his magic and instead chose muscle as his weapon? That day, he cried so much, his tears fell to the ground. It was all because of the painful memory of a heart-wrenching separation 10 years ago. Back then, he was too confident in his looks. He thought he was like a Korean idol. The flashback ends there. In the present, the warrior rushed forward. He thrust his sword straight at Julius with a very arrogant look. Seeing the warrior charge, he immediately lifted the remaining stone pillar. Damn you, just remembered a bit of the past and you're already angry. Are you reminding us of your cowardly days? He then threw the block of stone at the warrior. The warrior didn't flinch. In a flash, he unleashed countless slashes. The stone pillar shattered instantly. After destroying the pillar, the warrior was calm and cool. He faced Julius head-on. He also began to cast a spell, focusing all his power into his arms. The warrior's sword and Julius's punch collided at the same time. The power from both created a massive shockwave. From the smoke and dust, a figure flew out. It slammed into the wall. It was Julius. The warrior had defeated him in one blow. Lying in the rubble, he began to think. Such an end wasn't fitting for the strongest of the 4 heavenly kings, but if you look closely, it made perfect sense. They often took civilians hostage like Francis. They were especially greedy for food like P.A.G.U.S. Most of them weren't very strong, but were full of wrath. None other than Deckard, and they were lazy as hell like Ned. Not only that, they joined advantageous wars to satisfy personal ambitions, like Bassanio. Finally, without an army, he became envious and created his own. Who else but Zygmunt, the Lord of Envy? The brave often have a 1-to-1 ratio with their peak power. Just then, the warrior looked back. He urged the prince and the saintess to keep up. They both replied, right. A series of numbers appeared before them, almost overflowing the screen. Julius lay motionless in the rubble. He wondered if strength alone could defeat warriors. He wanted to apologize to the Demon King. This was all he could do. He lay there, dazed, as the 3 passed him by. Then Julius stopped moving completely. At this point, their group reached a door. The warrior placed his hand on it. A worried look crossed his face. This was where the Demon King resided. The door slowly creaked open, but it was not what they expected. Inside was a small girl with long, white hair. Hearing the door open, she turned her head. Julius? Seeing her, the warrior was stunned. The Demon King? Outside the castle, Kim was fighting the undead. He started to puff up his cheeks. He looked like he was about to breathe fire. Zygmunt was extremely confused. Why isn't it breathing fire? Is there another way? He stared at Kim so hard his eyes almost crossed. He thought if Kim really couldn't breathe fire, he had to stall for time. Or maybe he should go reinforce the Demon King. Lost in thought, his staff squeezed the undead, making it cry out in pain. In conclusion, he felt this level of support was enough. As for Kim, he had inhaled so much he was about to burst. He then dived straight down from the sky towards the undead. Seeing him dive, Zygmunt panicked. Here it comes. He used his fire staff to enhance his and the undead's fire abilities. An orange light covered them all, though their faces showed fear. Seeing his preparations were complete, Zygmunt shouted, "Come on, you dragon." Even without his call, Kim was already diving. But then he suddenly changed direction. He didn't continue towards them but flew back up, his mouth still full of something. A purple liquid started to leak from Kim's mouth. It was the same flammable substance the other three had used earlier. The liquid fell and stuck to the undead, causing them to panic. Seeing that liquid, Zygmunt felt his soul leave his body, but he quickly came to his senses because the liquid exploded too fast. He then stammered, "What is this?" A few drops even landed on the tip of his nose. "This." Zygmunt opened his mouth. He shouted at Kim. Kim was still busy spraying the liquid on the remaining undead. No, could this poison have killed the undead? He started shouting, calling him a fool. But then he felt he was even more foolish. He had worried for nothing. After spraying the liquid, he turned to answer Zygmunt. "That's right. Poison has no effect." His eyes flashed with light. Seeing this, Zygmunt wondered, is it really BZ? Ignoring him, Kim immediately breathed fire. However, the flame seemed a bit weak. The sight of a dragon breathing such a flame surprised Zygmunt, but then he laughed heartily. Damn it all. He clutched his stomach, laughing. No matter how weakened, his body could easily withstand that flame. However, before he could finish laughing, a huge explosion erupted. The smile vanished from his face. What happened? Impossible. A bone from a zombie hit by the explosion flew towards a gray undead. The still burning bone touched the liquid on his shoulder. It immediately exploded. Another huge explosion formed. Kim then explained to Zygmunt. The liquid wasn't poisonous but was extremely flammable, more than any other. And about 30 of his fire breaths would cause an explosion. As soon as he finished, a series of explosions erupted, creating a widespread fire. Witnessing the scene, Zygmunt was terrified. No, this can't be. The fire reached him. Before he could deny it, the explosion hit him head-on. Everything blew up. At that moment, in the darkness, a jar was shaking violently. Looking closer, cracks appeared on the jar. Then it shattered into pieces. The undead screamed. They fled in chaos from the sea of fire Kim created. Just as Zygmunt was hit by the explosion, the jar also shattered. Immediately, the undead's eye sockets turned black. They all stopped moving, as if all their life force had been drained. Then they were slowly consumed by the flames. Kim, flying in the sky, realized they had stopped. Perhaps their leader was dead. He was disappointed. The fight ended before it truly began. Seeing the large number of remaining undead, he felt a bit tired. But with the power of the flames, he could still finish them off. Without a leader, they were just powerless. So he felt it was more useful. No sooner said than done. He ignored the inferno, burning the undead. He returned to human form and entered the Demon King's castle. As soon as he stepped inside, he saw soldiers lying scattered. They spoke of a hero and a demon king. Kim walked alone down the empty hallway. Suddenly, he noticed a large door. As he pushed it open, he heard a loud argument from inside. 3 people were in a standoff, pointing at each other. The warrior was protecting a small, horned girl. Hippanic was questioning the warrior loudly. He argued for sparing the lowly girl. The saintess stood between them, pleading, "Please don't fight, don't argue, put down your weapons." Just then, Kim walked in and asked what was happening. The people in the room all turned to look at him. He asked about the Demon King's situation. The warrior hesitated, telling him the truth would be dangerous. Finally, Hippanic spoke up. It turned out the lowly girl the warrior was protecting was the Demon King. Then Hippanic ordered him to deal with her. But the warrior immediately shouted to stop him. Kim looked at the warrior to confirm Hippanic's words. The warrior admitted it was true, but the warrior gritted his teeth, looked at the Demon King, and said she was no longer the Demon King. This confused the others. The warrior explained that her body was still the Demon King's, but the soul inside had been replaced by someone from another world. The warrior was absolutely certain. He had used his lie detection skill. Hearing this, Kim glanced at the Demon King, who was hiding fearfully behind the warrior. He thought to himself that if this was true, she was the third person from Earth. First was Edward, who was reincarnated or transmigrated. He was born in the body of someone from this world. Kim had traveled here in a transformed state. He could be considered a mutant. And the Demon King was a case of an earthling's soul trapped in this body. So she was a body snatcher. She was originally just a very ordinary office worker, but she isolated herself. She became engrossed in military novels. So when she became the Demon King, she couldn't accept reality. She thought it was just a dream. The trope of a soul inhabiting another's body appeared often in the novels she read. Because of this, she spread Earth's knowledge, systems, and concepts to this world, causing the demon kingdom's power to skyrocket. This broke the balance between humans and demons. That's why the goddess had to send a hero. She stubbornly believed that if she continued, she would be like the protagonist in a novel. But she wasn't the protagonist. The generals she trusted could no longer use their power, so she got rid of them all. It wasn't until Julius was defeated that she woke up. Fear immediately consumed her. Now, the only thing she could do was beg for mercy. Hearing the whole story, Kim crossed his arms. He indifferently questioned her. She ordered her subordinates to cause chaos, then surrendered when she got scared. The warrior quickly tried to defend her, but Kim cut him off. He asked if he truly believed she was from another world. Even if he himself believed it, it didn't matter now. The warrior still tried to explain, but what he was really worried about was that too many lives had been lost already. He simply didn't want to kill anyone else with his own hands. Seeing the warrior's anguish, Kim pondered for a moment. Then he signaled to Hippanic. Suddenly, he said, "It's time." Hippanic had already drawn his sword. Before the warrior could understand, Hippanic's sword lunged straight at him. The warrior immediately drew his sword to block, but Hippanic's power was too strong. The warrior's sword shattered on the spot. Hippanic's sword instantly turned both into a mess. In the warrior's heart, a hero must always be upright, just, and kind. These three things seem similar, but sometimes they contradict each other. But once a hero overcomes that moral crisis, they achieve the best results. However, the prince and Kim were trampling on his kindness. The warrior had taken part in the slaughter of defenseless people in the weaponsmith village. It was the right thing to do, but it wasn't kind. He didn't condemn the wicked people in the casino. He only focused on saving his comrades. That was kindness, but it wasn't justice. In the end, he even abandoned his mission to protect the Demon King. He lost the very integrity he cherished. The hero was no longer upright. He was no longer just. He was no longer kind. Therefore, the hero was no longer a hero. The warrior looked up at Hippanic, stunned, in complete disbelief. Hippanic coldly asked if it hurt to call his name. From the moment he tried to save the Demon King, he was no longer a hero. Red mixed with the broken sword fragments. The indestructible sword was now just an ordinary one. The warrior clutched his stomach in pain and called out Hippanic's name, but Hippanic didn't want to hear anymore. He slowly sheathed his sword. His heart was filled with anger towards the warrior. He was angry at him, but there was no other choice. Hearing that, the warrior stammered, as if trying to say his last words. But before he could say anything, he collapsed. Witnessing the whole thing, the Saintess's face turned pale. She stared at Hippanic. She couldn't understand why things had come to this. She rushed past Hippanic to check on the warrior, but Kim grabbed her hand. The Saintess looked at him in shock. She urgently wanted to heal the warrior, but seeing his silence, her veins started to bulge. She was too scared to speak. Immediately after, Kim transformed into a snake's head. He gently bit towards the Saintess. A few days earlier, Kim and Hippanic had planned to deal with both the warrior and the Saintess. Kim was a bit surprised. He thought Hippanic had feelings for her. Hippanic said slowly that the warrior also liked her. He also admitted that he liked her too, but he couldn't spare someone with the ability to heal the warrior. The warrior had given up his position to become a hero, so he could no longer compete for Hippanic's throne. He couldn't protect his family's promise. Hippanic had also investigated the Saintess's terrifying healing ability. The ability to reassemble flesh fragments to regenerate a person could truly be considered a miracle. He then looked at the backs of the warrior and Saintess. He said that in reality, that ability could be considered immortality. To deal with the Saintess, not a single piece of flesh could be left. Kim turned and asked him what he planned to do. He put his hand on Kim's shoulder and winked, which annoyed Kim. Then he said, "We still have someone here who can turn into a dragon and swallow people whole." Hearing that, Kim calmly denied it. He could eat people just fine without turning into a dragon. Seeing his sharp, terrifying teeth made him sweat. Hippanic could only awkwardly praise his reliable ally. Then, Hippanic added that even if he swallowed his anxiety, the swallowed thing could still cause trouble in his stomach. But Kim immediately refuted it. For him, once something passed his throat, it disappeared to some other place. He didn't know where that somewhere was. He only knew it couldn't be destroyed as long as it was connected to him. Back in the present, only two people remained in the Great Hall. Hippanic glanced at the dead Demon King and frowned slightly. He then turned to Kim and asked if he wanted to run her through. Leaving her like this made him uneasy. Kim told him to step back. Once the process was complete, any abilities would disappear. As for those who fought hard, the goddess would grant a wish for the battle with the Demon King. When the goddess appeared, it would be solid proof of the Demon King's death. Hippanic nodded in agreement, and just as he was mumbling, a light suddenly shone. The light emanated from the Demon King's body on the ground. Immediately after, the space around Kim turned completely white, like this. It felt like he was standing on water. When he opened his eyes, a cube with different emotional faces appeared before him. After staring at it for a moment, he hesitantly asked, "Are you the goddess?" The cube turned its smiling face and confirmed. Kim was curious because it didn't look like a goddess. but the cube gave a vague answer. The interface's appearance is based on the ideal form subconsciously imagined by the person connecting to me. But the current subject is outside the system's management scope, so a suitable interface cannot be created. Then Kim asked what the goddess actually was. The cube projected images everywhere. It told him it was the system that creates and maintains the world. Its main tasks were managing the system and skills, creating monsters and governing the reincarnation of souls. Hearing this, Kim silently concluded this wasn't a goddess, but God. He asked the goddess why she brought him to this world. He received the answer that the two worlds were close, so chaos could easily occur. Then he asked about the similarity between this world's monsters and Earth's legendary monsters. The goddess said she introduced them. Kim then asked if there was a problem with him dealing with the hero. He received a negative answer. He was brought here as a reward for his efforts in the Demon King War. So even if he killed both the saintess and the warrior, the goddess wouldn't be angry. Because the goddess doesn't put personal feelings into the system, just like the principle of not favoring skills like the path of survival. It only said well done if it was necessary. This also confused him. The goddess explained that the hero system was meant to increase competition. It was to promote the development of both the human and demon races, but it led nowhere. Therefore, the hero system was now abolished. It would not appear again. This meant from now on, one side could unilaterally destroy the other. As for competition, humanity would no longer consist of a single race. There would be humans, elves, dwarves, beastmen, and divine people. Right now, they were all allies. But once the demon race disappears, they will start competing with each other. After that, Kim didn't ask anymore. He got straight to the point, the wish for the hero who defeated the Demon King. He coolly asked the goddess if she could send him back to Earth. That question immediately made the goddess pause. Kim's face also tensed up. Can you let me return to Earth? Faced with this question, the goddess remained silent. After a few seconds, she hesitated before answering. I can't. You are a figure of great influence in this world now. I am not allowed to let you go to another world. Hearing those words, he was stunned. He never thought his influence was so great that even the goddess couldn't send him back. Kim seemed to understand. In other words, the goddess system can't directly send me back. The goddess nodded in confirmation. He asked if he could find a way back on his own. The goddess then said Hispanic was receiving information and would need a lot of time to process it. Hearing that, he said, then cancel it. A mysterious smile appeared on his lips. He thought, it's enough that he knows. I can't break my promise. The matter of returning to Earth was settled. His next goal was to dominate all things. Even though he had eaten a dragon, it wasn't enough. No matter how strong, he could still be targeted by superior beings and humans. As for monsters below dragon level, he could eat as many as he wanted. He wanted the power of an even more transcendent species. He asked the goddess if there was a species with a normal body structure but could defy all physical laws. Yes. Along with that answer, a flood of information about the strongest creatures was instantly transmitted into his head. Kim shuddered as he felt the information in his head was also being sent to the goddess. Her calm voice echoed. This creature is inspired by the Cthulhu of Earth. The continent's current technology cannot control it. Next, the goddess asked him what he would do with the privilege of defeating the Demon King and the ability to create such a creature. That question was really difficult for Kim. He understood its importance and couldn't choose lightly. Those creatures had countless unique skills, like moving 400 times the speed of light, teleportation, or the ability to create new bodies. But he could only create one, so he hesitated, considering every detail. After thinking for a while, he spoke up. Postpone it. Hearing that, the goddess immediately asked, are you dissatisfied with something? He replied right away, no, that's not it. In his mind, transcendent creatures he couldn't yet handle shouldn't be brought into existence. If he rose to the top too quickly, he would get distracted. Then all sorts of creatures would want to take his life. The one at the top must be the strongest, invincible under the heavens. There were still too many creatures in this world he hadn't eaten. He would slowly eat them all. It wouldn't be too late to receive transcendent power after that. After careful thought, Kim told the goddess, my wish is to receive the reward for defeating the Demon King later. Is that okay? The goddess immediately agreed to pause the reward process. He asked when he could return. She replied immediately, whenever you want, but your companions are still making their wishes, so it will take some time. The goddess asked if he wanted to go ahead or wait. Kim quickly chose to go ahead. The goddess's mission was also complete. Before leaving, she didn't forget to wish him well. At that moment, on the other side, a person was gradually appearing. Kim asked, you're here? Hispanic suddenly burst into tears. He didn't expect the goddess to look like that. Hearing that, Kim was a bit confused. He imagined the appearance of the saintess. He thought the goddess would take the form of the other person's ideal. Then Kim asked him, regrets? Hispanic clenched his fist and replied, every minute, every second. But then he smiled. It's come to this, so regrets are useless. Aren't you curious about my wish? Kim stood up and asked what he wished for. He said he had asked for the knowledge he would need. Hearing that, Kim asked back, does that include knowledge that can help me get back to Earth? He joked, saying he couldn't let him stay in the world he was about to rule. Hearing that, Kim was skeptical. So what's your method? Hypanik just said he would explain later. He added, the Demon King's army will knock on that old man's door. The Demon King's plan was to reform half the army, merge military and administration, and restructure the ranks, reallocating leadership, using new weapons and tactics, changing perceptions. It all originated from the art of war. The result of these major reforms was a huge increase in the Demon King's army's combat power. The Demon King could even push the leaderless human race to the brink of extinction. At that time, everyone was trying their best to defend the city, but compared to the enemy, it was like throwing an egg against a rock. Witnessing the situation, the general could only watch helplessly. The enemy soldiers were too numerous. They also had many strange weapons he had never seen before. In despair, he thought, is humanity really about to be wiped out? The general seemed to have accepted his fate, his eyes closed. Suddenly, a shout pierced the gloom. Reinforcements have arrived. Just as a bullet flew towards them, a blue projectile several times larger blocked it. The battle fell into a stalemate. The general hurried outside to observe the situation. His face couldn't hide his joy. Good. With this momentum, we can hold out for another week. In that week, reinforcements will reach the other cities. Suddenly, he noticed someone opening the city gate. He asked in panic, who opened the gate? Hearing this, a soldier immediately replied, it's the knights from the Third Night Order. As the gate opened, a group of people prepared to go out. It was the Night Order filled with useless nobles. A blond man was extremely confident. He saw this as a chance to show off. Above, the general quickly ordered his men to close the gate. Seeing them hesitate, he shouted louder, close the gate now. Close the city gate right now. Not daring to disobey, the guards frantically pulled the chains to close the gate. But suddenly, the guard was shot down by the enemy, and the gate flew open. At this sight, the general once again fell into despair. This time, humanity is really done for. Just then, someone told him to look at the sky. He immediately looked up. At this critical moment, Hypanik, riding a giant dragon, landed in the middle of the battlefield. He held a sword in his hand and said confidently, everyone, you can rest assured now. As he jumped down, he announced, I, Edward Ganketon, have arrived. At this time, the king was very troubled by the current situation. He heard the general report that Hypanik had gone to defeat the Demon King. Hearing the news, everyone was overjoyed and praised him continuously. But the king was very uneasy about letting him fight the Demon King's army alone. The general then added that the dragon the prince rode had burned the entire Demon King's army. At those words, the king was astonished that his son could summon a dragon. The general smiled and confirmed that it was absolutely true. It seemed the king still found it too absurd, even with many eyewitnesses. His eyes scanned those present, as if planning something. People continued to praise and hail Hypanik as a hero of humanity. He thought to himself, right now, if I keep denying the kids' efforts, they'll suspect me. After some consideration, he had to acknowledge his son's achievement and then fell silent. No one noticed his eyes becoming incredibly fierce. Hero of humanity? Never. He and I are cut from the same cloth. His mind was filled with doubt. He dealt the final blow in the battle with the Demon King. That might be true. He really is talented and capable. He became even more suspicious. The hero and the saintess died in the Demon King War. He immediately dismissed it. Impossible. The Demon King wasn't the one who killed the hero and saintess. They were killed by the prince after the battle ended. The king clenched his fist. In any case, the plan for the hero to return and become the crown prince had failed. If he really did that, then it's not strange for him to carry out the plan and kill the prince. No, that makes even more sense. Suddenly, the king paused. But there's one suspicious point. How could he carry out that plan without being punished by the heavens? The royal family's power was the price for their dedication, loyalty, and faith in the goddess. A royal family member killing a hero was an unforgivable sin, but there was no sign that the prince had been punished by the heavens. On the contrary, he was hailed as someone who had contributed more to the world than any hero ever had. Because of this, the priests who once sided with the princess now sided with the prince. No matter how he thought about it, this was too unbelievable. He sighed and told himself he had to admit it. The prince had changed. All the rumors were true. After a long pause, he thought maybe he was being too prejudiced. Maybe he needed to change his perspective. On the other side, Hypanik had returned to Gankoten and wiped out the remaining demon forces. The image of the giant dragon soaring majestically across the blue sky left a deep impression on everyone. Even the nobles who once hated him praised him as a hero. A few days later, at Santo Almorzud, an army was entering from outside. The leader was none other than Hypanik. People lined the streets, cheering loudly to welcome him back. Everyone waved enthusiastically, shouting, "It's the prince," and he walked proudly amidst the roaring cheers. He smiled and thought, "I'm back, you damned old man." In the palace, everyone was busy preparing for the banquet. Everyone was preoccupied with their tasks. Looking at the scene, he casually said to the person in a guard's uniform next to him, "Everyone's busy except us." Then he turned and added, "It seems the old man is very wary of you." Hearing that, he just replied, "I don't really care." Instead, Are you sure about this arrangement? Seeing he wasn't completely at ease, Hippanik said, Of course. This is information I received from the goddess. But now is not the time for us to act, right? Hearing that, Kim calmly replied, I know. As he saw him leave, he added, I'm counting on you. Suddenly, a bell rang. All eyes turned to the great door. Hippanik took slow, steady steps forward. It was clear they were welcoming him with a grand ceremony. They praised him as the head warrior of the Holy Sword Society, the wielder of the light staff, and the seventh heir to the crown, Prince Edward Ganketon. The king's mood was very complicated. In contrast, Hippanik had a clear smile on his face. The king worried whether letting him in was the right decision. Immediately after, a guard approached and said to him, Prince, please, place your sword here. The guard remembered the king's orders. If the prince draws his sword, kill him immediately. Hippanik still held the sword in his hand, with no intention of putting it down. The atmosphere between the three was extremely tense, but then he suddenly placed the sword on the tray and knelt down. He and the king exchanged a few pleasantries. He was perfectly playing the role of an obedient son. Suddenly, the king asked, Did you gain anything on this journey? Hearing that, he replied, Yes. I realize how much father has sacrificed for the people and how heavy the crown on your head is. As soon as he finished, Hippanik stood up, to the king's surprise. The king angrily shouted, Who allowed you to stand up? He immediately used his power and replied seriously, I also know what I must do next. As he spoke, the sword on the tray held by the guards suddenly, slowly disappeared and then gradually appeared in his hand, and a cold, sharp glint flashed in Hippanik's eyes. From now on, father, you don't need to sacrifice anymore. You don't need to bear the weight of this crown anymore. Hearing those arrogant words, the king was terrified. He stammered, What do you want to do? Hippanik drew his sword and said slowly, I am just inheriting the throne, father. The king, sitting on the throne, was terrified to see his son like this. He showed clear fear and could only scream, You, how dare you? Seeing Hippanik with his sword, the soldiers quickly rushed to surround him. Hippanik glanced around. A soldier looked at the sword in his hand and said, The sword of light. Then he looked at his armor, the armor of light. Finally, the shield on his shoulder, the shield of light. Seeing the equipment, the soldier advised, Prince, what are you doing? Please stop. His expression immediately changed. He extended his arm towards the soldier. His hand tightened on his sword. Then with just one slash, he beheaded two nearby soldiers. Seeing this, the king panicked and shouted, That's right, I thought you had changed. How naive of me. A leopard can't change its spots. However, he smirked and thought to himself that things were going just as he had predicted. The king gripped the armrest of his throne, continuing to think, I've already ordered the best assassins to be ready. He sat silently on the throne, observing. The king repeatedly tapped the armrest as a signal, but no one appeared. Seeing this, he asked confusedly, What's wrong? Why hasn't anyone appeared yet? The king quickly turned to the nobles beside him and shouted, What are you doing? The prince is rebelling. Call the soldiers. But they didn't answer him. They just smiled strangely. Seeing this, the king was both terrified and confused. What is this? Back in the past, there was a monster shaped like an octopus with one eye in the center. Among the creatures I've eaten, the Parhodlos nasi was the strangest with the weirdest biology. Anyone who saw it became dazed. It's a parasitic species that lives without a host. It's also a collective formed by many individuals with a shared consciousness. A man smiled strangely. Even fallen individuals can move according to the collective's will. Of course, with my unique abilities, from the beginning I have. Many panic monsters fled upon seeing a monster with bat wings, but in the port town, I ate many demon elves. After my power increased, I started to develop that parasitic ability. The parasitic creatures move through space. Although not perfect, they can still make fallen individuals move. Although I can't control the host, I can influence their emotions or erase their memories after revealing this truth, or not. The prince took advantage of it and made a plan. Hippanik glanced at the person in armor and said, Brainwash them. The armored person next to him spoke. Though it's unrelated, I have to accept such conspicuous things. Hearing that, he calmly replied, You don't need to worry about that. We won't do anything as complicated as brainwashing. It was as if two personalities existed in his body. One was normal, while the other had a sinister, deceitful smile. Stimulate the frontal lobe to increase empathy. The target is me, so every time I see myself achieving what I want, I will do it, to feel maximum vicarious satisfaction. After receiving the order, the armored person immediately went to work. Infecting people in the royal palace wasn't difficult. Just drop eggs into the well used for drinking water. That's the method he used. He has helped me a lot. Back in reality, Hippanik had killed all the soldiers. He stood in a room drenched in red. He took step after step towards the king. As he walked, he said, Mother's death. His feet stepped in the pool of blood on the floor. Each step left a bloody footprint on the carpet as he continued, sending assassins to kill me, sending Angela to the Holy Kingdom. The king sat on his throne, his face filled with fear, listening to his words. I wanted to ask you many things, but now it's enough. A murderous intent showed on his face as the tip of his sword pointed at the king. Die. He thrust the sword into his father, making him scream in pain. You dare! The sword pierced Kwok Fuang's body, and he fell to his knees. Blood began to pour from his mouth. Kwok Fuang used his last breath to speak. Edward. His trembling hand gripped the blade. He looked at his attacker and said, I hope hell has a special place waiting for you, you treacherous son. The man forcefully pulled his sword out and replied, Then I'll see you there. Farewell, old man. Then the king collapsed to the ground, and his crown clattered away. The man picked up the red cloak. Hippanix took the cloak and draped it over himself. He stood in the middle of the room with a solemn expression. Just then, a shadow lunged from behind him. When he turned, he saw a black-clad assassin. The assassin lay sprawled on the ground, crying out in pain. Who the hell are you? Another knight leaped down from above, ending his life. With the task done, the knight spoke coldly. It's taken care of. Hippanix held the crown in one hand and said, Good. This way, I've eliminated all the useless ones. He placed the blood-stained crown on his head. Immediately after, he sat on the throne and said, From now on, no one can stop me. A person below heard this and began to clap. Soon, others joined in unison. Applause filled the room, and he sat on the bloody throne, looking down. By nightfall, he was still sitting in the same spot. His face fell, and he whispered to someone, I know, brother. A shadowy figure seemed to appear in the room. His voice continued, I know what you want to say. His eyes now showed deep sadness. My only wish to the goddess was simply to gain knowledge. He remembered a man in armor. I used it to show Kim where the targets to be eliminated were. Then he remembered his brother again. Among that knowledge was the message you wanted to leave before you died. Thinking of this, he trembled with anger. You told me not to cross the line. Even in that situation, you held no grudge. That's just like you, brother. He shot up and roared. But it's too late. It's too late, brother. Hippanix blamed the figure in the room. What's the point of saying that now? You should have told me before I made a deal with that monster. He caught a small cluster of light in his palm and yelled at the figure to disappear. From now on, this world will change. It'll become a world not so different from the one you knew. He hurled the light at the figure in front of him, splitting its body in two. Then he dispersed the light and said, So no one will cling to the empty title of humanity anymore. The demon race, our common enemy, is gone. From now on, humanity will face the enemy within the barrier. He thought for a moment, then continued, And since a monster's power got me this far, I will repay the favor, to send him back to Earth. The Elf King, the Dwarf King, the Merfolk King, the Lizardman King. His voice echoed in the darkness. I will offer the heads of the racial kings at the sealed altar beneath the Holy Nation's cathedral. To do that, an era of war and chaos must begin. Kim wrote as he spoke. So the prince overthrew the incompetent king and took the throne, all because the kingdom had prospered for too long. The gourmet adventurer's journey in a foreign land. End of part 1. Kim closed the notebook. Hippanix, sitting nearby, spoke up. I have a question. Kim replied, Go ahead. Resting his chin in his hand, Hippanix looked at him worriedly. What exactly is this gourmet adventurer's journey in a foreign land book? Kim glanced at him and answered, I've told you before. When I return to Earth, I'll kill my old comrades, shed my old identity, and live a new life. He slammed the book on the table and continued, If I do that, I won't have my current income, so I've decided to write a book to sell. The book tells the story of my journey eating everything in this strange land. That's why it's called The Gourmet Adventurer's Journey in a Foreign Land. Hearing this, Hippanix chuckled. A title like that probably won't sell well. You should try something more dynamic if you're the main character. He imagined Kim in the book and continued, How about getting stronger by eating? Kim remained in his chair and replied, The title doesn't matter. I'm planning to get a ghostwriter anyway. I'm good at eating, not writing. Hippanix asked again, What if it doesn't sell? Kim smirked and explained, That's impossible. It's all based on my own hard-earned experiences. Of course, it'll be different from reality. Who knows? The book might sell 1 million copies and even be adapted into a world-famous fantasy film trilogy. Hearing this, Hippanix just shook his head helplessly. After a moment, he spoke again. I understand what you mean, but that's for after you return to Earth, right? Let's discuss how you're going to get back. First, the condition the goddess mentioned was. Kim cut him off before he could finish. I have to kill the kings of all the other races and use their heads as an offering? Is that even possible? Hippanix looked at a stack of papers in his desk drawer and answered, Not right now. He pulled out the papers, arranged them, and continued. This is completely different from capturing the Demon King. I could use a small elite force to assassinate a king. He thought of an army and analyzed, but then a successor would take the throne, and using the pretext of condemning human arrogance, they would ally with other races and attack us. Hippanix thought of the elves and continued, Elves are skilled in archery and magic. Then he remembered the dwarves' forging abilities. The dwarves' metalworking skills have reached a magical level. He remembered a race of beastmen and continued, The physiques of beastmen and lizardmen have long surpassed humans. He then pointed out their disadvantage. Although humans have a large population, the other races all have special abilities, so we are no match for them. If they join forces, it's our heads that will disappear. Hippanicus stood up and concluded, "For now, we must strengthen our internal power." He walked towards Kim, saying, "We must centralize power in the capital and form alliances with other kingdoms. Only then can we wage war against the kingdoms of other races." He placed a stack of papers on the table while Kim was still surprised. "Is this the payment?" Kim picked up a few sheets to look at them. "It is." The papers contained files and photos of several people. His voice continued, "A kill list?" As he realized something, his face darkened. He glared at Hippanicus and growled, "Are you giving me orders?" The man calmly sat in the chair opposite Kim and replied, "No, it's just a proposal. Turn to the next page." Hearing that, Kim immediately complied, and at that moment, his eyes widened in shock. The paper listed information about the Griffon's habitat. Port Jackson had collapsed due to an invasion. There was a report on a manticore sighting. He continued to mumble the information on the paper. The main nesting ground of the Wyvern, Penn Lake, Blue Dragon Mountain. What is this? His face now showed clear excitement as he asked, "Is this a treasure map?" Seeing Kim's reaction, Hippanicus smiled happily. "I'm glad to see you so happy." Hippanicus reached into his pocket to find something and continued, "Very well then, Sir Kim." He took out a badge, held it in front of Kim, and said, "By the power of the heir to the throne, I appoint you as the royal enforcer." Hearing the title, Kim asked in confusion, "This kingdom has a position like that?" Seeing his doubt, Hippanicus began to explain, "I just created it. There was no knight of the rear guard either. The important thing is, the royal enforcer is different from the rear guard knight in that you can travel freely, but it's different from abandoning your position because you will always be on the side of the one in power." Kim seemed to have anticipated this and replied softly, "Of course." He thought to himself, "I get a treasure map and the freedom to act without supervision. In return, I'll eliminate the prince's enemies." Excellent. With that thought, he took the badge. "Deal." Kim stood up. "I'll be leaving now." Hippanicus's expression remained calm as he instructed, "My coronation is next year. Remember to come back then. It wouldn't be good for people to rumor that the two heroes who slew the Demon King are enemies." He walked to the door and replied, "Don't worry." Once outside, Kim began to plan. "So which path should we take? Where to go and how to get there?" He glanced down, his thoughts continuing. "What should I do first, and what should I skip?" He clutched the papers tightly and thought, "I need to figure out how to use this information most effectively." Kim started walking, but his thoughts didn't stop. He was certain that after this journey, he would be much stronger. At that moment in the room, Hippanicus was still sitting in his original spot. Someone's voice came from above him. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Hearing that, he asked back, "Why do you ask?" A figure in black hiding in the rafters spoke to him. "Sir Kim is a very strong warrior. I believe letting him leave your Highness's side will affect your safety." Hippanicus gently chided his subordinate. "Nonsense. Isn't that why I keep you all by my side? To prevent that from happening." Hearing that, the person on the ceiling replied, "My apologies." Hippanicus yawned and continued, "If you want to apologize, prove it with your skills and achievements." The man in black replied, "As you command. The captain of the assassin squad, captain of the royal assassins. Why would Prince Edward, who killed the previous king, keep these assassins as his subordinates?" An image of Kwok Phuong appeared. King Edward IV had intended to hand over the royal assassins to Edward's management. The first prince's ascension would spread the royal family's glory far and wide. The second prince would be the Shadow General and the leader of the Dark Squad. Assassination. Eliminating the royal family's enemies was also part of his plan. But because he was raised too kindly, the first prince became a hero, shattering the second prince's plans. The image of the assassin squad appeared again. The plan was already in its middle stages. If given certain missions to show loyalty to both Kwok Phuong and Prince Edward, they would be brainwashed. Someone wore the ring that controlled the assassin squad. The condition was that Prince Edward would inherit what the king possessed. What Kwok Phuong wanted to give the prince was the ring symbolizing the position of leader of the royal assassins. The image of him picking up the crown reappeared. The prince had stolen the kingship, but either way, he now possessed what the king once held. Thus, the royal assassins were passed to a new master. The prince now controlled one of the two armed organizations that could freely enter and exit the kingdom. An image of the royal knights appeared. The other armed organization, the Royal Guard, was also very obedient to the prince due to being infected with brain parasites. He sat in his chair, thinking smugly, "If this monster leaves the palace, the parasite's function will disappear. In the meantime, I must make them my own people." At this thought, he smirked. What binds people together are benefits and satisfaction, and also self-blame. So, shall I give it a try? Kim thought of the armor he had been given. "The armor I received from him is excellent, but using it daily would attract too much attention. Even the famous title of Prince's Rearguard Knight, Kim, is too troublesome." He hid in the shadows and continued thinking. It doesn't fit the role of a royal enforcer who can act freely. He admired the armor he had just created and continued thinking. So, He had a new set of armor, custom-made with a plain look. It wasn't flashy, but it was enchanted. Most importantly, it was perfect for disguising himself as a mercenary and adventurer returning home. He glanced down at the sword at his hip and continued, "It only took 2 days to make this set, so this is power. It's always better to have authority." He spoke again, "But these political matters have nothing to do with me." At that moment, the sky was a deep blue. He walked out of the city gate and said, "From now on, I'll spend my time exploring, not on political affairs." Kim suddenly fell into deep thought, standing motionless. He was currently the hero of the war against the Demon King, and also a man favored by the prince. But the bitter truth was that on Earth, he was just an internationally wanted criminal. In other words, Kim was hunted by the police, intelligence agencies, and even criminal organizations. There was no doubt about it. To avoid being tracked by these powerful forces, he couldn't do the things he loved. First, he couldn't play sports, because contact with other players could reveal his information. Not only that, he couldn't play games either because he couldn't hide his passion, and his second and third disguises were discovered. Kim knew that the safest thing he could do was read books. He liked novels the most, but series were hard to carry, so he only read standalone books. Because his other hobbies could threaten his identity, Kim saw reading as a reluctant pastime, but later he genuinely came to love it. Unfortunately, the civilization and culture in this world were not as developed as on Earth. Books were something only the nobility could possess. Of course, the books he read were thanks to the prince. Although not to the point of despair, when compared to books on Earth, the books here were truly bland. Although no one wrote compelling stories, this land had interesting tales told by others. Before humans had a way to record things, their accumulated knowledge was passed down to future generations through stories and songs. It was a treasure trove of wisdom from many generations. A woman stood on a high stage and declared that these were ancient stories that parents knew. Mothers told them to their children, songs that the village elders taught to the young. She smiled brightly and affirmed that someone had risen to preserve these stories from being lost. Finally, she emphasized, "If you want to be that protagonist, come to the school of bards. Then you will become that protagonist." Those inspiring stories seemed to touch the poetic heart of Felina Griffin-Smith. She tried to become a bard, only to eventually realize how foolish she was to believe those sweet words. The reason she entered this place was only to hear dramatic stories that deified humans. She wasn't interested in stories about small adventuring parties and their heroes. In her eyes, bards were just people who sang songs and told dramatic stories to entertain others. After spending some time here, Felina was sober enough to understand that the bard she aspired to be was not meant for this kind of work. In the central district of the Fabrout territory, Santo Fabro, Felina was walking deeper into the building. She tried to place each step carefully, slowly, and gently. Her eyes also leisurely scanned the area. Seeing the men gathered, eating, drinking, and laughing loudly, she guessed they were a small mercenary group. As she passed Kim, a suspicion arose in her that he was an adventurer. Felina's gaze shifted to a figure with a covered face sitting silently beside some wine jugs. On the outside, he just looked like a drunkard, but she still trusted her eyes, because she was sharp enough to notice his armor was exquisitely crafted. This person was certainly not ordinary, and intentionally getting involved with him would bring no benefit. The girl returned to her spot, strumming her instrument while pondering. Mercenaries fight humans, while adventurers confront monsters. Therefore, they usually paid little attention to each other. She decided not to tell the story of the mercenaries' battles and heroes, or the adventurer's deathmatch with a hydra, because Felina worried that if she sang the wrong song and caused them to brawl, she wouldn't make any money. Luckily, she had a secret card up her sleeve. Just thinking about it excited her. Ladies and gentlemen, the song will now begin. This is a song about the prince who defeated the Demon King and the dragon-calling knight. A young, drunk mercenary was immediately stunned. The blonde man also seemed to vaguely recognize the story. In the quiet atmosphere, the clear sound of a guitar suddenly rang out. Felina immersed herself in the melody, her voice soaring with rising and falling notes. The mercenaries were even more certain that she knew something. The blonde young man smiled brightly. Everyone knows this story. A continuous stream of gold coins was thrown into her green hat on the ground, and that was exactly what Felina wanted, so she became more convinced that this song was indeed extremely useful. A feeling of boredom rose in her heart. Although everyone's reaction was very good, how many more days would she have to sing it? It was sickening. However, Felina quickly composed herself because the most important part was coming up, and today's earnings depended on it. It became so important because the death of the hero, who was his brother, had caused the prince to feel deep pain and resentment towards the evil demon king. That sentiment reached the goddess, and the prince was temporarily granted the hero's power. That was when the prince's sword pierced the demon king's heart. Just as she was about to reach the decisive part, the mercenary roared, "You bastard." He angrily grabbed Kim's collar and questioned him. "How dare you laugh at the prince's story? You're a traitor." While Kim just sat there chuckling. His comrades could only silently think that Kim was unlucky because of this guy's hot temper when he drank. Felina's mouth fell open in horror as her source of income was cut off. She frantically wondered, what is this situation? Mercenaries and an adventurer. 1 against 4? A quick glance told her the mercenaries would surely win, and next time she would sing about the battles and heroes of mercenaries. Just thinking about that, she smiled to herself. They'll probably love it and generously shower me with money. But then something unexpected happened. The bald man's arm suddenly felt like it was being squeezed tight. He stood frozen, not understanding what had just happened. A sharp pain suddenly shot up from his wrist, making him scream in agony. That wasn't all. Despite his growls and shouts, Kim showed no mercy and reached out to grab his face. Then he ruthlessly slammed him face down on the floor. His comrades sitting nearby were also stunned by the scene. Then they immediately rushed forward aggressively, demanding to know what crazy thing Kim was doing. They were also planning to show him what's what. But as soon as he opened his mouth, Kim punched him straight. Before his body could react, he was sent flying, crashing hard into the corner of a table. The blonde man also frantically rushed to help, pulling out his weapon to deal with Kim. But the moment he put the weapon to Kim's neck, it unexpectedly shattered into hundreds of pieces. Kim looked at him and gave a fierce smile. It seemed his luck had run out. After that, only the desperate screams of the mercenaries could be heard. Felina finally couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her instrument and hat, then frantically ran away. Inside the tavern, the desperate screams of pain continued to echo. The girl hurried through the streets, a bad feeling telling her that things could get seriously out of control. That's why she had to get away quickly before they dragged her into it. And that was a wiser move than any other resident of Santo Fabro would make. That story made Kim laugh out loud. The prince was granted the hero's power? That bastard suffered? That's hilarious. It had been a long time since he'd heard such a funny story, yet these guys dared to interrupt. That made him even angrier. He gripped their necks tightly, making them tremble and beg for their lives. Just then, a figure slowly approached from a distance and called out. This person walked closer. Although they didn't know what had happened, they saw Kim ruthlessly beating people. She couldn't just stand by and watch anymore. She shouted at him to stop. I can't stand by and watch you bully the weak, she said as she pulled down her hood. The fierce young woman declared that as a noble holy knight, she would absolutely not spare Kim. Hearing Zhao Ngan's bold introduction, Kim glanced over at her. His eyes immediately narrowed with caution when he learned she was a holy knight. Kim quickly observed her and thought, although I can't see it clearly, that item definitely belongs to the holy nation of the goddess cult. And the holy knight is one of the holy nation's asymmetric warfare tactics. Among the information the prince provided, there must be something related to the holy nation. The holy nation is like another version of the Vatican on Earth, and the people there are mostly superior superhumans. The holy nation's most representative asymmetric strategy is the saintess, who accompanied me in the last battle. Their skeletons are fused with enchanted metal, their muscles bulge, and their vision and reflexes far surpass humans. They can be called living weapons of humanity. However, creating a saintess requires a vast amount of time and money. Even if the whole world supported the holy nation, it would still take 10 years to create one saintess. To create a weapon as strong as a hero with human hands, the price is that high. So the holy nation chose a more efficient method to create superhumans, and that is the holy knight. Holy knights, like the saintess, are artificial humans created through magic and blessings. However, the cost to produce one holy knight is only 1/200th of a saintess, and their operational lifespan is only 2/5. After the system was perfected, about 10 holy knights could be produced in each batch. Of course, their abilities couldn't compare to a saintess. If the saintess is the most advanced tank, then the holy knight is just a standard, older model. However, whether it's a new or old tank, a normal person can't defeat it. Kim still held the mercenary tightly, with no intention of letting go. He knew that holy knights were actually much weaker than heroes and the saintess. With a little transformation, he could easily destroy them. However, Kim thought it wasn't a good idea to make enemies with them right from the start, so he let the man go. As soon as he was released, he ran for his life without daring to look back. He looked at her coldly and reluctantly asked, "Is that enough?" He then saw her scratching her head in a daze, which made Kim a bit confused. What is it? It turned out Zhao Ngan was stunned because he had let the man go so easily. Usually, bullies wouldn't listen to her so obediently. Seeing that she seemed to be misunderstanding, he had to explain that they started the chaos and threatened him first, and he was just reacting. After learning the whole story, she shyly scratched her head as if she had just realized she had wrongly accused him. Kim casually brushed his shoulder, thinking with disappointment, a comedy so bad it's unbearable, not worth paying to see. Zhao Ngan's already red face turned even redder, and she stammered. Overwhelmed with shame, she could only grit her teeth and pull her hood down further. Then she quickly ran to the end of the row, curled up in a corner, and ordered another beer. She was so flustered, she was trembling, just sitting there muttering to herself, while Kim turned and left. He knew that was enough. Besides, his meeting time was approaching. The Februso territory was one of the few places that didn't suffer heavy losses during the Demon King's general offensive because it had no strategic value. At that time, the Demon King's army focused on attacking key human positions to paralyze their functions. With outdated technology, low production capacity, and a sparse population, this territory posed no threat to the Demon King's army. But after the war, this land transformed. People from surrounding heavily damaged areas came here looking for work. Surviving mercenaries also came here to rest. The sharp increase in demand led to the rapid expansion of inns and restaurants, ushering the Fabruso territory into an unprecedented golden age. However, this came with a downside. The influx of outsiders created a strange class hierarchy. The lowest class was refugees, the middle was the native population of Fabruso, next were the mercenaries, and the most serious problem also lay with them, as they became the ruling class in the territory, granted power. Knowing they were the cause of this prosperous period, they used money and fists to handle everything. As for public authorities to curb their tyranny, such a thing didn't exist. To Fabruso, it was all just a place for them to profit, so no one bothered with law and order. Kim leaned against a wall, talking with a royal assassin. He was reporting the entire current situation of the place, so Kim got a general idea. Having completed his part, he immediately asked when Kim would make his move. Not wanting to delay, Kim answered decisively, "Right now." Hearing that, the assassin suggested 30 minutes later, and they quickly agreed. Before leaving, Kim didn't forget to mention that he would send a signal at the right time. But just as Kim stepped out of the alley, a shrill sound caught his attention. A burly man carrying an axe roared, "Who the hell are you?" With him was the man he had just taught a lesson to, along with other cronies standing menacingly behind. He was furious, questioning why Kim dared to touch a member of the Red Wind mercenary group. The man who had just been beaten now had backup and arrogantly cursed Kim. "You bastard. Where did you come from?" Only then did Kim pay attention to this troublemaker. Finally, Kim remembered he was the one who had started a fight with him in the tavern earlier. Vaguely understanding what was happening, he quickly slipped back into the alley. He looked at them with a fierce gaze and thought to himself, "I need to speed up the plan." The leader was also stunned and considering his options, because he didn't want to get involved in this mess. But his subordinate had been beaten by Kim like that. If he ignored it, he would lose all face. Moreover, Kim had survived a 4-on-1 fight, so he wasn't easy to deal with. Seeing his subordinate constantly provoking, he could only sigh in frustration. Initially, his plan was just to scare Kim so he wouldn't dare say another word. He cursed Kim as a coward, thinking he would just have a drink with his brothers, say a few token words, and be done with it. At that thought, he couldn't contain his impatience and immediately started his plan. But he only had time to yell for Kim to come out. Before he could even threaten or warn him, someone shouted, "It's noisy." At that, his face darkened, and he stared blankly at the person slowly approaching. Baron Fabruso stepped forward, reminding them that this was his Santo Fabruso, not a place for them to act so arrogantly. When he got a clear look at the person, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief, realizing it was just an old drunk. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. He wanted to use the old man as an example to make Kim back down, so he ordered his subordinates to attack. They obeyed and rushed forward at their leader's command. They approached the Baron, laughing, thinking this would shut him up for good. But he didn't tremble at all. Instead, he laughed loudly. An arrow from an unknown source suddenly flew and struck him. He staggered, lost his balance, and fell backward, while the leader froze in shock. His face turned pale, and he frantically asked his foolish subordinates if they had killed him. But it was too late. The surrounding people were already shouting, "Mercenaries are killing people. They're trying to take over Santo Fe Brussels." People began to rally, vowing not to let them continue their tyranny. They shouted, "Let's take back Santo Fe Brussels," and rushed towards them. The leader could only tremble and think, "It's over." Baron Fabruso, however, sat up. A smug smile played on his lips. According to Prince Hipponic's assessment, the rightful heir and next king of the mighty Rensketen kingdom, Baron Fabruso was an incurable madman. Previously, under his father's rule, it was the top territory in the kingdom, but in just 2 generations, it had become chaotic and impoverished. Because his parents died early, he had to succeed as lord at a very young age, but that didn't seem to make him mature any faster. Although he was now 50, his abilities and mind were still like that of a 1-2-year-old. While reviewing the files on Fabruso, Hipparnik concluded that he was a man who had accomplished nothing of substance in decades. He only seemed to get worse. Truly a hopeless case. He also affirmed that he would be the first to eliminate Baron Fabruso. Before, Kim thought the prince's words were spoken while drunk and were somewhat exaggerated. But when he set foot in this territory and saw it with his own eyes, he realized the prince's words were not an exaggeration at all. He couldn't help but be shocked. Before him was truly a land in extreme ruin. While the central area of Santo Fabruso developed rapidly, the outskirts of the territory were so poor and desolate. There were no soldiers or fortresses to protect the residents. Where they lived was nothing more than a hunting ground for monsters and wild beasts. A destitute-looking man was roasting a rat for a meal when he suddenly heard a rustling sound from the bushes behind him. He turned and saw the faint shadow of a monster. Terrified, he screamed and ran for his life. Kim stepped out of the bushes, holding the beaten monster, puzzled as to why the man ran as if he had seen a ghost. Life in this territory was relatively comfortable. During the day, he hunted monsters in the river, forest, and mountains. At night, he sold the leftover spoils to the Adventurers Guild for money. Then he used that money to go to the tavern and listen to people sing. Kim had lived like this for 2 weeks in this land. It was an extremely leisurely and simple time. Day after day, it was just hunting and more hunting. It wasn't until a year before he had to return to the kingdom that he felt he might have wasted a bit too much time, but this was a very necessary period. Since returning from the Great Forest, Kim had acquired many skills. Sometimes he would silently thank the two who had left him with such wonderful specimens. Thanks to that, Kim could make the most of the skills he possessed. But unlike when he ate the dwarf or the dragon, because he received too many skills in a short time, Kim couldn't determine his own limits. Kim felt he had no face to show the ones who gave him those skills. So for the past 2 weeks of traversing mountains and streams, he had tested all his skills. And today, after leaving the tavern, Kim went to the prearranged meeting spot. The person reporting to Kim was a confidant of the prince and also a royal assassin. After hearing the report, Kim knew he had the freedom to deal with the lord. He pondered for a moment about what would happen. If the world fell into chaos, then monsters would come, and that wouldn't be good for him. The assassin asked Kim when he planned to act. Kim's face was full of confidence, affirming that causing chaos in the city was not difficult. He could even do it right now. 30 minutes later, an arrow was lodged in Baron Fabrusso's chest. He glanced in the direction the arrow came from. On the roof of a nearby house, a figure in a black cloak was turning to flee. The royal assassin looked back, giving a thumbs up to indicate the mission was complete. Fabrusso lay on the ground, thinking that to incite people, you need coordination, and he himself had many who were willing to cooperate. With just a slight change in his voice, he could imitate anyone. Thinking that, he yelled with all his might that mercenaries had killed someone. They want to take over Santo Fabrusso. We can't follow their orders anymore. The surroundings were in chaos. The people were agitated and they shouted to reclaim Santo Fabrusso from the mercenaries. The large mercenary with the fake gold tooth was sweating profusely, his eyes wide with anger. He didn't know who did this, but he had to admit they were a great actor. Moreover, those who were sick from the drinking water also had their fighting instincts awakened. The streets were in extreme chaos. People rushed to attack the mercenaries, and Kim stood on a roof, leisurely watching the chaotic scene below. It was truly a masterpiece. At the palace, Hipparnich was reviewing a report on the riot in Santo Fe, Brussels. The riot began with an angry mob targeting mercenaries in the central area. The residents' anger grew, and they attacked not only mercenaries but also refugees. In the end, residents, mercenaries, and refugees were all caught up in the riot, and Baron Fabrusso was killed. Outwardly, Hipparnich appeared angry, but inwardly he was very pleased that everything was handled neatly. He crumpled the report and shouted loudly. He questioned why such a tragedy was allowed to happen and demanded that a new clause be added to the territory management law. Even if a lord is the rightful heir, if they are deemed incompetent by the king and high officials, their inheritance rights can be revoked. In addition, the number of mercenaries stationed in a territory must be limited, not exceeding half the territory's own military force. Saying that, he smiled contentedly because everything had gone according to plan. Kim looked at the chaos below and thought that the more people who died, the fewer would remember him. Just like back on Earth. Kim asked the royal assassin if everything could be over by tomorrow. The assassin confirmed it would be, but he still had one unfinished task, to find out where Kim was going next. The answer Kim gave was Kabalovit. Recently, griffins had started appearing and causing trouble in that area, and there were also rumors of a treasure map there. Griffins are creatures that are a mix of an eagle and a lion, and creatures with mixed traits from multiple species are what Kim particularly loves. After learning the destination, the royal assassin said he would meet him at an appropriate time. With that, he vanished before his eyes. Kim was about to set off immediately, but suddenly realized someone was beside him. At first, he thought the assassin hadn't left, but when he turned to look, he saw it was Zhao Engan. Zhao Engan was extremely shocked to see that the person standing before her was Sir Kim. Griffins are high-level monsters, averaging 2 to 3 meters tall. They have the head and front legs of an eagle, but their body structure is very illogical. The upper and lower halves of their bodies are completely disproportionate, as the lower body forces them to stoop when flying. Meanwhile, the upper body makes ground movement difficult, forcing them to walk in a hurry. Whether moving in the sky or on the ground, their bodies can only operate at half efficiency. Yet humans still fear them, calling them the princes of the sky and considering them high-level creatures. The reason is that despite their flawed bodies, their combat power is terrifyingly strong. They can fly and live in flocks of dozens, with social behavior similar to lions. Also, what is their favorite food? Horses, so they sometimes attack humans as well. At the Griffin's Rocky Mountains in Kabalovit, Kim was explaining to Zhao Engan the mission they received from the Adventurers Guilds. The caravans of people and horses that frequently passed through Kabalovit had requested them to either exterminate or drive away the Griffins. After learning about the mission, she was extremely excited, her eyes shining brightly. Because the number of Griffins was too large, they couldn't actually wipe them all out. The real goal was to hunt the leader to reduce their activity level. Before Kim could finish, Zhao Engan loudly replied, "Yes, master." She continued to state her belief that knights are people who always look towards ideals, no matter how harsh reality is. For the peace of the people, no matter how difficult and dangerous the mission, they must face it bravely. Faced with such enthusiasm, Kim could only feel flustered. To explain why a holy knight of the holy nation would call Kim master and follow him around, we have to go back to the story that happened a few days ago. On the night of the riot in Santo Fabruso, inside the castle, the royal assassin had sent his target to hell and completed his mission. When he escaped from the lord's castle, he was spotted by Zhao Ingan. Seeing him look suspicious, she followed him from behind. After a short distance, she saw the assassin talking to another person, and that person looked very much like the brute from the tavern she had met yesterday. When she eavesdropped and heard the royal assassin call the other person Sir Kim, Zhao Ingan's eyes immediately lit up. She rushed straight in front of him. Caught talking to the assassin, Kim immediately thought of killing her to silence her. Zhao Ingan was completely unaware of his intention. She was busy praising the person called Sir Kim, who had accompanied the hero's party, was considered the Knight of Knights, a living legend. Kim didn't understand what was happening, but he thought it would be best to let it go quietly if possible. He cleared his throat and said he was on a secret mission, but before he could tell her to keep it a secret, Zhao Ingan enthusiastically promised to keep it a secret and begged him to take her as his disciple. Kim's face immediately stiffened at the sudden appearance of an unwanted disciple. Holy Knights are an asymmetric warfare tactic of the Holy Nation. Unlike the Saintess, who is almost never injured, the position of a Holy Knight is always tracked by magic to minimize losses. Even if killed, the tracking magic might automatically mark the culprit who killed the Holy Knight. That meant if he killed her, just to silence a witness, Kim would be hunted by the entire Holy Nation. So in the end, he reluctantly gave Zhao Ingan an extremely difficult task, to dig a large hole without any tools. He did this with the intention of scaring her into giving up and running away. But she didn't complain even once and just dug the hole with her bare hands. After finishing, she even seemed very enthusiastic. Faced with such persistence, he could only close his eyes in helplessness. In the Rocky Mountains, there were countless griffin nests and eggs. Because of this species' habit of bringing their scent back to the nest, they decided to fight them right in the mountains. Instead of following them, they would lie in ambush and attack suddenly. After witnessing her dig a hole with her bare hands, he silently reevaluated Zhao Ingan's strength. Just then, she happily pointed to the nest from earlier. The flock of griffins had returned from their hunt. Zhao Ingan asked him what to do and received the answer, "Handle it yourself." Upon hearing that, she thought her master wanted to test her abilities. Zhao Ingan let out a loud shout and charged towards the flock of griffins with her sword. Standing on a cliff, Kim watched the brawl between a human and a griffin. The person pulled the beast's feathers, the beast pulled the person's hair, a chaotic fight. He could only cover his face in helplessness. A while later, Zhao Ingan returned to the cave where Kim was sitting, excitedly reporting that she had completed the mission. Kim looked at her and evaluated her performance in the recent battle, and the most appropriate word he could use for that fight was chaotic. He clearly analyzed that because she was afraid of breaking her sword by swinging too hard, she unconsciously loosened her grip, making her strikes lack power. After each attack, she reflexively checked her sword's condition, so she couldn't anticipate the next situation. Because Zhao Ingan was constantly paying attention to those two things, her magic casting speed also slowed down, and her hit rate was lower. After hearing those comments, she closed her eyes in shame because they were exactly what her instructor at the Holy Nation had said about her before. She clenched her fists, trembling, as she listened to the frank comments from the master she deeply respected. Then she suddenly heard him say, "It's better to use guns than swords." Upon hearing that, Zhao Ingan couldn't help but tremble. Countless thoughts like, "Am I not qualified? And am I that useless?" immediately overwhelmed her, leaving her devastated by Kim's words. But what he actually meant was to put down the sword, just like he did. Only then did she understand. Although his way of speaking was a bit harsh, he actually wanted her to drop the sword and fight hand-to-hand like him. He said there was another flock on the other side and told her to follow, and he himself would demonstrate how to fight bare-handed. Zhao Ingan thought to herself, "This man is insane." Zhao Ingan watched Kim's fighting style with wide eyes and muttered, "What kind of fighting is this?" Kim glanced at her and silently concluded that the Holy Knight's combat ability was nothing special. Although the sword was her main weapon, her swordsmanship didn't reach the level of a hero. Despite combining it with light magic, she didn't possess the prince's power, nor could she use any special techniques. Zhao Ingan was holding a griffin by the neck while it grabbed her head. Because her body was a modified human body, her physical strength far exceeded that of a normal person. But obviously, she still couldn't be compared to the Saintess. Simply put, she had the right qualities to be a hero's companion, but she couldn't utilize her inherent advantages. He looked at the griffin with a deep hole punched in its neck and thought of this creature itself. It simultaneously possessed the characteristics of an eagle and a lion, but when combined, the best qualities of both species disappeared. Kim glanced at Zhao Ingan standing behind him and continued to think, she's almost invincible when fighting human armies. But if she were to accompany a hero, she would probably die of exhaustion before reaching the Demon King's castle. But that's why I can teach her. Even though she's a disciple, I reluctantly accepted. A little joy sparked in his heart, but after seeing her fight the griffin, I changed my mind. I really want to teach her. Zhao Engan was sweating. A cold sweat ran down her body because Holy Knight Zhao Engan Puzit is a monster, just like me.